He was the strongest player who almost conquered the tower, until his closest ally betrayed him. He died using everything to save his team, but wakes up 20 years in the future. Now his killer is a legend, and the world worships a fake version of him as a hero. To take revenge, he needs power. So instead of fighting in the shadows, he starts streaming. If the whole world is watching, will they realize the real legend has returned? Tower, 8th floor, Deadlands. A squad was making its way forward across the ice. Blue Zone Guildmaster, rank 6, Kyojo Kazuki, stopped and clenched his fist. He frowned and said, "Today they have gathered here to accomplish the unheard of. To overthrow the guardian of the 8th floor. They can't relax just because it's a joint raid. If they don't pass this, the 9th floor will only be a dream." He turned and saw the knight starting to part. He said, "Look who's arrived." Blue Eyes. The guild was heading their way, led by Narukami Subaru, rank 1 Blue Eyes Guildmaster. Kazuki stepped forward and cried out, "Subaru." MC shook his hand and apologized for the delay. Kazuki smiled and asked again, "Delay? They're the first ones to arrive." Subaru said he heard even the fighting clans were participating today. Kazuki replied, "After all, Narukami Subaru himself is leading the attack. They're probably looking to snatch whatever he leaves behind." Subaru said that if they need scraps, he just happened to have some lying around. He placed the item in Kazuki's hand, who looked at it in surprise. He opened his palm, and the system window reported that it was the blessing of a legendary rank archangel. The required equipment level was greater than 50. Upon reaching 100 points of fatigue, half is instantly restored. There's one use remaining. Kazuki said, "This!" MC interrupted him and said that he intended to conduct the raid perfectly, but just in case, he should keep this to himself. Kazuki clenched his fist and said, "Although in truth he needs it more than he does," Subaru said. "And also, after the battle, how about returning to Blue Eyes? Then he'll give it to him." Kazuki smiled slightly shyly and looked down, and MC put a hand on his shoulder and said, "Well, if he doesn't want to come back, he can keep this forever." Kazuki turned around abruptly, noticing a large shadow, and his eyes widened. MC said, "It's here." Kazuki asked, "Did it show up so early?" The guardian of the 8th floor, a poisonous dragon hydra, appeared in front of them, and Kazuki ordered to prepare for attack. MC looked at the creature and said, "It's a disgusting monster. Just looking at it makes his blood boil." The system window reported, "Lightning piercing Subaru's entire body." He said, "It will die today." The creature opened its mouth and Kazuki screamed, "Breath! Everyone retreat!" Subaru said, "No need." Kazuki asked, "What is he?" The hydra released breath towards the people, and MC rushed to attack. He cut the flow of mana and attacked the creature. Kazuki said, "Subaru, he hasn't changed at all." Chino screamed, "Unbelievable. Subaru, his training really paid off." Shigure cried out, "Oh my, it's too late. He wanted to strike first." Rina asked what he just told Kazuki. MC replied, "He'll find out soon." "Are they ready?" "They'll kill that overgrown lizard and break through that damned 8th floor." Kazuki looked at them carefully and said with displeasure, "Wow, they're so friendly." The man said, "Everything's according to plan." The hidden units took up positions. Kazuki turned around and said, "Excellent. Then they'll begin too." The man replied, "As he commands." The mage said, "May luck be on their side." They pushed off the ground and rushed to attack. Kazuki looked at Chin, who was about to attack the creature. At that moment, everyone from the Blue Eyes Guild attacked the creature. Rina swung her sword, and Shigure ordered her not to start slashing without warning. She attacked the creature and asked, "Hasn't he gotten used to her yet?" He released his mana and screamed, "And yet, you need to be at least a little careful." The guy frowned and screamed, "Toshiya, he wants to compete. Who can do more damage?" He struck the monster, and Toshiya thoughtfully replied, "Then the loser buys dinner." He struck the monster, after which he heard a scream. He asked Chino to forgive him. She replied, "No need to worry about her. Let him just keep attacking. He can leave the defense to her." Suddenly, someone called out from behind her, and she turned around. Kazuki approached her and asked, "Does she think she can defend this too?" She looked at him questioningly, and he plunged the sword into her body. He said, "Seriously, this is what happens when someone gets arrogant." Chino screamed, "Subaru." He turned around and saw what just happened. She fell to the ground, and Kazuki smirked and threw the sword over his shoulder. Subaru's eyes flashed, and Kazuki said, "Subaru, now is not the time to be distracted." He asked, "Kazuki, why?" The system window reported that he had been chosen by the tower. He must conquer it and be prepared for the inevitably coming beginning. This is the first message every player sees. A test or a blessing? No one knows. No one knows who left this message or what its purpose is. It is still shrouded in mystery. All that remains is to obey the order that cannot be resisted and strive for the top, to a place where no man has ever set foot. People from Earth, Biren, Runeterra, Elflid, Lucan, players from different dimensions, each with their own mission, will conquer the tower again. When the monster was killed, the corpses of the Blue Eyes Guild members lay around it. MC breathed heavily and spoke. He told them the idiot to run, but they never listened. Everyone kept saying it was impossible to defeat the monster, but they did it. Subaru looked at his teammates and said he honestly didn't remember ordering them to die with him. Morons. The system window reported an abnormal condition. He's poisoned. Natural recovery is impossible. High fatigue. That's extremely high. If MC comes back alive, they'll probably say something like, "Well, of course, it's Narukami Subaru, the master of lightning." The system window reported that reaching 100% fatigue will result in death. Subaru asked, "Moron, why did he do that? Let him answer him." Kyojo Kazuki. Kazuki crouched down to him and said, "It's been 10 years, Subaru. 10 years of waiting in anticipation of this moment. He understands, right? This was the only way to defeat him. If he hadn't lured him out, his precious comrades from Blue Eyes would have gotten mixed up. He has no idea how much everything he gave him tormented him all these years. He screamed loudly, that's why he chose this world, not his. That's all. It's a pity that it all ended this way. But now he can finally see the end. He turned around and throwing the talisman asked, yes, he doesn't need to return it to him anymore, right? Blue Eyes will disappear with him. No need to look so sad. Even if he dies, he will still remain a hero. Although, of course, he will no longer be able to confirm it. He started to leave, and MC said, that's right. Until the very end, he said only what he wanted. He tried to get up and thought, okay, he may not be able to save himself, but that doesn't mean he will leave silently. He got up, and Kazuki turned around and screamed, this is impossible. The system window reported, a Eulos of legendary rank, required equipment level, 80 points. This creates a storm, knocking the target back 10 kilometers. Kazuki screamed, did this item still have charges left? Subaru swung his fan and screamed, why on earth did he have to warn him about this? The system window reported, users remaining, 4. He frowned and thought, he had 4 shots left and 4 survivors from Blue Eyes. If he could at least save them. He lifted their bodies into the air and Kazuki shouted, after them, quickly. We can't let them get away. The man waved his hand and cried out, go. MC smirked and said no way. He released mana and said, they will all stay here. The system window reported, warning, high fatigue. His fatigue has reached 95%. The duration of the skill, Lightning Lord, is limited. Descent of the Lightning Lord. He directed an attack towards the opponents, and Kazuki smirked and said, Subaru, he really is stubborn. The system window reported, his fatigue has reached 96%. MC said, no matter what kind of farewell he wanted, doing something like this was beyond his comprehension. But he had to be prepared to pay with his life. He said, no one would dare leave here without his permission. The guys screamed, what a nightmare. Come on. They rushed forward and shouted, all or nothing. MC swung his spear and attacked them. He thought, these small fry won't kill them. He thought, but once Kazuki enters the fight, everything will change. He's already far enough. The problem is his fatigue. The system window reported that his fatigue had reached 97%. MC thought, he can't hold out that long. At that moment, a fighter snuck up behind him and attacked him, and the system window reported that his fatigue had reached 98%. Subaru screamed, and his legs gave way. The fighter closest to him took advantage of this and struck him with his sword. Subaru dropped his weapon, and the guys shouted joyfully, he did it! He killed Narukami's Subaru. MC grinned and asked, doesn't he want to do it again? He released his lightning and attacked the guys standing around him. They fell to the ground, and MC pulled the sword from his stomach and fell to his knees. Someone said, he fell. They really did it? What kind of monster is that? Kazuki looked at him and thought, Subaru, it's hard for him to believe that his era ended so easily. The system window reported, his fatigue has reached 99%. Warning, he is in critical danger. His fatigue has reached the limit. Reaching 100 units of fatigue leads to death. Subaru thought, Kazuki, he of all people should know that even in the very end. He raised his spear and thought, he will win. He threw it towards Kazuki, who thought, his condolences. He used the Archangel's blessing and thought, if only he hadn't given it to him. The spear was aimed towards Kazuki's head and he screamed, this is impossible. MC thought, even if it all comes to an end, he will emerge victorious. He shifted into space and thought, oh my, what a pity. Kyojo Kazuki, it's a pity he couldn't finish him off with his own hands. Although, he's sure that last discharge got to him. How funny. So many thoughts just when he's on the verge of death. Wait. Is this going to last forever? This is no better than torture. He smelled something and asked, what? That smell? Wait, a smell? He can still smell things? Just don't tell him. He woke up inside a trash can, then looked around and asked, Earth? The system window reported, Hosoi Subaru. His affiliation is Earth. Level 1. All stats within 11 points. MC asked, Hosoi Subaru? What kind of pathetic stats are these? He frowned and got a shock to the head. Subaru remembered what people had said. The name doesn't match up at all. And anyway, all Earthlings are on the same level as trash. Narukami Subaru was an exception. He needs to be at least half as strong as Subaru, who died 20 years ago. He opened his eyes and looked at the trash can lid. MC asked, what? Narukami Subaru died 20 years ago? Then this is the body. He tried to get out of the trash can and screamed, are they kidding me? He fell out and screamed, hitting the ground. He looked at the plate and said, player set. Exactly. If he uses this. The plate reported, search, Blue Eyes. The system window displayed several messages. Are Blue Eyes' successors really that weak? The feeling of naming Narukami Subaru from Blue Eyes. Blue Zone continues to grow, carrying the will of Blue Eyes and Narukami Subaru. MC said, it can't be. He looked at Kazuki's photo and said, so he's not dead after all. Kazuki, Kyojo Kazuki. But they were pretty good friends at first. Some time ago, MC asked, what happened? Why did he call so late? Kazuki replied, Subaru, he's thinking of leaving Blue Eyes. Subaru asked, why suddenly? Kazuki asked to pass this on to the others instead of him. Friend, at least, that's what he thought. Kazuki said, in time, he'll understand the reason. There's no need to worry. He punched him in the shoulder and said, even if they're apart, he'll still be his shadow. A few years later, he appeared again. But this time, he created his own guild, using the name they once joked about, Blue Zone. That was the name of the shadow he was talking about. Subaru thought, are they still on the 9th floor? Are they trying to tell me they haven't done anything in 20 years? He walked down the street and looked at the plaque. His eyes widened in surprise, and he read, Crowds of people gather at the Narukami Subaru Memorial Hall on the anniversary of his death. Even after 20 years, the memories remain vivid. He asked again, a memorial hall named after him? After a while, he approached the Narukami Subaru Memorial Hall and thought, he can't even believe it. It's much more luxurious than he could have imagined. He walked inside and saw his big masks everywhere. MC thought, what's the use of perpetuating his name? Who built this? He walked further and thought, and for what purpose? He grabbed his head and heard a voice. It always guided them. The hero behind the undefeated legend of Blue Eyes and the man who had advanced the furthest in the tower, Narukami Subaru. His eyes widened, and he heard, to keep his memory forever. All of them, his comrades. He looked up and thought, no. The man said, they built this memorial hall. Subaru's body shook and he thought, him, Kazuki. Kazuki was broadcasting on the screen, and he was saying, Narukami Subaru and Blue Eyes are no more, but they, Blue Zone, are the only guild that still carries their noble spirit. MC looked at him and thought, nonsense. He's just talking complete nonsense. Wasn't killing him enough? Well, he'll live up to his expectations. Kazuki said, Narukami Subaru and Blue Eyes will never return, but they will never forget them. Subaru thought, so let him watch and wait. He will rewrite all the memories from the very foundation. He won't let him do this again. He won't waste a second chance. Suddenly, someone bumped into his back, causing MC to widen his eyes in fear and look down. There was a guy lying at his feet, groaning slightly. Subaru picked him up and asked, is he okay? He looked at him in surprise and thought, his mask. The man asked to be forgiven. Is he hurt? The girl asked, Minato, is he okay? MC asked not to worry. They just collided slightly. He looked in surprise at the fact that they were also wearing masks and thought, they too? Subaru asked, what kind of nightmare is this? He rubbed his eyes and asked, what in the world? He saw that all the people around him were wearing the same masks. He asked, what in the world is going on here? He remembered Kazuki wiping his lips and saying, it's a pity that everything ended this way. No need to look so sad. Even if he dies, he will still remain a hero. Currently, he clenched his fists and thought, so that's what he meant? Kyojo. He walked forward and looked at the memorial with his photo, next to which flowers were laid. He thought, is this all just a farce to steal the glory from Blue Eyes? Subaru's eyes widened, and he saw a glow emanating from one flower. He began to quickly move forward, and people shouted in displeasure, let him watch where he's going. In line, he crouched down by the memorial and took out a flower that was shining. He thought, is this it? A Sagure Shigure. At that moment, Shigure stopped on the roof in a robe and said, another year without incident. The girl replied, her carelessness off the charts. If they were just a little late, they could have stumbled upon the Blue Zone. And anyway, is it really necessary to do this every year for the memorial ceremony? Just bringing chrysanthemums is enough. Shigure took off his hood and replied, who knows? Subaru might notice the flowers he brought. The girl asked, does he really think this guy is still alive? Shigure replied that he hadn't seen the body in person. The girl chuckled and said that Kyojo would get to them before they found Subaru. She screamed loudly, and anyway, if Subaru was really alive, they wouldn't have sat idly by for 20 years, idiot. After a while, when the setting sun was already visible outside, MC stopped and thought, is he really alive? Shigure. After a while, he sat in the room and thought, is this the room where Hosoi Subaru lived? Looks like he was broke, huh? Blue Eyes' search yielded no results. But one thing is for sure, Shigure is alive. He's alive, and he's hiding, and for 20 whole years. Most likely the root of all this is Kyojo. If he knew, he would never have let them go so easily. Could it be that Shigure really was the only one who survived? He's not sure what took all four of them back then. But while Kyojo is alive and in power, getting in touch now is stupid. Besides, he's powerless now. If he goes head-on, he'll be an easy target. First, he needs to regain his strength. According to Hosoi Subaru's memories, the tutorial to become a player will start in 2 days. If he's really alive, they can meet again anytime. After a while, Examiner Hugar stood in the tutorial exam hall with his arms folded across his chest. He frowned and looked at the guy standing in front of him. He said thoughtfully, he barely passed, but he wants to try the next stage? The guy asked again. Next, a system window appeared in front of him and asked, does he want to challenge the next stage? With each stage increase, another goblin appears. Completing higher stages gives additional rewards. The guy screamed, no way! He won't do it. Is he crazy? He won't be able to fight 3 at once. Hugar said discontentedly, keep it down. His head is spinning. He'll finish him off. The guy started to dissolve and screamed, but he still got through, right? Hugar said, this kid, he won't even advance in the tutorial, and to think that he has to let such a weakling pass. Only Isaac, Reinhardt's son, passed the 20th stage. Besides him, none of the participants show any promise. This year's tutorial is too easy. The level of the recruits has truly dropped to the lowest level. He looked thoughtfully at the screen when a player entered the area. He frowned and said, that's a tough name. Well, if he even manages to get through. MC stopped in front of him, and Hugar said, okay. The system window reported that 2 goblins were being created. He needed to defeat the goblins. Hugar said, well, they'll start the tutorial right now. Before he could finish speaking, MC killed the monsters. The old man looked at this in surprise and asked, did something just fly by? 2 days spent testing the limits of this body were the right decision. The body Subaru woke up in was actually quite remarkable. The system window asked, does he want to challenge the next level? Each level increases with the appearance of another goblin, along with additional rewards. MC said, of course. He doesn't have time. He'll deal with them quickly. After a while, Hugar's eyes widened in surprise and he saw numerous goblin corpses. He asked, What the hell is going on here? He thought. He's not just swinging his sword haphazardly. He's planning 3 moves ahead. This isn't just good swordsmanship. Even he couldn't move like that. He closely watched MC's movements and said, unless he is the reincarnation of Narukami Subaru himself. MC quickly attacked the monster, and the system window reported that he had passed the 49th stage. He wants to challenge the final boss? Subaru looked at it and said, why not? Everything around shook, causing MC to tense up a little. A huge hand appeared from the ground, and Huger screamed, you idiot! He needs to stop. He's not Narukami. If he values his life, he should stop right now. A huge creature appeared in front of Subaru, and the system window reported, it's the Goblin King. Victims up to the 49th stage have been detected. The Goblin King is furious. Huger ordered him to surrender before it was too late. Fighting the Goblin King was reckless. No need to be greedy. No matter how skilled he was, he couldn't close the stat gap. MC frowned and thought, he knows. With his stats, he probably wouldn't be able to deal him any real damage. And yet, Subaru said he couldn't wait. He threw his sword to the floor, and Huger screamed in fear. Why did he throw his weapon away? Has he completely lost his mind? He felt something was wrong with him from the start. The Goblin King rushed towards him, when suddenly his leg was pierced. He looked questioningly at MC, who asked, was he surprised? He held needles in his hand and offered to bet. Either he would finish him off first, or he would turn him into a sieve first. He swung it and screamed. His answer, he hit the monster's eyes with the needles, who screamed loudly. He grabbed his head and stepped back, then grabbed the axe and tried to attack MC, who quickly dodged. He remembered his training from earlier when he missed the target. Rina came up to him and said, you don't throw like that. MC said, Rina. She took out a pen and said, anything can become a throwing weapon if you know its center of gravity. The pen pierced the center of the target, and now he was successfully attacking the monster. The Goblin King screamed loudly, and Subaru said, power is directly proportional to rotational momentum, and accuracy is inversely proportional to oscillations. Rina taught him that. Huger looked at it and thought, the goblin corpses and poisonous needles won't disappear until the test is over. To think he used a technique he previously took for granted, not only to chop down goblins with a sword, but also to throw them, to hit precisely the right spots with a hidden weapon. He frowned and said, he's a genius. Genius? No. Is that enough to describe it? The monster growled and then fell to the floor. MC raised his sword and said, he doesn't hold a grudge. He killed the monster, and the system window reported, he defeated the Goblin King. He passed the 50th stage of the tutorial for the first time. MC grabbed his head and said, this is still a tutorial. No need to force such a monster into the training stage. The system window reported, level up, credits received, achievement points received, tutorial shop opened. The shop is only available at this stage. Subaru asked, what can he buy with the points he has? The system window reported, current achievement points 2,500. MC said, he's never seen a shop like that before. The system window reported, tutorial shop opening. He thoughtfully began to examine it all and said, it looks like the range is from 5 points to 200 points. He will have too many points left. He widened his eyes in surprise and asked, can you even buy something like that? The system window reported, it's an unnamed demonic sword. The price is 1,000 achievement points. It's of rare class. It absorbs the owner's stamina and spiritual energy, enhancing its cutting power and physical abilities. It's the unfortunate work of the magic swordsmith Kindred. The sword has no name. MC said he didn't expect to see Kindred's concern here. It's terribly tempting, but to use lightning, which is physically draining, the system window reported, the sacred sword, Miranda, costs 1,500 achievement points. It's a rare weapon that reduces the owner's fatigue accumulation and increases the duration of combat. It's a mithril sword imbued with the temple's blessing. Subaru said he needed a sacred sword, not a demonic one. Should he go for destructive power and take the demonic sword, or choose safety and take the sacred one? He considered this. Neither option appealed to him. He needed to spend his first few points as carefully as possible. He looked at the system thoughtfully and asked if he could scroll further. The system window reported, Wedge of Greed, which costs 1,500 achievement points. It's a skill that suppresses the side effects of skills and items used by the owner. The rank and level of the skill can be improved, but this requires credits. He thought he'd never seen a skill with such an effect. Then, with the demonic sword. No, this can even suppress lightning debuffs. The system window reported, Wedge of Greed skill purchased for 1,500 points. Weapon, nameless demonic sword purchased for 1,000 points. He thought he should try it. MC swung his sword and said, as he thought, this skill and the demonic sword go well together. Instead of struggling with one skill, use the demonic sword from the start. Gugar interrupted him and said, so he chose the demonic sword. It's a good choice. This skill and item have high compatibility. However, as an examiner, he doesn't understand. By the way, his name is Hugar. Why did he choose this skill? He doesn't know if it will be useful, and it's not exactly effective either. MC asked, does he want him to explain every little thing to him? Hugar asked irritably. Explain it? Subaru asked, is that what he's asking? He thought it's hard for him to speak politely. Hugar coughed and said, he must be tired after the exam, so he'll close his eyes this time. It's not like there was any special reason. He gets it? MC thought. Hugar, huh? So that's how this little kid became an examiner. A while ago, the guy said he was his fan. Can I have his autograph? Subaru asked again, an autograph? He doesn't have one. The guy screamed, then let him just write his name. At the moment, Hugar spoke discontentedly. In his time, players learned manners first, and today's youth, at least something worked out, and then they immediately turn up their noses. He doesn't know what they teach them there, but they hate inconveniences, assert their rights, disrespect their elders, and call them old men. MC thought, times have changed, as has the number of hairs on his head. Subaru said, in any case, he is not going to answer, so let him keep the exam results confidential. Hugar said, him again. He picked up superficial knowledge on the internet and contradicts. Okay, fine then. He has no manners, so he will personally drum it into him from scratch. How about joining the Knight's Path Guild? MC interrupted him and answered, no, he does not want to. Hugar screamed, it is rare for an examiner to personally invite someone. The system window asked, go to the second floor? Subaru answered, go. Hugar screamed, what? Let him stop, he is not finished. MC was transported, and Hugar said, this is incredible. He overestimated him. Subaru was transported to the second floor, where loud shouts were heard. Fresh deep-sea fish from Runeterra. Special dried meat. He asks to try it. This place is called the Land of the Beginning, someone shouted. They have everything, from Murim silk to leather jackets from Earth. Subaru thought, he was back in this place. He seized a chance that usually doesn't come along, a second try. Since he had already lived through this once, he would act smarter, for the sake of his comrades who might be waiting for him, and for revenge for the terrible death that befell them. He came to an establishment that housed closed training rooms. This is a place where you can train independently, test your acquired skills, and test the durability of your equipment. The old man sitting behind the counter asked which floor he came from. MC replied, he just came up from the first. This is a place where almost every player drops by. The old man pointed to the side and said, then he better go to the first training room. There's a straw dummy there. MC said he'll take the fifth. The old man asked again. Fifth? He said discontentedly, he'll tell the truth. No need, it'll just be a waste of money. He needs to listen to his advice and take the first room. MC thanked him for his concern and asked to give him a room for half an hour. The old man asked, what? Whatever happens, it's his own fault. If he leaves in the middle of training, there will be no refund. MC walked forward and the system window reported that he spent 50 credits. The remainder is 10,000 credits. The higher the number, the more difficult the training room. A beginner without proper equipment is accustomed to sidelong glances. MC opened the door and walked inside. He said, okay, he'll begin. He drew his sword from its sheath, and the system window reported, the nameless demonic sword recognizes the user. All stats are temporarily increased. Stamina and mental points are absorbed. The first level Blade of Greed resists the recoil of the demonic sword. Some stamina and mental points are restored. The Blade of Greed couldn't completely suppress the sword's recoil. Fatigue increased slightly. Subaru thought, as expected, the first level is too weak, but just a little more. The system window reported that the sword was absorbing the user's stamina. Blood gushed from his mouth and he let out a soft cry. The system window reported, stats increased proportionally to the loss of stamina. Subaru clenched his jaw and thought, is this his limit? Still within expectations. The system window reported, he spent 10,000 credits. The skill level has increased. MC stuck the sword into the ground, and the system window reported that the Wedge of Greed had increased its rank. This resists the sword's recoil. Partial success. Subaru pulled the sword out of the ground, and the system window reported that the sword absorbed stamina. Stats increase even more. Subaru said, okay. He rushed forward and shouted, it's time for him to try this. After a while, the old man behind the counter dozed off, when suddenly he opened his eyes and asked, is he still sleeping, or is he seeing things? He saw a silhouette opening the door. The old man grabbed his head and asked, that guy who went into the fifth room. It felt like not even 10 minutes had passed. He knocked on the door and asked, Dreamer, is he still alive in there? He opened the door, and his eyes wide screamed, what? MC saw ruins and asked, what on earth happened here? After a while, MC stretched and asked, how long had he slept? His body was still wooden. He thought, if it were an ordinary cursed sword, he wouldn't have gotten off so easily. The physical strain had definitely decreased. That's why he was able to draw out the sword's power. After a while, he came to the tavern and sat down at the table. Subaru thought, usually with such stats. The system window reported the stats of Subaru's Hosoi, which were approaching 20 points. He thought he wouldn't even be able to lift the demonic sword, let alone use it. The compatibility of the Blade of Greed and the demonic sword is excellent, so lightning should work with them too. The next problem is increasing skill levels, that's all. The system window reported that he only had 50 credits left. He thought, was he always this poor? Subaru asked, has he really sunk to the bottom, barely making ends meet? Well, he died. Nothing can be done about it. He heard a scream. People, welcome back. MC looked outside and saw guys shouting loudly. They were on the second floor today. It's really nostalgic for the carefree days, isn't it? Topic of the day. Ask the newbies how much their gear costs. Here they come. The system window announced that Alexander had donated 1,000 credits and mockingly ordered them to work. The guys screamed, they got 1,000 credits from Alexander. He spilled coffee on himself and screamed, cool. Thank you, thank you. MC asked, what the hell is wrong with this guy? He opened his console and asked, streaming? Subaru said, a system where he broadcasts live videos and collects donations. So that's what he was doing. At that moment, a guy noticed him and asked, Subaru, had he gotten up to? MC looked at him and he said, what a meeting. Was he staying around here somewhere? MC thought, his body instinctively tensing. It looks like they don't have a very good relationship. The guy said discontentedly, a friend is talking to him and he's decided to ignore him. From the outside, it looks like he's talking to himself. Subaru thought, no, this isn't just tension, it's fear. MC said, he's right. He just went up to the floor. The guy sat down next to him and said, this is unexpected. He said mockingly, he didn't think that a weakling like him would pass the tutorial. He was sure that a goblin would finish him off. Subaru thought, he remembered. It's Isaac. Some time ago he asked, what is he trying to achieve? Isaac asked mockingly, what? He's asking. He's just trash, that's all. Besides, his name pisses him off. He can't do what he's told. He decided to show off that he's an orphan and his head is empty, MC said with tears in his eyes, but the credits he gave him weren't enough. Isaac hit him and screamed. No one asked him. He broke his thing and said, the trash is finally where it belongs. Let him listen to him. From today on, this is his home. No matter what happens, he'll never leave here. If he finds out that he got out on his own, he understands what will happen, right? MC thought. Hosoi Subari before him was a jerk who took beatings. That's why he woke up in the trash back then? Isaac said he broke his father's record and reached the 20th stage. The examiner, Hugar, showered him with praise, saying that he really was Reinhardt's son or something like that. MC replied, yeah. Isaac said he even got a skill as a reward for clearing it. Rank B, by the way. They say that's the maximum you can get in the tutorial. His throat was dry from all the chatter. He'll go get himself something. MC took a sip from his mug and replied, yeah, no need to rush. He left then. Isaac asked again, really? Then let him buy him coffee on the way. For a snack, let him choose whatever he thinks he'll like. MC looked at him questioningly, and Isaac grabbed his head and said, that's it. He's still the same disobedient idiot. What's wrong with him? He sits there with his eyes wide open and snaps at me every time. Did someone replace his soul somewhere? MC replied, he has no credits. Let him buy his own coffee. Isaac told him to sit down. Subaru stood up and thought, he's a minor. Let him forgive him. He doesn't have time to babysit his revenge. But if he gets in his way, that's a different matter. He widened his eyes and turned around to see Isaac grabbing his arm. He asked, does he really want to see what happens to trash who escapes? MC replied discontentedly, he better let him go. Isaac held his arm and told him not to get cocky. Subaru. MC thought, he can't make a scene in front of such a crowd. A scandal will only make things worse. Isaac laughed loudly and told him not to be afraid. He just scared him a little like in the old days. Got it? He's still as small as ever. With his skills, he probably barely made it through the tutorial. He understands, he's proud of himself now, but does he seriously want to challenge him? Isaac came closer and put his hand on MC's shoulder. He said that if he wanted, he could make him disappear without a trace. He knows who his father is, right? He started to walk away and said, be careful, buddy. Subaru looked after him with displeasure and thought, what, buddy? Players have two main ways to grow. The first is through challenges. By completing tower challenges and receiving rewards, players naturally become stronger. To participate in tower challenges, you need to pay credits, but in virtual space, safety is guaranteed, because even if you die, you only lose credits and progress. The second way is through hunting. By hunting monsters outside safe zones or completing special dungeons on each floor, you can grow. The growth is noticeably faster than with tower challenges, but the hunting zones are in the real world, so if he dies there, he dies for real. The Lair of Waiting Orcs dungeon. Many players avoid hunting because there's no need to risk their lives, but the MC sat near a stone in the dungeon and said, the safer, the slower, and the more dangerous, the faster he grows. He took out his gadget and looked at the notification. He asked, Narukami Subaru? 80,000 viewers? He opened the stream, where the streamer waved and said, people, the moment they've been waiting for has finally arrived. He's going to the third floor challenge. Viewers started leaving comments. Is this deja vu? It's the 8th time already. It's just an ordinary Subaru. What's so special about that? Subaru frowned and said, the name and mask are Narukami Subaru. How many imitators does he have now? The system window reported, Narukami Subaru the idiot posted a quest for 20,000 credits. The streamer replied, Narukami Subaru will gladly be his clown. Thanks for 20,000 credits. The MC asked in surprise. A mission for 20,000 credits? The system window reported, Baldhead Lover posted a quest for 10,000 credits. Broke posted a quest and ordered him to prove he could complete it, and he would also add 5,000 credits. Stash posted a quest and wrote that he wouldn't skimp on 15,000 credits either. Subaru made a heart sign and said, thanks for his enthusiastic support. He will definitely do it. The MC thought, Narukami Subaru is raking in money from streams, and Subaru is risking his life fighting monsters. The MC said, that's terrible. He made an easy profit. He looked at his credits, and then at the screen. He rose from the ground and exhaled, then pulled the sword out of the monster's body and said, okay, work's done. The monster stepped forward, and the system window announced that an orc general had appeared. MC said he didn't have poison needles like last time, but today he had something better. The system window reported that the nameless demonic sword absorbs the user's stamina. All stats grow proportionally to the stamina expended. Wedge of Greed resists sword recoil. Subaru said he was very busy. The system window reported that the user's stamina and mental strength were partially restored. MC kicked the monster and screamed, no time to waste on bipods. He charged and rushed forward. He pushed off the wall and somersaulted in the air, heading towards the orc. The creature growled, but Subaru was unstoppable. The system window reported that the Lair of the Waiting Orcs dungeon had been completed. After a while, MC looked at the mask and thought, Well, that means he'll have to put it back on. Now he understood perfectly well how streamers make money. If you're going to do something, then give it your all in what you do best. I mean, he's real anyway. After a while, a voice rang out in the office. Narukami Subaru had started a live broadcast. The girl was holding the gadget in her hand and watching it closely. She screamed loudly, which startled her colleague. She screamed, "How is this possible?" She slammed her fist on the table and screamed, "Idiot, fool, trash! How could the 5 of them not get through this?" Kiyoharu got up from the floor and asked if she would lose 1,000 credits if the censorship worked. She remembers, right? Now she was on edge. So what happened? Who is it this time? Wika answered, "Subikichi?" Kiyoharu asked again, "Subikichi? And who is he? Another Subaru or another Subaru?" Wika answered, "Who knows? Maybe it's a mixture of both. Since the real Narukami Subaru doesn't show up, whoever attracts the most attention becomes the original. Everyone and everything is cosplaying Narukami Subaru and making a fuss. Is streaming already dead or something?" Kiyoharu hiccuped and ordered her not to scare him like that. "They actually live thanks to streamers, she knows." Wika cried out in displeasure. "Really? They don't understand anything. Even players who risk their lives climbing the tower find it boring." Kiyoharu said, "Wika, if she thinks so, then why did she leave the tower and hang out on the bottom floor?" Wika looked thoughtfully at the gadget and said, "Because she's bored. Besides, he quit too. And if he has time to bother her, he should better focus on finding worthy newcomers." Kiyoharu said, "No, he quit because he lacked the skills. Since she doesn't know, it's better for her to just keep quiet." He frowned and thought, well, she only started climbing the tower so she could meet Narukami Subaru one day, so if the goal is gone, it's no wonder the motivation is gone too. Wika asked, "What's this?" Kiyoharu looked at her, and she cried out, "This guy is amazing." Kiyoharu asked, "What happened?" She found another weirdo. Wika said, "It's the new cosplayer Narukami Subaru." Kiyoharu looked at the MC's stream with one viewer and shouted loudly, "What the hell? Is this called a talent search? Don't make fun of him. Why is she watching the stream from the second floor? And with 0 viewers too." Wika said, "Well, that's true, but when she sees someone wearing that mask, she just can't help but hope. And 1,000 credits. She told you so." Kiyoharu fell to his knees and asked for forgiveness. At that moment, the system window announced that the first trial of the second floor was beginning. He needed to complete the starting dungeon and exit. Achievement points would be awarded depending on the number of monsters killed. MC thought the second floor trial wasn't so difficult that it would make him nervous, but he still felt like he was being watched. It was oppressive. A viewer asked, "What floor is this? Is this his first time?" Subaru answered, "Yes, this is his first challenge." A viewer asked, "Is he sure? Is streaming okay? If this is his first time, he's probably still not quite sure how he's doing." The MC was walking forward when he suddenly saw a monster in front of him and grabbed its head. The creature squealed loudly and Subaru swung his arm and threw the monster forward. The system window reported, "One-eyed bat defeated. 1 achievement point earned." The MC asked, "What's the problem?" The system window reported, "Second floor, start dungeon. First attempt begins. Please let him complete the start dungeon and exit." Achievement points will be awarded based on the number of monsters defeated. There were 3 viewers, and one of them asked, his reaction was wild, "Wait, is this guy streaming from the second floor now?" Another viewer replied, "Yes, sometimes it happens. But they quickly deflate because the number of viewers isn't increasing. It's safer not to be greedy and wait for the group to move together." Subaru wiped his hand on his pants and thanked the viewer for the advice, but that didn't work for him. He prefers to act alone. The viewers wrote, "Alone? Didn't he study beforehand? He's finished." What kind of newbies are there these days? MC thought that the name Narukami Subaru alone was enough to gather the audience. He walked forward when suddenly a monster followed him, opening its toothy mouth. MC took out his sword and killed the monster. He said, for now, he wants to see how far he can go. The system window reported, "The Mudman has been defeated. 2 achievement points have been received." The viewers asked, "Did anyone see that?" They seemed to see the Mudman, but they didn't. At that moment, many flying monsters flew towards him, which Subaru quickly dealt with. The viewer asked, "What was that? What happened?" Something happened. The viewers numbered 10. The system window reported, "The one-eyed bat has been defeated. 2 achievement points have been received. The Mudman has been defeated. 2 achievement points have been received." Subaru sheathed his sword and said, "If you focus on the sounds, you can understand where they are coming from and how many of them are coming." The viewers wrote, "They know it. He's lying. He's not a newbie at all. They probably could have done it too." MC said, "If they know, then they can do it too." The viewers laughed and wrote, "Ordinary people can." In the end, a player's talent is everything. What frantic diligence. Subaru thought, it's still not enough. He wants to get as many achievement points as possible before he gets out of here. The viewer asked, why is he always walking straight? A real man silently marches forward. Is he really prepared? If he keeps going forward like this, he'll be in trouble. Subaru stopped and looked up. The monsters noticed him and opened their glowing eyes. The viewers wrote, well, what did they say? He's finished. They'll see each other on the second try. The system window reported, his death stream gave him a quest, 10 credits if he defeats them all. The viewers asked, is this a trap? That's cruel. The MC said, whoever he was, his deadly stream, thanks to him for the 100 credits. At that moment, Kiyoharu grabbed his head and screamed. What was he doing? He got to the 6th floor just fine? And now he's fading? He apologized for yelling. It was his fault. He looked at Wick's concentrated face and asked, what was going on? What was she staring at? Wick was watching the stream and saying, something's wrong here. Kiyoharu said, it's not for big money. He's serious. He has money. He'll give it back, okay? If he tries gambling again, then... Wick interrupted him and said, she didn't mean that, Narukami Subaru. Kiyoharu asked, wait, is she still watching this guy's stream? He frowned and said, no way. The viewers tore up the chat with their incomprehension. How the MC could fight monsters so deftly. Kiyoharu asked, how many he could take down single-handedly. Subaru fought the monsters and recalled Shigure's words. He folded his arms and said, Subaru, you're amazing. Because even when he changes the direction of the sword mid-swing, his breathing and gaze never falter. MC asked again, the direction of the sword? Shigure replied, it looks like he's slashing it all in one blow from the start. Does he calculate their movements and adjust in advance? MC asked thoughtfully, does he really do that? Shigure smirked and said what an annoying guy he was. MC asked, isn't it weirder that he can't do that? Shigure replied, no, it's not weirder. Subaru was currently pondering, did Shigure find it weird too? He said, the most important things in communication are eye contact and clarity of thought. When he takes down a group of one-eyed bats at once, you don't have to think about aiming for each one's eye individually. They always stick their heads forward when attacking. So the more of them, the bigger the gap, something like that. He attacked monsters, and viewers wrote that his explanations were useless. Whoever called him a newbie, stepped forward. It's like saying if he puts his foot forward, he can walk. Subaru thought communication is difficult. Yes. A viewer said not to forget to accept credits. MC answered, exactly. He looked at his gadget and froze, and viewers asked, is everything okay with him? Is the stream frozen? Subaru ruffled his hair and asked how to accept this. Viewers laughed and wrote, okay in terms of skills, but as a streamer, he's definitely a newbie. You need to click the accept button in the task at the top of the chat window. MC thanked the viewer and said, okay, last sprint. The system window reported credits available, 150, and achievement points 118. At that moment, a loud scream rang out in the office. Vika grabbed her head and said, it's amazing. She simply had no other words. Kiyoharu said with displeasure, yes, she already has. She interrupted him and told him to talk to her here. Had he ever seen anything like this? Kiyoharu replied, she's overreacting. It's only the second floor. Wika rose from the table and screamed. Of course she was overreacting. Kiyoharu asked for forgiveness and Wika asked where he was from. Earth. Narukami Subaru, an earthling. What is this if not fate? She spread her arms in different directions and screamed, stop. What if he's the reincarnation of Narukami Subaru? This trope comes up all the time in novels. She's sure it's a reincarnation. Kiyoharu clutched his chest and thought, whenever the topic of Narukami Subaru comes up, it drives her crazy. Wika clutched her head and said, oh god, she thinks she's getting dizzy. When she closes her eyes, Kiyoharu, she can imagine. Kiyoharu screamed, no. Wika asked, no? Kiyoharu screamed, still no. Is she thinking about scouting him? Wika screamed in displeasure, but that's what she's thinking. Kiyoharu folded his arms and said, maybe he has the spark, but he's a new, lonely streamer. Wika screamed, she knows. Kiyoharu said, no, she doesn't know. If they report to the department head, he'll give them another dressing down. Wika shook with anger and screamed, and he sat up too. Why is he so serious all of a sudden? Wika blushed slightly and said, never mind, they'll watch later. She looked at the stream, and at that moment the MC walked to the door and thought, he's here. He pushed it and thought, and he's in this room too. Wolf Warrior Greg. Viewers wrote, the pressure from him is terrible. The fact that he initially didn't let the viewer in at all made him really suspect a bug. The system window reported that he needed the Wolf Warrior's approval. After passing through the gate, he could continue the test. Subaru thought about it. The Wolf Warrior isn't a monster created for hunting. This is the gatekeeper who evaluates the strength of players who have completed the starting dungeon and decides whether they can proceed. A system window with a quest appeared in front of the MC, and Subaru asked in surprise, 3,000. The viewers were writing. Another scammer had entered the chat. The man is wasting credits. Greg stood up from his seat, and the system window reported that Wolf Warrior Greg was the gatekeeper of the second floor. He said that means he's a participant. Is he alone? Greg asked, puzzled. Is he really alone? The MC replied, can't you tell? Greg replied that he was an interesting person. He sensed the spirit of a great warrior in him. The viewers were asking, the scent of a great warrior? But he said he stunk, didn't he? He was told he smelled like a goblin corpse. Subaru thought about it. Wolf tribe warriors have a special scent. It's not just body odor, they see a person's essence. Greg said he already has the right to proceed. The test is over. Let him pass. The viewers asked in surprise, who is this guy? That means such patterns do exist. Yes. Subaru scratched his head and thought, even in his past life, this had never happened. He said, pity. His target, that's him. Greg asked again, him? Not the door behind him? The MC answered, yes. Someone told him to kill him. Greg answered as expected, a man with the soul of a great warrior. After a while, employees were standing in the office of John Tail, the head of Suten Entertainment. He started typing something quickly and asked, so, how many viewers does that streamer have? Kiyoharu answered, about 20. Wika firmly said, no, he already has over 30. Kiyoharu looked at her with displeasure and thought, he won't defend her, stupid. Tail asked, puzzled. Are they kidding me? Do they think he doesn't know they're gambling during work hours? And then what? They lowered their eyes a little shyly, and Tail said, he ordered to find a promising one, and they brought him 20 viewers? Wika said 30. Tails screamed. That's not the point. Wika, why doesn't she stream herself? She has strong skills. She'll definitely gain fans. Wika screamed. The boss. She just looked in and is already over 40. Tail asked irritably. Is she even listening to him? At that moment, MC stood in front of Greg, who stretched his clawed paws forward. MC took out his sword and ordered himself not to think about anything. The system window reported that the sword absorbs the user's stamina. All stats grow proportionally to the absorbed stamina. He ordered himself to calm down. The system window reported that the wedge of greed resists the sword's recoil. Subaru thought, even if this is his first time, he needs to act as he is used to. Greg rushed into battle, and MC quickly blocked his blow. He put his leg back and tried to stop, but Greg kept attacking. Subaru thought, he's strong. He's no match for pure strength. But, Greg said, as expected of a warrior. He swung his paw and threw MC aside. He said, but he can't defeat him. Subaru clenched his sword and swung it. The spectators asked, only defense? It seems it's still impossible, but it's still dangerous. He's absolutely strong. Maybe he should try a couple or 3 times? Whoever gave him this mission should regret it. He would have passed just fine anyway. MC thought, sometimes there are ways more effective than brute force. Greg said he entertained him, warrior. But this is the end. He swung his clawed paw, but hit the wall when MC moved. He said, those are his words. Greg looked at him questioningly, and Subaru said, his attacks are too monotonous. It's easy for him to dodge. He attacked the wolf, who cried out loudly. MC dealt Greg another blow, after which he said he was an excellent warrior. He fell to the floor and the system window reported the wolf warrior was defeated. Level doubled. Strength and magic power increased by 2 points, and agility and concentration increased by 1 point. The system window reported 500 achievement points received. The audience asked in surprise, what? Wait, he really defeated him? He died standing? MC said, he won. The audience wrote, respect whoever gave the mission. They clearly didn't think he would win. The system window reported, mission completed. 3,000 credits received from the stash. MC said he would put it to use. The system window reported, 3,000 credits and 600 achievement points available. The door opens. The doors in front of him opened and he went inside. The audience wrote, something rumbled. The system windows began to show different test options. And the audience asked, 13 options? Seriously? Aren't there 16 known? The number of options is proportional to the player's talent. The system window asked, does he want to challenge the Trial of Lightning? Subaru said, of course. The system window reported, selected, Trial of Lightning. At that moment, the company employees were watching his stream. Wika screamed joyfully, and the men hugged. Tail cried out, it worked. Wika cried out, already 60 people. Have they ever seen a streamer's audience grow so quickly? And also, usually, they give a maximum of 2 or 3 challenges to choose from, and he got 13? Tail answered, really, that's impressive. Defeat the wolf warrior. They said no one had ever defeated him before. He thought about it, and yet he was still a rookie streamer on the 2nd floor. The risk of signing up for him was too great. Wika asked, head of department, does he want to challenge? Tail asked again, challenge? Wika smirked and said that if he failed to obtain the lightning, he and Kiyoharu would work salaried for 5 years, and if he successfully obtained the lightning, he would sign it without any excuses. Kiyoharu screamed in fear. What? What does this have to do with him? No, stop. He doesn't know this man. Tail smiled and asked, even if he reached the test, do they really think he has a chance? The only player who has ever obtained lightning is Narukami Subaru. Wika asked, he won't know until he tries, right? Tail replied, okay, he accepts the bet. Kiyoharu tried to object, but Wika covered his mouth. The system window reported the lightning test has begun. MC moved and asked, where is he? A loud scream was heard. Be careful. The guy grabbed MC and jumped aside. MC looked at the huge monster, and the guy screamed, stop being in the clouds. He wanted to die? The system window reported, we need to destroy a fragment of the Titan race. Subaru wondered, why is he here? The huge Titan swung his axe, and the audience was asking, what's going on here? Isn't this supposed to be the Trial of Lightning? Why is the monster already here? MC thought he should be the boss that appears in the second half of the trial. Did something change because he defeated Greg? The Titan swung his weapon and slammed the ground. Subaru stepped forward, clutching his sword. He thought, despite his huge body, he is still much weaker than Greg. It's good that he already knows about this. Falcon rushed towards him and screamed. He just covered him. He needs to get to a safe place. Subaru thought, he needs to deal with him as quickly as possible before something else intervenes. The system window reported, the demonic sword consumes the user's stamina. All stats are strengthened proportionally to the stamina spent. The blade of greed resists the side effects of the demonic sword. The Titan swung the bat and slammed the ground again, sending MC flying. He gripped his sword and quickly jumped up. He climbed onto the Titan's body and struck it in the head. The Titan screamed loudly, and Subaru ordered him to be silent for the rest of his life. The Titan fell to the ground, and the system window reported that he had defeated a fragment of the Titan race. He had passed the 4th floor. The audience asked, what 4th floor? The system window reported that he had tripled his level. Strength and endurance increased by 2 points, and speed and mana increased by 2 points. He received 4,000 credits. He received the Titan's heart item. He received the lightning item. Falcon's eyes widened in surprise, and his mouth dropped open, and the audience asked, 4,000 credits? How did he get the rewards for the first 4 floors? Did he just automatically clear the first 3 floors perfectly, just by killing a wolf warrior? Falcon ran up to MC and cried out, "Sir!" The audience asked, "Isn't that Falcon?" He went from being familiar to polite in an instant. If someone like him suddenly appeared on the 4th floor, anyone would be wary. Falcon asked why he was here. Subaru replied, "Can't you see it? He came to defeat the Titan." The audience wrote, "He came to defeat the Titan." What an aura. This guy really needs to explain himself better. After some time, people were walking along the streets, and MC was sitting inside the house on the bed. The audience asked him to show the items. Subaru said he was curious too. He offered to look together. The system window reported that the Titan's heart is of rare rank. It is a ring created by extracting a Titan's heart. It increases stamina and recovery efficiency. MC extended his hand forward and thought, having an accessory is of great value in itself, and he likes that it increases his stamina, and he was just looking for armor equipment. The system window reported that lightning is a rare defensive equipment. It is armor imbued with the power of lightning. Lightning can be used once per day. The audience wrote, "Wow, that's powerful. It looks like he can use it all the way to the 5th floor, even with equipment restrictions." Seriously though, the Titan's heart is a lifelong item. It's almost priceless. The system window reported that Simp Narukami Subaru gave him a task. 5,000 credits if he shows lightning. Good luck to him. MC thanked him, when suddenly several more system windows appeared, asking to see the lightning bolt for 3,000 credits, 5,000 credits, and 7,000 credits. MC thanked everyone and said he would definitely show them the lightning bolt. He thought he hadn't realized so many people were rooting for him to get it. Perhaps Narukami Subaru was just much more outstanding than he thought. There was a knock on the door, and he said to come in. The viewers were writing, "What timing? Were they eavesdropping?" Knights entered the house, and Falcon said, "He apologizes for the wait." This was Lord Pilius, the head of the knights of their village. Pilius nodded and said, "Nice to meet you." Falcon said that Titan attacks have been increasing lately. They, the knights, are on full combat alert 24/7. For the safety of the villagers, they were also advised to avoid unnecessary exits. So they found it very strange to meet a stranger at such a time. Peleus said he heard that the village was under protection while he was away. On behalf of all the villagers, he wants to express his gratitude. MC replied, "No, he only did what he had to." He thought, Peleus, he's a brave knight, the face of this village, and the one who dared to fight the Titans. Peleus said they were lucky that they found the leader of the Titans this time. They intend to finish him off at all costs. He's very sorry to ask him this, but could he help them save the village? The knights bowed, and MC looked at them carefully. The audience asked, "Is he going to die?" Someone asked without spoilers. Subaru thought, if his memory serves him correctly, Peleus dies on the next floor. MC extended his hand and asked them to raise their heads. He will help them. He offered to fight together. Peleus happily thanked him. The system window reported, "This is the beginning of the 5th floor. Survival." After a while, knights walked across the field with Peleus as their leader. MC looked at the screen of his gadget and thought as the number of viewers grew, the comments were pouring in a continuous stream. He wouldn't be able to communicate with them properly this way. Peleus ordered him to stop. He pointed his finger forward and said, "It's him, the leader of the Titans." He went forward and said he'll distract him and let him attack from behind, sir. MC put his hand on his shoulder and told him to wait. Peleus turned around in surprise, and MC said, "He's not alone." The Titans began to rise from the ground and walk towards the knights. Peleus cried out, "What?" A Titan grabbed a knight, who fearfully asked him to stop. He asked for help. The Titan killed the knight, after which the order was given to retreat to the foot of the mountain. Faster. The Titans began to scream loudly and grab the knights. The guy with tears in his eyes ordered him to stop. He looked at the knight's corpse and screamed, "Brother!" Peleus turned around and shouted, "All fighters leave the battlefield. This is an order. They need to think about the village and the families waiting for them at home. Their fight isn't over yet. They'll be back. Falcon, let him lead them." He turned around and saw MC behind him, who also needed to leave. He ordered to let them regroup and challenge them. MC replied, "These are his words." "Is he still here?" Peleus apologized and asked what he was doing. Subaru said, "Without one, but he can't act freely while he's around. If he really doesn't want to leave, then they can all die happily together." Peleus said, "But to abandon the outsider and run themselves." MC asked him not to make him repeat himself. Peleus started to run away and shouted, "Then he will gather the soldiers. Please let him hold out as long as he can until they return." MC thanked him, and Peleus cried out, "They owe him a huge debt. Please let him take care of himself." The Titans screamed loudly, and MC swung his sword and said, "His opponent, it is him." He quickly attacked the Titan and rushed on. The Titans looked at him carefully and cried out, and the system window reported that he had defeated 2 Titan fragments. He received 20 credits. Subaru braced himself and said, even if this is just a test, he can't afford to leave. At that moment, Peleus walked through the forest and turned around, clenching his jaw. He saw MC, who was covered in mana, and stopped in front of the Titans. The spectators asked, "Is he going to fight everyone? There are too many of them." He just needs to survive, right? Why did he send the others away anyway? The number of points depends on the number of points remaining. This is no longer just survival. It is impossible to complete this stage. Subaru thought that with his current skills, he might be able to save everyone, including Peleus, who was supposed to die here. The Titans rushed towards MC, but he deftly dodged and struck. The system window reported that he had defeated a Titan fragment and received 10 credits. He attacked another Titan and received 10 credits. The sword consumes the user's stamina. All stats are enhanced proportionally to the stamina expended. Subaru thought removing them one by one is easy. The problem is how long he can continue to borrow the sword's power. Then he needs to clear the view and find the boss. He attacked the monster and moved on. He pushed off the Titan's body and hit another in the face. He quickly moved along their bodies further, and the audience wrote, if he stumbles even one step, he's finished. Aerial combat was actually Narukami Subaru's specialty. They got goosebumps. The system window reported that the Wedge of Greed resists the sword's side effect. Restores the user's stamina and mana. MC thought his stamina consumption has changed. Equipment really makes a difference. He needs to finish off the boss before it reaches its limit. He saw the tallest Titan ahead and realized, here it is. The Titan leader laughed and Subaru swung his sword, thinking that if he didn't finish him off in one blow, he was done for. Please, let it work. He's asking for it. MC snapped his fingers, and the system window reported that he had used a lightning strike. A deafening roar erupted over the battlefield. A bright bolt of lightning struck the Titans, who clutched their heads. The Titan leader screamed, "You vile human." The system window reported that the demonic sword was depleting the user's stamina. Subaru grabbed the sword's hilt with both hands and stabbed it into the Titan's head. Blood gushed from the Titan's mouth, and he fell to the ground. The other Titans sat on the ground, clutching their heads. The system window reported that he had defeated a representative of the Titan race. He had passed the 5th floor, survival. He had accomplished an astonishing feat. He had doubled his level and increased his stats. The audience asked, have they ever been defeated? How is it even possible to get to this point? He's quite the balance breaker, defeating monsters that should be unbeatable. MC thought, according to the rules of the manga, the protagonist dies here. The Titans began to recover and rise, and MC looked at his sword again. The system window reported that the Wedge of Greed couldn't counter the sword's side effects. Subaru jumped off the leader's body and thought, so that's it? Even if he cleared the floor, the monsters would keep respawning until he completed the trial itself. He couldn't believe that he was now crying over the same mechanism he once used. This was bad. He was losing strength. The Titans grinned and walked towards him, and he released lightning mana again. At that moment, Rina was sitting near the forest hut, holding a gadget in her hands. Shigure approached her and asked what she was doing here. Rina asked, isn't the weather nice and the air fresh? This is the only time they could enjoy this. Shigure asked, is it time? She replied, yes. A whole year had passed. Shigure said, it's time to put an end to this. Rina looked at him carefully, and he turned around and said, she's always like this, even when he's serious. What is she looking at? Rina asked. Is this? She thought his name was Narukami Subaru. Shigure looked at her screen and cried out, Subaru? Did she just say Subaru? Rina replied, not the Subaru they know, of course. He just calls himself that. He's a streamer who just started going through the 2nd floor trials. Viewers wrote about his amazing moves. He's definitely not a newbie. Rina asked, he already got it, right? If Subaru had survived back then, Kyojo Kazuki would have left the tower long ago. Shigure asked, what was she trying to say? Rina said sadly, Subaru is dead. Stop denying it already. Shigure said discontentedly, stop talking. Rina screamed, Shigure, how much longer is he going to live in his shadow? Shigure turned around and asked, what about herself? Why is she watching this then? He took the gadget from her, and Rina said, she's just killing time. He widened his eyes in surprise, and Shigure said, even now she still is. He looked at the stream and said in surprise, this. The MC at that moment released lightning and attacked the Titans. The system window reported, the lightning skill has been acquired. 2,000 achievement points have been earned. Does he wish to continue the challenge? Does he wish to advance to the next floor? The audience was seriously asking. Amazing. This is insane. No wonder Narukami Subaru didn't tell anyone. Even if he had, they still wouldn't have been able to do it. MC thought, no, this isn't something you can learn like that. The system window reported that the lightning skill is rank A+. It consumes stamina and mana to use the power of lightning. It can be improved with additional lightning shards. Subaru thought anyway, thank goodness he survived. The system window reported that the tasks were completed and he received many thousands of credits. MC thanked everyone, and the system window reported that he had 20,000 credits. Subaru said he heard that the answer to donations should be a thank you show. The system window reported the challenge is resuming. The Titans started making loud noises and MC offered to show them. The system window reported that 20,000 credits had been spent, leveling up the Wedge of Greed skill. The Wedge of Greed is now level 3 and it resists the recoil of the lightning skill. MC thought he'd like to cover his entire body, but for now, he'd limit himself to his hand. The system window reported covering his hand with the lightning skill. The Titans rushed to attack and MC released his mana and thought, okay. The system window reported covering his sword with the lightning skill. Subaru mentally suggested they break away, like in the good old days. He quickly attacked the Titans, scattering their bodies in all directions. MC thought, oh my god, he was planning to save some strength to come back, but he miscalculated how much he needed to restrain himself. He sheathed his sword, and at that moment the knights returned to the battlefield. Peleus looked around in surprise and shouted, "Mr. Savior!" MC turned around and started breathing heavily. He said, "That idiot, he really came." He closed his eyes. After a while, Wika grabbed her head and the men looked at her carefully. Kiyoharu asked, "Was this really a matter of national importance?" Tails said not to ask. He's not a reader of women's hearts. Wika said no. What should she do? Was she too callous? He might think she contacted him on a business matter. She should have added emoji. Kiyoharu apologized for interrupting her flight of fancy, but she really did write on business. Did she fall in love? Tails said seriously. She said she wanted to be a streamer's manager. Let her look at herself now. Wika frowned and replied, "She can't help herself. She's a fan first and a manager second. And she already said that, right?" Tail looked at her carefully, and Wika said that what used to be lightning available only to Narukami Subaru was now lightning belonging to another Subaru. Kiyoharu said they somehow managed to keep up with the salaries. Tail grinned and said not everyone can learn that. This man definitely needs to be kept an eye on. Kiyoharu looked at his gadget screen and said, "Boss?" Wika looked at him happily, and Kiyoharu said, "Narukami Subaru read their letter, but he simply left it as is." Wika quickly paled, and Kiyoharu said, "That woman," Tails said, "she died standing up." After a while, a voice rang out in the room with many figurines. "Okay then, it's time to go stream." Specializing in analyzing players' combat capabilities, he built an unshakable reputation for himself, using his insight and streaming experience to outshine all competitors. Hawkeye. He reviewed battle recordings of numerous players and provided thoughtful, accurate analysis. He analyzed Kurokawa Amon, who recently entered the blue zone. Hawkeye said, "A dark horse is rising at insane speed in the tower. He's already being called the second coming of Narukami Subaru. It's Hawkeye's time." And also the real Blue Eyes member, Kyojo Kazuki. Hawkeye said that now that he's become the greatest player in the world, the weight of responsibility on Kyojo Kazuki's shoulders must be colossal. So today they'll be taking a closer look at his skills. And, of course, the legend that has outlived an entire generation, Narukami Subaru. Hawkeye asked that when he thinks of an incomparable player, who comes to mind first? They've probably already thought of him. Yes, that's right, it's Narukami Subaru. He started the stream and said, "Hi, it's him, Hawkeye. Thanks for stopping by again." Today, he and Hawkeye will be taking a closer look at the hottest player at the moment, Narukami Subaru. The viewers were asking, is Narukami Subaru back? Fake, right? He just got past the second floor. Isn't it too early? Hawkeye said, "Well, no need to be so dismissive right away." He opened the tab with the MC stream and said, "This is crazy. What's going on?" Hawkeye said happily, "Oh my god, his concentration is simply off the charts. He just got the skill, and he's already using it with such incredible precision. Is he even human? He controlled his skills and put exactly as much power into the blade as possible. He didn't waste a drop of extra energy." The viewers were asking, is this even possible? What is he talking about? So that's it? Hawkeye thought. He has not only the concentration and technique to finally control his skills, but also the judgment to get the most out of them. He didn't stumble once during the entire fight. Where did this monster even come from? Even half the viewers don't seem to understand what's going on. Hawkeye smiled and said, "This guy is definitely going to be a big deal. They will be watching him in the next episodes of Hawkeye Time." The viewers were asking, does he want to go hunting with him? Well, he's a dreamer. He's simply incredible. And to sum it up, Hawkeye stuck out his tongue and said, "Exactly." He forgot about Hawkeye's verdict. Judging only by control, he might even be better than Narukami Subaru at his peak. After a while, MC opened his eyes and screamed loudly. The system window reported, "The 6th floor is waiting. Fatigue is completely neutralized." Does he want to pause the test? To pause the test, 2 conditions must be met. First, the previous stage must be completed, and the next one has not yet started. Second, he must fully recover from fatigue. MC thought. He didn't feel tired, but that didn't mean he wasn't mentally exhausted. Perhaps he'd take a short break. MC looked at the screen of his gadget and thanked everyone for watching today. He saw that he had almost 800 viewers and wondered where so many came from. Subaru apologized and said the next stream would be tomorrow, after the day off. The system window reported, Narukami Subaru had ended the stream. He moved to the floor's waiting area and saw doors in front of him. He looked at the screen and read a message marked important. Wika asked him to check the message they sent. MC removed his mask and asked if this was spam. Suten Entertainment. After a while, he was sitting in the establishment and reading about Suten Entertainment. It's a leading company specializing in live streamer management. It's one of the fastest growing companies in the industry, known for its active investments and support of streamers. Subaru thought times have really changed. Who would have thought such companies would appear? And very large ones at that. One of the leading companies in the industry. MC read the headline about the streamer Hawkeye and thought, Hawkeye? So he's also associated with Suten Entertainment, the same streamer known for his directness. He said, but he has a brilliant eye. At that moment, Isaac, who had been watching Hawkeye's stream and heard the words about Subaru at his peak, approached the establishment. Isaac asked irritably, is he kidding me? He only got past the 2nd floor. He's a nobody. Hawkeye, as soon as he clears this floor, he'll rip his eyes out. He spat on the ground and said, what a nightmare, to ruin my mood in the morning like that. He laughed and said, is today a day of total bad luck? Subarus are everywhere you look. He walked up to MC and knocked over his drink. Subaru jumped up from his chair and looked at him irritably. Isaac said, sorry. He smirked and asked, "Is that him, Subaru? They've been crossing paths a lot lately. The second floor really is cramped." Subaru looked at the screen and Isaac asked, "Do you want me to pay for his coffee? He's always broke, so he should be grateful." Subaru walked past him, and Isaac called out to him irritably. He said he warned him last time. "Is there a screw loose in his head?" He walked up to Subaru and grabbed him by the collar. He said, "You jerk. Is he stuck up and thinking he can get away with it? He should just say it straight if he wants to get beat up. He'll happily give him the time of day like before." MC said he's sorry, but he doesn't have time for that. He slapped Isaac's hand away. Who thought? Puzzled. This guy. Was he always this strong? Subaru started to leave and said, "They'll assume he's already compensated him with coffee. Thank you very much." Isaac grabbed his hand and shouted after him, "Wait, jerk." Subaru left the room and closed the door behind him. Isaac chuckled and said, as soon as he started calmly climbing the tower, Narukami Subaru or Hosoi Subaru, they're all making fun of him. MC looked at the screen and said, "Right." At that moment, Wiki was lying in the bathtub with a rubber ducky when a message came on her phone. Narukami Subaru invited her to meet in person. Sometime later, the protagonist found himself in a dungeon filled with monsters. He grabbed his sword, and the system informed him he was entering the boss room of the exiled lizardman's hideout. The Wedge of Greed level 3 was resisted by the side effects of the unnamed demonic sword. Subaru thought he was gradually getting used to this body, but there were still some problems. At that moment, the boss salamander appeared and glowed with a bright flame. This creature opened its maw and bared its teeth. He understood that if he wanted to avoid unpleasant consequences, unlike last time, he needed to understand how much energy he could release to safely control lightning. A moment later, the system reported that lightning skills had coated his legs. Bright flames continued to spread from the salamander, and the protagonist swung his sword to defeat it when he suddenly tensed. The salamander revealed its maw, but Subaru didn't give up. The system reported that the nameless demonic sword had been coated with lightning. This was resisted by the nameless demonic sword side effect. The resistance rate, or his fatigue, had increased. Subaru couldn't defeat his opponent and continued swinging. The system reported that he was clearing the dungeon of the exiled lizardman's hideout. He leveled up, and his strength increased by 1, as did his stamina and mana. After some time, he emerged from the dungeon into the forest and reflected on how the stamina reduction effect had worked much better than he expected. And on top of that, he had a decent level of fatigue. This should be enough to further increase his power output, but the price doubles with each level? That's cruel. If only someone would just appear out of nowhere and offer him a proper job for once. Suddenly, he heard someone ask him, "Is he hunting?" Subaru looked at Isaac, who started to approach him, and he asked, "Is it him?" That's what he didn't expect to see here. He smiled and said they'd known each other forever, and he still managed to surprise him. Subaru called him a pushy jerk, and he asked if he'd actually thought about that, okay? But he was already at his limit. So much anger had been building up. Subaru came closer to him, and he asked what he'd say. Would they end this once and for all? Subaru thought this guy was really angering him. Sometime later, a large crowd had gathered in the city in the evening. Hawkeye went inside and suddenly heard someone calling him. It was Tail, who was waiting for him, and Hawkeye said they hadn't seen each other for a long time. He asked how his streams were going. Hawkeye replied, "Yeah, so-so. Mostly the same regular viewers, so the numbers weren't changing much." The man replied that it was even healthier this way, and that what he was slowly accumulating wouldn't suddenly collapse. Hawkeye replied, "Yeah, so why did he drag him out for tea out of the blue? He said he really lives up to his nickname. He's talking about that new guy he was picking apart yesterday, Subaru. Was he serious about him?" Hawkeye asked. Did he mean the new guy? Yes, it's as he said. In pure talent, he could easily surpass Subaru in his prime, and whether he can reach his level is another question. Tail thought for a moment and replied, "I get it, so that's how he reads it." Hawkeye asked, "Why is he asking that?" He replied that he was thinking about luring him to the agency. Subaru was surprised and said, "Wow, sir, but isn't his audience too small? He's practically a nobody." He replied that it was true, but after hearing his assessment, he was finally convinced that he and Subaru should do a joint stream. They'll do some promotion, boost his numbers, and make a name for himself. Meanwhile, in the forest, Isaac approached Subaru and said, "It's just the two of them here now." Subaru asked again, "So what?" He grinned and replied, "That's what happens when a person gets cocky and goes underground. Idiot. If he's alive, does that mean he left early?" He told him to sit here quietly, buddy. But don't tell him he really decided to be the next Subaru just because he caught a little attention and dreamed of being able to master lightning, like that streamer said. He grabbed him by the shoulder and said that if that jerk was dead, let him stay in the grave and rot quietly. Everyone pisses him off. Damn them all. He thinks so too, right? Even Subaru didn't expect to end up on a block full of imitators of his name. He asked if he could ask something. Why does he hate him so much? He answered that it's because his name is Subaru. He asked again, so why does he hate that name? Everyone else seems to like it. Isaac started screaming. He knew who his father was, didn't he? Subaru asked again. What did his father have to do with it? He was a grown man. Why was he still blaming him for everything? He replied that it was because his father was Reinhard, a high-ranking fighter on the 9th floor. The protagonist was dumbfounded and asked again, Reinhard? That same one-hit swordsman? He recalled the old days when people would shout about something incredible happening, a newcomer appearing like a comet. Subaru of the Blue-Eyed Lands had just defeated Runo continent ranker Reinhard with a single blow. It all happened in less than 30 seconds, and Reinhardt was screaming that he could still fight, but his hands shook and he was destroyed. That's why Isaac had just called him a freak and told him not to dare say his name so casually. Subaru assumed that he essentially considered him his enemy for both the one-hit sword and, more accurately, for his father. He even understands how much Hawkeye suffered because of him. Thorns screamed at him to shut up because if he said one more word, he would destroy him, when suddenly he used his magical flames and decided to attack the protagonist who told him to stop. They exchanged glances and he told him to stop talking, let him just die already. He screamed that he hated Subaru and that he hadn't done a damn thing, and everyone around him was wagging their tails like he was a big shot. And it was only because someone like him was a guildmaster that even the lackeys of his low-ranking guild became arrogant, and in the end, they all went down together like complete idiots. They don't need this. They're probably rotting somewhere in hell right now, paying for all their sins. And he was just unlucky enough to be born with such a name, that's all. At that moment, he directed his rage towards Subaru and exhaled saying, "I'm sorry." He couldn't help himself. They were supposed to be friends. How could he even say something like that? Maybe he should go and finish off that masked streamer next? At that moment, he froze and realized that Subaru was standing unharmed amidst the clearing dust. He asked again, "Is he talking about that mask?" Isaac exclaimed that it simply couldn't be. He took a direct hit. How is he even still alive? Subaru asked, "Will he finally shut up?" At that moment, he started running and said that he was a pretty big guy and hit him right in the chest. He cried out in pain and fell to the ground, kneeling. Blood began to flow from his mouth, and Subaru said that he had no right to throw mud at them. Isaac wiped the blood from his face and asked, "Why is he doing this? It was pointless." Subaru covered his face with his hand and said, "Okay, he'll ask him who he thinks is standing in front of him now. The whiny Hawkeye he once bullied, the streamer in the Subaru mask, or the Subaru of the blue eyes himself." He replies that this is too much. Does he mean to say that he is that streamer Subaru? Seriously, his lightning is so-so. If even trash like him managed to master it, did he really think a weakling like him could defeat him? If a loser who couldn't even touch him before managed to obtain lightning, doesn't that mean he's stronger than the Subaru of the blue eyes? Is he right or not? At that moment, Isaac became very angry and flared up with anger again, using his magic, when suddenly the protagonist cut off his hand and his blood began to splash out. Subaru replied, "No, not at all. It's amazing how much he missed." Isaac was dumbfounded and asked, "What does he mean by that?" He recalled those moments when Subaru asked again if he had any idea how much Hawkeye had suffered because of him. Maybe he was finally going to get wet. His body shook with fear, and he realized it simply couldn't be happening. He was the blue eyes. At that moment, the protagonist destroyed his opponent and declared the game's over. The last drops of blood trickled from his body, and Subaru, clutching his face, said he thought he'd had enough. Considerate payment for borrowing his friend's body. After a while, the guys gathered in the coffee shop couldn't understand what was happening to him. Was this a Subaru fan or something? Did he even realize how pathetic this looked? It looked like he was also streaming. Subaru, meanwhile, sat in his mask, contemplating sticking to his plan where the Subaru streamer never showed his real face. Hiding one's identity provides a huge advantage, especially when the operational side has no idea who they're dealing with. At that moment, a girl approached him and yelled an apology for keeping him waiting. He tensed, and she said, "Hello, it's nice to meet you." Her name is Wika. She was the manager who had contacted him. He extended his hand and greeted her, telling her his name. She replied that it was a great honor to finally meet him. She hesitated and realized that he really did look like him. And if the real Subaru had returned alive, hiding his face behind a mask, then... But before she could fully consider this thought, Subaru suddenly asked, "Is something wrong?" She blushed even more deeply and said no. She was simply lost in thought and remembered the words of her boss, who had shouted that nothing was more important than first impressions and that she must earn his trust at all costs. And she should never show that she was unreliable. She realized she had already failed at first impressions. Subaru looked at her silently, and she grabbed her head in fear. He asked if she was a fan of the late Subaru. She exclaimed in surprise, "Yes, that's right. She's his ardent fan." Subaru replied that he wasn't real, so please let her relax, and it seemed he was even younger than her. Wika replied no, she was a fan too. Actually, she started watching him when he didn't have an audience yet, so she was the first one, and when he easily defeated the one-eyed bats and Greg's trial came and chose the trial of lightning, she kept screaming at the screen, and that's what brought her here today. And when he encountered the Titan fragments, her palms even started sweating, and she was so happy when he chopped off their heads in one breath. Subaru realized that she really was his first viewer, and she remembered far more details than he did. He smiled and said that he was so clumsy back then, that it was strange to him that she saw him like that. She asked again, strange, right? She also thought it was fate, so she begged the company to assign her to work with him. Wika knew it was time to show her professionalism and convinced him. They had already prepared a contract. Since it was quite extensive, he should let her summarize it. Their company would handle everything: advertising, events, merch, everything that could be built around the Subaru brand. He asked what was required of him. Wika said he should continue streaming as before. He asked if being a streamer was really that convenient. Wika replied that he was the first streamer to ever master lightning. Besides, her boss and the entire company thought highly of him. She thought she had a little more work to do, and this was the final push. So what did he think? He asked if all the managers in the company were like her. She blushed and replied in a shaky voice, "No, everyone else is way cooler and more reliable than her. It's not that she's unreliable," but she didn't finish. And Subaru replied that he didn't mean that. He understood that her aura was completely different from that of an ordinary player. Had the average level really risen so much that someone like her was just a manager? She knew she was finished, and Subaru wondered what it meant. The opponents he would have to face would be even stronger, and he had no time to rest and needed to speed up. Wika was embarrassed by how unreliable she seemed. What if he reneged on the contract? If things got really bad, would they have to force him to sign it? He abruptly extended his hand and said he saw that she could be trusted. She exclaimed in surprise, and Subaru said he looked forward to their collaboration. She blushed and replied that it was mutual, then shook his hand. After a while, he started streaming again, and his viewers had already reached 703. He realized they had so many by the start of the broadcast, and it seemed Wika's early announcement had worked. Okay, now he starts. The system announced that the 6th floor of the legend had begun, and he found himself in a forest where a heavy rain was falling. There were many knights gathered around a table, looking at a map to decide their future. The main one asked, "Has their benefactor woken up yet?" Another answered, "No." One viewer said that, frankly, he seriously doubted they could even trust someone who wasn't even a knight. The guys confirmed this because it was hard to believe that some stranger had appeared out of nowhere and single-handedly killed the Titan boss. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, then maybe they were simply deceived. What if it wasn't the boss, but some ordinary monster? He asked. How can they say that? At that moment, someone exclaimed that their benefactor had woken up, and Subaru entered the tent. Peleus ran up to him and asked if he was okay. Subaru thanked him for it and said he could go on his own. This was the hero who defeated the Titan boss? He didn't look strong at all, and that mask was eerily suspicious. Subaru asked if they really didn't believe he did it, or if they just didn't want to believe it. He recalled Wika's words, who said that if you adopt a pre-saved pose, the microphone adjusts so that only the audience hears your voice. It's a very useful function for such boring situations. He was commenting on how they were being overconfident, and one of the knights approached him and said, "Let me thank him first. His name is Dale." Subaru said he was pleased to meet him, believing they were meeting for the first time. Dale replied yes, he defended the village, but everyone was crushed. He asked again, "Crushed?" Dale confirmed, "That's right, that monster." Subaru wondered, what kind of monster? Could there really be anyone more dangerous than the boss? Dale confirmed this guess, and perhaps he already knew, but long ago, the true titans who left with the gods were sealed and disappeared. Those that exist now are mostly nothing more than the traces they left behind. However, the titan that came after the one he killed was different, much closer to the legendary titans. He didn't think such monsters still existed. He clutched his head, and silence fell between them. Then Subaru said that then they would simply have to kill him. Those around him murmured, such confidence, although they were in no position to ask for his help. But isn't that tantamount to a death sentence? The knights discussed whether he said so because they hadn't seen him yet. At that moment, Peleus called out to the Sir and said that there was an ancient legend passed down through generations. Millennium Mountain, at the top of this colossal mountain, hides a hidden lightning shard, and he believes he alone can find it. After some time, a massive fire erupted, causing many ordinary people to flee in fear. Horrific creatures attacked them from all sides, taking advantage of the situation. The leader of these monsters spoke, Pidel, his son. He grabbed all the knights from the city with his ordinary hands, who screamed, "No!" This creature clutched these people in its hands, and blood seeped through its fingers. It spoke, "I will send you on your final journey with the blood of these people." The protagonist, standing nearby, realized it was him. He seriously intended to kill him. Commentators posted their guesses. Subaru remembered that Peleus had told him it would take the Titan about 3 days to get here. If he didn't find the shard in that time, he would have to flee, and this was the only way to survive. They approached Millennium Mountain. Subaru realized he needed lightning to kill the Titan, and perhaps that was the point of the challenge. At that moment, his friend said no. There are no challenges impossible to pass. He realized his old catchphrase had just burst out of his mouth. At that moment, the system announced that the stash had issued a quest. How about 3,000 credits if he wins? He was also given the quest, and he realized no one seemed to notice, and the reward was quite good. He grabbed his horse and pulled it toward him, then stopped and stepped to the ground. He understood that the lightning shard must be here. When he looked straight ahead, he saw a huge, tall mountain and, pausing, turned to look at his horse. He remembered Peleus approaching him and saying that lightning shards only appear in legends, and no one knows what they really are, a unique power, an object, or even a person. Subaru asked again, does he know how to get one? He replied that, unfortunately, they only know the location of the mountain and the legend itself, But one thing is certain, in the distant past, someone wielding lightning completely wiped out the Titans. At that moment, Wika grabbed the system and, while talking to her boss, he asked, "How did it go?" After a brief silence, she exclaimed that the meeting was a success. He asked again, "Really? Then this is great work. She's doing well, and she's finally becoming a normal person." Wika grinned and threw her bag on the table as she entered her house. She screamed, "Is that really true? Wait, was that a compliment?" He replied, "Of course." He even met Subaru and had something to tell her. At that moment, she exclaimed that it was done and lay down happily on the bed. It was time for her to watch his stream. As she started watching, a look of embarrassment crossed her face, and she realized that seeing him through a screen and in person was the height of happiness. Meanwhile, he was saying that there were no impossible challenges. She looked into his eyes in surprise, then suddenly jumped up, confused. Did he just utter Subaru's catchphrase, which is over 20 years old? This startled her greatly, and at that moment, lightning struck over the mountain. The protagonist didn't defend himself in any way, and the commentators were confused. Had he gone crazy? He clenched his fist and punched the mountain, asking, "Now they'll see which one is stronger?" After the powerful impact, numerous fragments and bright beams of light appeared around. A multitude of rocks began to fall to the ground, and Subaru said with a smile that he had found what he needed. A bright glow emanated from his hand, and no one understood what was happening. He thought that of course they were confused, and it was impossible to sense it through the stream. It was colossal lightning energy, powerfully summoning his own lightning. It was right behind this door. He stepped forward, and no one understood what he was doing or how he was going to open this door. After all, he didn't have a key. He extended his hand and used his magical powers, thinking how obvious the clue was, meaning the real test must be behind this door. The system reported that he had used lightning, a level 3 blade of greed that resists lightning recoil. Pulling his hand forward, he muttered that since this so fervently called to him, he could not help but respond. With these words, he rushed forward and struck the scale again, causing a discrepancy to appear within. He found himself inside a room, and suddenly, the entrance clicked shut. The protagonist stared ahead silently, pondering for a moment, then took a step inside. The system informed him that he had entered the path of lightning. He could not leave the area until the stage was completed. Meanwhile, the knights standing near the tents protected Peleus and his colleagues, who had gathered for a meeting. Dale turned to Peleus and asked if he truly believed he would obtain the lightning shard. Peleus tensed, then replied that he was certain, and Dale asked why he trusted this stranger so much. Peleus replied that he had already proven his abilities and had no reason to doubt him. Dale was dumbfounded by this, and suddenly someone exclaimed, "This shard, they will all die here." Everyone turned to see the trembling knight muttering that they didn't understand anything. They couldn't even imagine how powerful these titans were, and he was experiencing it firsthand. Peleus leaned over to the boy and said that this doesn't mean they should just give up. Okay? He's suggesting they at least have more faith in him. Let him believe in the young hero who'd done so much for them without asking for anything in return. With these words, he placed his hand on his shoulder, but the boy continued to cry, murmuring in a trembling voice that it was easy for him to say that. Everyone around him was stunned by what he heard, and suddenly everything began to shake. An alarm sounded, and a guard knight burst in, shouting that they were coming. All the knights tensed and looked into the distance in fear. Meanwhile, the protagonist didn't understand what this test even wanted from him. He was passing through a bright tunnel, and the commentators were also saying that they couldn't see anything here. Lightning was too fast to see. Subaru thought that this was logical, and after all, immediately before lightning, it was just a scattered electrical discharge in the air. Therefore, it was impossible to see. This meant that relying on vision in this test was pointless. The test is called the Path of Lightning, and he feels the colossal energy of lightning passionately calling him from the depths. At that moment, his eyes widened, and he realized he thought this test was a scattering of invisible lightning in the air. And the further he advanced, the stronger the reaction became. When he approached the edge of this tunnel, he realized he was right on target. But even if he understood everything correctly in this test, he had no choice but to continue deeper. He didn't understand what kind of joke this was, and it seemed this time the endurance test had begun. If he made a mistake, he would die. The system reported that an air allergy had given him 100 credits and asked what he was afraid of. The other guys gave him tasks and rewarded him with credits. He used his magical aura and walked to the end of the tunnel, thanking him for the tasks. Meanwhile, Siwoo was alone in his room. He silently watched the stream when he suddenly jumped up. Rina entered the room and asked in surprise, "What is he hiding? Was he really watching adult videos?" He replied that he wasn't hiding anything and didn't understand what she was talking about. His eyes were just tired. She asked again, "Is that so? People say that latent pervert's hair grows faster." He got angry and asked her to stop talking nonsense. He said it wasn't like that. Rina said that, as she said, she quit watching the stream and was now going crazy with boredom. Siwoo wondered, "Really? Why did she come here then?" She asked again, "What kind of reaction is that? Was he saying that she shouldn't lie on the couch?" At that moment, Subaru said on the stream that it seemed he had no other choice but to endure it as long as he could. This was heard through a special tablet, and he was afraid that she would hear him and started screaming, Why is she misinterpreting his words? He screamed so loudly that Rina grabbed her ears and asked why he was screaming so much. He yelled at her to please sit on the couch as long as she wanted and not to worry about him at all. At that moment, he managed to mute the sound with his hand and said that although she usually barely listened to him, Rina looked at him in bewilderment, then jumped up and said she was annoying. He asked again, where was she going? She knew she could stay for a while. Let her eat and lie down if she wanted. Rina went upstairs and slammed her door. She was offended by Siwoo, who silently watched her go, and realized she almost caught him. If she found out he was watching the stream, she would start a scene again. He dreaded to think what happened then. Even if their situations were reversed, Subaru would never forget them. At that moment, Subaru was saying that if he made a mistake, he would die. And Siwoo realized that even his personality and manner of speech were very similar to Subaru's. Subaru thanked him for the task, and Siwoo reflected on how his eagerness to earn credits was completely out of character. He didn't understand what was going on. Rina came up to him from the other side, grabbed him by the shoulder, and asked, "Nothing special. What about him?" He turned silently to look at her. Startled, she asked again. Did he really think she hadn't noticed? He wouldn't even have enough time to learn to outwit her. At that moment, the system announced it was paving the way for lightning. The protagonist tensed and looked to the side, then took a step, and at that moment, his progress was 2.3%. Rays of light continued to emanate from his body, and he felt a familiar sensation. He had encountered lightning countless times before. His progress began to rise, and he realized he still had a long way to go, but at least they were kind enough to tell him where the finish line was. He wouldn't be able to read this chat anymore. Achieving his goals was predetermined, but if possible, he wanted to raise the bar even higher. He stretched his hand into the distance, and Hawkeye watched him, remembering the words he'd used to say that he and Subaru should do a joint stream. When was the last time the boss had personally contributed to content creation? He recalled his words when Tail had said something he'd already told him about how he could only do half the work when it came to the idea of a faster player. Hawkeye replied that he understood everything. Popularity depended on who was promoting which players were currently in the spotlight. Tail confirmed that this was indeed the case. Subaru's streams were more like a veteran player's blog than a fan interaction. He might be new to streaming, but let him just do a regular broadcast with him as a spectator. Hawkeye responded with silence, and Tails said this could be his chance. He must brighten the momentum and become the star that rises alongside this one. Hawkeye was surprised by these words, and his eyes lit up at the idea. He scratched his head and said he'd gotten into streaming because he wasn't sure he could climb the tower. He wanted to be a star more than anyone else. With these thoughts in mind, he looked up at the sky and wondered if he could really become like them. But at that moment, he was at his computer desk and froze when he started falling and cried out. He didn't understand what he was even doing in the middle of work hours. When he looked at the monitor, he started screaming. What was going on? Had he gone crazy? Subaru covered his head with his hands and continued to walk forward. Magical sparks emanated from his body, but bruises appeared and veins swelled. He was covered in blood, but he kept walking and trying. His breathing was ragged, and he tried to catch his breath. Subaru understood that the stronger the lightning, the deeper it penetrated the body, and that should be enough. It began to travel along every tiny impulse in his body, starting with the Ren and Du meridians. His progress was already 20%. The system reported that penetration of the subtle impulses was in progress. The lightning was sinking roots inside his body, and his mana had increased by 1. The Ren and Du meridians are the two main energy channels running through the center of the body. Subtle impulses are the smallest channels connecting everything within the human system. Penetrating them means that the energy has reached every point, even the most distant ones. In other words, his internal energy has completely spread throughout his body. He's clearing out the impurities clogging his subtle pulses, and he's essentially using a bypass. The system has reported a status error, striking him with electricity. Normally, one would use one's own mana for this, but he uses lightning to ease the process, but the pain is simply unbearable. He tried to catch his breath, but blood began to gush out of his body. Wika, watching him silently from home, looked sadly at the screen. She understood that he was trying to access his subtle pulses and was doing it on the fly, using external force instead of his own mana or internal energy. The pain must be simply unbearable. Most people wouldn't even be able to sit up straight. 80 or 90% would lose consciousness instantly. And even if the pain in the trials doesn't cause actual harm, it feels just like real pain. So why would he go so far? She blushed with embarrassment and continued to boast about this hero. The system had already reported 50% progress, penetrating the subtle pulses in progress. He understood that it was all his fault. He practically killed them. He recalled his past when he asked the guys again. Had he always told them there were no impossible tests? Let them relax. He would eventually prevail. His entire team had confidence in him, and remembering them, he realized that if he hadn't said something so reckless, his arrogance wouldn't have pushed them so hard. None of them had died. He recalled the words of one of the heroes he'd uttered. seriously, everything that happens when a person gets too arrogant. And it was all his fault. After some time, he went completely through the tunnel and fell to the ground. One day, he found himself in a sunny clearing and looked around, not understanding where he was. He saw a crowd of guys gathered near a tree and was surprised. When he realized it was them, he froze and began listing their names. So could it really have just been a nightmare? He suddenly started running toward them, tears in his eyes as he questioned himself. Is this true? When he reached the boys, he told them he'd just had a horrible nightmare and let them ask what it was. At that moment, the boys turned to him, already asking how he dared drag them to certain death. They didn't want to die if he didn't know. He looked at them with fear, and Chino said that he'd said such strong words, so why didn't he protect her? When he saw this, he too had already woken up, and suddenly a bright, fiery red lightning bolt erupted between them. He began screaming in fear that he didn't want to live and rot in the darkness. Everyone was swallowed up by this portal, and he, holding out his hand to them, shouted, "Don't leave, wait for him." He was terrified and begged for mercy, then fell to his knees and screamed. At that moment, he came to his senses and realized those hallucinations. They say they often occur during penetration of subtle impulses, and he almost went into psychosis. The system reported his progress at 97%. Penetration of the subtle pulse in progress. Who would have thought these were stupid tests? After some time, many people gathered in the city and grabbed ordinary tools like shovels. They were terrified when they saw the Titans' invasion and didn't know what to do. They all screamed in fear while the Titans grinned at them widely. People discussed what was happening. Was this the real boss? The masked guy had escaped after all. Their conqueror would definitely return triumphant. At that moment, they returned, and Peleus shouted that they had already placed the fate of their village on the shoulders of an outsider. And they still doubted him? The guys answered, no, that's not what they were talking about. And Peleus asked again, aren't they ashamed? And they still call themselves knights? Dale approached him, telling him he was right and placing a hand on his shoulder. Before slandering, they first needed to fulfill their duties and protect the village. They drew their swords, and Dale declared that knights weren't those they protected, but those who protect them. At that moment, he began running toward the monster, shouting that he offered to die today as true knights. All the knights returned to the fray and began fighting the Titans. At this point, the protagonist's progress was 99%. It was almost over, and a yellow magical seal appeared in the air. He clutched his chest and didn't understand what it was, but judging by his progress, it must be his goal. The system reported that his fatigue had reached 97, and he realized he had only one step left. His fatigue level was critical, and he needed to recover. Further activity was dangerous. He ignored the warnings and continued forward. Dale, meanwhile, attacked the monsters with confidence and tried to defeat his opponent. Blood spurted from the limbs of the Titan, who began to scream loudly in pain. As the creature bent down, it tried to grab Dale in its arms to destroy it. Peleus approached, shouting at him to please leave the rest to him. He pushed off the Titan's body and kicked the creature, then swung at its face, attempting to cut it into several pieces. The monster screamed in pain and terror and began to fall backward onto the ground. When the enormous Titan fell, a mass of destruction appeared around it, and Peleus ran back. The knights shouted with joy that they had succeeded. Lord Peleus and Dale had finally defeated this creature. Let it die. Just die already. How could it not be shameful to come here? It's a disgusting freak. Peleus said, it's all thanks to him, Dale. The most dangerous of them are freezing. Now they can finally relax. Dale tried to catch his breath and muttered, no, that's not what he meant. The knights, meanwhile, watched the scene unfold and asked, is that all? So nothing complicated happened. They were simply incredible. When suddenly they realized that all that was left was to finish off the remaining Titans and everything would be fine. At that moment, the monster jumped right above them and announced that he meant it. He exclaimed that this was on a completely different level. Meanwhile, he had achieved 99.99% progress. He thought he would apologize to them in hell, when suddenly his progress reached 100. He said, Kejo, he will bring his head as a souvenir. After these words, he threw himself into the magical portal, and his entire body began to glow with magical light. He realized that it was finally over. The system reported that subtle impulse penetration was complete. Mana was increased by 20%, the activation speed of all skills increased by 20%, and all stats were increased by 2. He knew that if there was another attack, he should at least be warned next time. At that moment, he collapsed to the ground in a pool of his own blood. The system reported that he had passed the 6th floor of the legend. Meanwhile, Tail was watching the stream on his computer, saying that recklessness was his middle name. He seemed unsuited to be a streamer. He called Hawkeye and said he'd just watched Subaru's stream. He asked, so he saw what just happened too? That was insane. He replied that he'd gotten carried away and should explain it so he could understand. Hawkeye smiled and said he'd definitely become a star, then leaned back in his chair and confirmed that it would be both as a player and a streamer. Tail asked, does that really matter? He thought the stream would be a challenge and that he felt more like a player than a streamer. Hawkeye replied that that was the point. But the concept that viewers were still seeing in this stream was Subaru looking as much like the real thing as possible. The real Subaru was a player, not a streamer. In short, they could broadcast Subaru's birth as a player in real time. At that moment, Subaru tried to sit up as his strength recovered somewhat. He was having trouble breathing and clutching his head he realized his fatigue had reached its limit. The system reported his fatigue at 81, and he considered it a thank goodness, a drop in response to his stat growth. He hadn't expected that final lightning strike, but he still considered it a victory. The system reported that several players' quests had been completed, and he had received numerous credits. His credits now total 20,420. He realized he had accumulated quite a lot and received the Greed Wedge. Rank D, Skill Category, Level 3. This suppresses the powerful effects of skills or items used. Skill rank and level can be increased, requiring 40,000 credits. He understood that his skill level was still not high enough, and perhaps killing that Titan would help him, as they were the keys to defeating him. The system reported that he was using a lightning spear. It cannot be sold or purchased. Rank Legendary, Weapon Category, minimum level for equipping it is 0. This ancient spear, forged from lightning itself, deals a single powerful blow, with one remaining use. Subaru pondered the idea that even if this could be used so many times, why did such a rare item, unavailable even on the 8th floor, appear here? Because they resemble a spear. He reached into the system window and explained that, depending on the conditions, a high-market item could change shape. Now it was time for him to end this, and he walked further into the labyrinth. Meanwhile, Peleus screamed in fear when that terrifying Titan appeared above him. This creature had enormous, long hair and was attacking defenseless knights. The system reported that this Titan King was a Gorg imbued with lightning. The Gorg began to move and approach the knights, and Peleus exclaimed when he saw the knight running toward him. "What is he doing?" The boy cried out with tears in his eyes. He told them they knew nothing. He found himself at the creature's fingernails, declaring that he was not like these foolish people, and that he should please have mercy on him. At that moment, Gorg asked again, "My God, did he dare add him to this vile creature?" The knight shook and cried out in horror, and Dale grabbed him, shouting, "What is he doing?" Dale cried out to Peleus, "Get him up now, please," he shouted. "Act faster. Let him take the villagers and run as far away as possible now." But before he could finish his sentence, Dale cried out in fear. A moment later, they were both destroyed by Gorg, and blood was spilled. Peleus realized he couldn't understand how they could win. Even their escape route was blocked. Everything was too much, and he looked at the oppressed people running toward him in panic. When Peleus looked up, he clenched his teeth in anger and cried out that he knew who had killed his son. Gorg asked again, "Who killed him?" He approached him, and Peleus began to tremble, declaring that he was over there. He pointed his sword to the side and shouted that the one who killed his son had gone there. He was gathering strength to kill him. He mentally begged Gorg to fall for this scam, to believe him and go there. Gorg looked into the distance and said he was simply lying to him, mixing truth with lies. The one who killed his son was not here, or had he simply pointed his pathetic sword in a random direction? If he didn't answer immediately, he would crush him. At that moment, a lightning bolt lit up the mountain, and the monster, looking in that direction, was as stunned as Peleus. A bright glow began to descend from the very top of the mountain, and Peleus realized, could it really be him? The system reported that this was the beginning of the 7th floor of illumination. The protagonist realized that this was supposedly the last stage. Even if someone stronger than Gorg appeared, it would no longer count as a 2nd floor test. Now everything was fine. There was no need to complicate this, and he only needed to hit him once. He was no match for him now. He needed to kill him before he attacked. At that moment, he raised his hand and activated his lightning spear. The lightning spear began to activate, and a moment later, the entire sky lit up with bright gold and black. A bright beam of light swept across the sky, and its charge level showed 10. His fatigue reached 84, and he directed lightning power toward the monster. He clenched his fist, and the system reported that he had used the Greed Wedge, a level at which he resisted the side effect of the insufferable spear. The resistance failed, and the effect was minimal. As he thought, the skill level of a rather unremarkable item. His fatigue increased, and so did its charge level. Could he really hope his body could withstand this strain? He looked at Gorg and realized that the creature had finally noticed him. However, after such a sight, it was unreasonable to expect him not to notice. His charge level was 78%. Gorg spoke. "Lightning, clearly, the one who killed his son is him." At that moment, he abruptly began running toward him, and Peleus shouted, "Where is he going? His opponent is here." He was surprised by this turn of events. When suddenly Peleus and the city's inhabitants were surrounded by other titans, he feared for the inhabitants and exclaimed about it. Meanwhile, Gorg approached the mountain itself, muttering, "Peleus, his son, he must have been in pain. He will take his pain away." At that moment, he began running toward the mountain, shouting that he would repay his son's killer threefold. As the Titan ran, threatening the protagonist, he screamed loudly. The system reported that he had used the minus charge on his spear, its charge level at 88%. They clashed, and Subaru thought about how his chances were 50-50. He would either hit or miss, that was all. He mustn't look away. He remembered the words of his previous teacher, who told him not to look away from the target. Seriously, he mustn't look away for a second. This is where throwing begins. But he must forget about trying to throw in a straight line or in a perfect arc, and banish all unnecessary thoughts from his mind. Predictions? Who needs them? There's no need for them. Trajectory? Let it be dust. He must forget about weight, form, and everything else. He is no different from other spearmen, because he is Subaru. At that moment, the charge level reached 95%, and he swung his weapon, asking himself, so what should he do? The teacher had said that he was throwing an unusual spear, so it was simple. He should not throw it, but release it. At that moment, he launched his spear straight at the monster and realized just a little more. And when the monster approached and kicked the ground, it headed straight for him with a terrifying look. It began to fall on top of him, and the protagonist, using his powers, reached 100% charge and realized that he only had one chance. He would end it all with one blow. The monster approached him closely, and the protagonist realized he had to act now. So he struck the monster with his spear. When he saw the spear strike the titan directly in the forehead, the creature suddenly began screaming loudly and falling, followed a moment later by a powerful explosion. Stahl gasped in pain and began to dissolve into space. Subaru approached, and the system reported that he had defeated the lightning-imbued Titan King Gorg and had reached the 7th floor of Glow. His level had also increased by 3, his strength by 2, and his agility by 2. His stamina had increased by 3, and his focus and mana had increased by 1. He also received 5,000 credits and a Heart of Lightning. He was surprised and asked again, a Heart of Lightning? Was that really what he thought it was? It began to glow right in his hand, and he wondered where he had ended up. When he looked long enough, he saw only water and a purple sky. A huge monster appeared next to him, and he didn't understand what was happening. He couldn't speak, his body wasn't moving, and the system reported that an unknown being was looking at him. Too many of these creatures appeared around him, and he realized they were trying to tell him something. The mana heart glowed in his hand, and after a while, he found himself on the edge of a cliff. The system launched the main lightning scenario, and now he could explore the trees for clues using the lightning heart. He looked into the distance at the sky and wondered if that wasn't a cutscene, because he'd blacked out for a second. At that moment, he looked at the screen and realized he needed to collect his reward. The system reported that the task had been completed, and he'd received 3,000 credits from Stash. His credits now total 40,120. He was actually exhausted, so next time, but before he could finish his sentence, the system announced that he'd completed the live stream. Sometime later at the cafe, Wika said he'd done a great job on the challenge. He asked if the stream went well. She confidently replied that everything was fine. Yesterday, at its peak, there were over 3,000 viewers. He probably hadn't even noticed that. He was surprised by the number and apologized, saying he was too focused on the challenge to check. Wika responded that it was a compliment and was surprised he could take off his mask. For a new streamer, a peak of over 3,000 viewers was an incredible achievement, and even the moment he ended the stream was perfect. His fatigue actually played into his hands. He replied that this was the moment that viewers were most interested in, like the desire to see the next episode of a series. Vika asked again, did he do that on purpose? He replied that he planned to test the reward with the viewers on the next stream, so his reaction would be genuine and not fake. Vika asked again, right? So he finally understood. The old man was worried for nothing. She had a small gift for him, and he asked again, what was it? She said it was something he couldn't refuse. Tell him to find a streamer named Hawkeye. He looked down and said, okay. When he looked at Hawkeye, he informed her that the title already made it clear what was on the agenda, but also the topics of today's story. Okay, enough chatter. They can't start until they watch first. He'll explain everything in order. After a while, the protagonist continued sitting and listening to the video. Hawkeye explained that during the pain endurance test, Subaru was actually undergoing another test. In short, it was a test where a person is subjected to 2 tests at once. Wika looked at him awkwardly and remained silent. Hawkeye apologized, saying it was time to end the stream. He wouldn't drag it out, and would summarize it in a few words. He was a dead ringer for Subaru. He had nothing more to say about it. Subaru looked at Wika and asked if she really thought that. Wika asked if she could ask a slightly strange question. He allowed her to, and she said she understood. It was strange for a manager to ask, and she understood it was impolite, but why was he streaming? It wasn't for the money, right? He paused and looked down. Wika was surprised by his reaction, and suddenly he replied that it was all for the money. He had no other reasons. She blushed and said that money was important, and she apologized for asking something strange. Subaru replied that it wasn't at all, and Wika decided to talk about the gift she had prepared. The streamer he'd just watched, Hawkeye, is a member of Southen. They've been contracting him for 6 years now, and he's a truly reliable streamer. He's known for his analytical reviews and a devoted fan base. He really does have a keen eye. So the income from his last stream and all future ones will be split 50-50. He asked again, share with whom? Wika replied, with him, since it's a derivative work using his materials, and that includes advertising, donations, archives, and everything else. He asked, surprised, really? Since he joined the agency, he's only heard good news. Wika asked again, really? He replied, yes, that's quite an unexpected bonus. She asked, so maybe he'd like to collaborate with Hawkeye as a small gesture. After a while, he returned home and, clutching his head, thought that maybe he shouldn't have worn a mask for their meeting, and he shouldn't have been so insistent on the image that he was only there for the money. The more new connections he makes, the less they understand what he's supposed to be hiding. Incidentally, the system reported that he'd spent 40,000 credits, and his greed wedge skill had been raised to level 3. He was surprised to now have a rank of 80,000, and his remaining balance was 120. And there's no point in embellishing things because money really is his top priority. Luckily, he has a collaboration with Hawkeye in 2 days and should earn a tidy sum. He lay down on his bed and suggested that maybe the guys would hear about him before he found them. Meanwhile, Wika buried her face in her pillow at home and sobbed. She recalled his handsome appearance, which suggested it was all for the money. This angered her deeply, and she screamed, "Is this really true?" Behind that stylish mask lurked a truly terrifying secret, and if she dug too deep, he would ultimately hurt her. She imagined such a picture and screamed that she wouldn't ask about it. She was curious, but she wouldn't ask. Subaru, in her thoughts, replied that he'd been lucky ever since he met her, Wika. He reached out to her, and she punched her pillow and screamed, as did she. When she'd trashed her bed and feathers had scattered all over the room, she'd said that Subaru was a man with a secret no one knew, and that he was even more charming in person. This impressed her greatly, and she became embarrassed. Sometime later, on the 7th floor, the windows of the Knoxbell lit up. An athletic guy was working out and watching Hawkeye's stream, who said he wouldn't drag it out and would sum it up in a nutshell. The man was working out and saying he didn't like him and that he irritated him. Who the hell was he? One of his friends approached him and said he was a streamer named Hawkeye and had an average of 8,000 viewers. The guy replied, "So he streams. He used to do that too. His name is Eamon, from the Blue Zone." He told him to forget about Hawkeye and focus on Subaru, whom he mentioned in his stream. Almon asked again, "Is that the fake who supposedly mastered lightning or something?" When he saw the video, he said that it was actually impressive, and the guy asked again, "What do you think?" He addressed him by the name Shuhei, and said that the Spear Knight from Blue Eyes once said that the most important thing in spear throwing is to keep your eyes on the target. He asked again, "What?" He even remembered a random phrase. Amon replied that he tried to absorb their breath, their habits, and everything else. And in the end, these were players at the very top. Besides, everyone forgets that every member of Blue Eye was at the peak, not just Subaru. Besides, something about their deaths seems suspicious. Hawkeye said that he looks exactly like Subaru. Nothing more to say. Amon kept saying that this upstart looked down on everyone, constantly trying to prove his name, as if they were bosom friends. Shuhei said that's the main problem with streamers. They'll sacrifice their pride and convictions without hesitation for the sake of content popularity. At that point, he turned off the TV and said how annoying it was. Why did he even show him this? Shuhei pointed out that it wasn't his decision. The Gyoza Guildmaster had ordered it. Amon was dumbfounded and asked, "Kazuki?" He replied that lightning was a symbol of blue eyes, and blue eyes are part of the Blue Zone. They were receiving information that this streamer was obsessed with money, and at that moment, a cart with a blanket pulled up, and when the blanket was removed, Amon was dumbfounded. Shuhei said the budget had been approved and he ordered them to bring it at any cost. There were numerous gold bars, and Amon was surprised. So this guy is after money? After some time, the system announced that the 2nd floor test was beginning. Many people were clearing away the destroyed city and cleaning up. Peleus exclaimed to gather the guards in one place. They should first deal with those in critical condition, then distribute medicine to the lightly wounded. At that moment, he turned his attention to the side and was surprised to see Subaru approaching him. He exclaimed that he was a savior and had finally woken up. How was he feeling? He had lost consciousness near the village. They were very worried, and if he hadn't woken up, he didn't even know what they would have done. Subaru replied that he was still a little dizzy, and Peleus understood this because only 1 day had passed. Subaru asked if they could talk about this later at the tavern. He had something he wanted to ask him. Peleus replied, of course, he could ask anything. See you later. Subaru watched him go, realizing he was so radiant. When he returned home and sat down on his bed, he opened the system window and said that first he would check the rewards. The system reported that this was a lightning heart, a non-transferable bound item, unique growth rank, and an unknown equipment level. Lightning resistance was 30, lightning strength 20%, and the status property was increased fire resistance. He picked up the magical heart and said that this simply couldn't be true. The characteristics were ideal for lightning users. This was simply unbelievable. Suddenly, he heard a knock on the door and allowed entry. Peleus entered with a basket of fruit in his hands. Subaru looked at this with bewilderment, and he, smiling, asked, did he have a good rest? When they sat down across from each other at the chair, Subaru assumed that meant the legend was true. Peleus replied yes, he too had seen that light, and thanks to it, the village was saved. Subaru reported that it was extracted from the body of a titan and pulled out the lightning heart and showed it to Peleus. He exclaimed, is this really true? Subaru asked, does he know what this is? He exclaimed, no, he has no idea. He was incredibly frightened, and Subaru didn't understand what it meant. Peleus apologized and said he'd only heard about it as a legend. He didn't know how much of it was true or how it all ended. Subaru said it was fine, let him tell him everything he knew. Peleus replied that he only knew 2 legends. The first claimed lightning was used to exterminate the Titans, just as he had, and the second, that the Titan gods fought for lightning. Subaru asked again, he's saying they fought? Peleus confidently replied, yes, it could be called a legend among legends. People say that many Titans fought a war for lightning, and the Titans lost. Subaru assumed that this gem was most likely created by someone back then. But who could create something like that? He replied that this wasn't mentioned in the legends, but he thought its purpose was obvious. It could give people the ability to equip lightning, and the reason people needed lightning was because of bugs and titans. These are beings so powerful that humans can't compare to them. This was created so that people could fight them and win. The system reported that he had viewed all the chapters of Forgotten Man and passed the trials of lightning. His lightning skill would be increased depending on the credits received. 17,150 credits received. Lightning level 1 was increased, as was lightning level 2, and he received lightning level. At that moment, Subaru's entire body glowed with magical light, causing Peleus to be stunned and start screaming, "Savior?" He completely didn't understand what was happening and began looking around until Subaru disappeared from his sight. Sometime later, he found himself on the 3rd floor of the organarl. A bright pillar of light appeared right in the center of the square, and a Subaru appeared there. The surrounding knights were surprised. Was this another Subaru cosplay? When will this fashion die? The system reported that he had received 1,000 credits, and they congratulated him on reaching the 3rd floor. They also asked him how he felt, and he was surprised by this question and realized it. He remembered Rina, who at first had been distant from him. She said she was simply hiding and had fallen behind her group. Had he seen anyone that tall? He looked at her in surprise, and she said she thought he was about a head taller than him. He replied that he had actually seen someone like that, and she asked in surprise, "Really?" He pointed and said that he seemed to be going that way. She exclaimed, "Thank you very much," and happily ran in that direction, when she suddenly stopped and turned back to him questioningly. Subaru looked at her silently and offered to go with her, since he needed to go there. She asked in surprise, "Really?" He replied, "Yes. He had nothing better to do today anyway." If he had simply shown her the way that day and nothing more, would they still be alive? That's how they met Rina. Now he looked ahead sadly, suggesting that he felt like he'd lost something important. By the way, he'll be collaborating with Hawkeye in his next stream. When he mentioned this, the guys were surprised. He ended the live stream. After a while, he found himself at a restaurant. Tail apologized for keeping him waiting. Wika is already on her way. He understands that, unlike the climb after completing a challenge, moving between floors takes time. He's very happy to meet you. His name is Tail from Suten Entertainment. Subaru said that he was just an annoying chef, according to Wika. Tail asked again, "What?" He replied, "It doesn't matter. His manager already told him about him, and he's glad to meet you." Tail smiled and said that normally he would have delegated this to Wika, but he wanted to see him in person at least once. He was the second player she'd rated so highly, so he was curious. Subaru asked again, what did second mean? He replied, "Everyone knows the first one. It was Narukami Subaru from the Blue Eyes." Subaru was dumbfounded, and Tail smiled, saying that he too was shocked. After all, this impudent woman had just shown interest in a man with the same name as Subaru. He laughed, and Tail asked again if he could ask a question. Was he interested in the Blue Eye Guild? At that moment he froze, and Tail assumed, judging by his reaction, that he wasn't entirely indifferent. Subaru wondered why he'd suddenly asked. He replied that that was actually one of the reasons he wanted to meet him, to let him take a look at it. He pointed to the tablet and informed him that it was the main championship, which would take place here on the 3rd floor in 5 days. Subaru realized this couldn't be happening. This was it. He clenched his fist and grew angry. After a while, Subaru ended the live broadcast, and Reina muttered, "That's it. I wonder if he's done too." She walked toward the forest alone and found Siwoo there, asking if he was done. He replied, "It's been a while," and she asked, "What was he doing then?" He replied that he was just thinking about it. He didn't know whether to kill them or spare them. Opposite him, he saw a multitude of terrifying statues, and Reina told him to just kill them. They already knew who sent them. Siwoo said they weren't 100% sure, which is why he was thinking about it. If the Kejo really sent them, they wouldn't be such weaklings. But letting them go alive could also be problematic. If they lead them straight to their hideout, everything will be bad. When suddenly, Reina raised several sharp Gothic swords and began to control it, pulling it straight towards the knights. Siwoo shouted at her to stop, but she didn't stop and destroyed many statues. Siwoo didn't have time to do anything and asked what she did. He replied that it didn't matter whether Kazuki sent them or not. If they let them go, everyone would know they were alive, and their determination would ultimately be their undoing. He needed to become tougher. Siwoo apologized to her because she was right, then silently looked at the tablet and told her to look at it. When she saw it, she exclaimed, "What? That freak did this?" Her hands shook, and Siwoo asked again, "Is this annoying?" She answered, "Yes, they are Toshiya's boots." He replied that they were Wika's knives, a trap to lure them out. He must have realized that they could be alive somewhere. Rina frowned and looked at him silently. Siwoo said that didn't mean they should sit idly by. They should take back what was theirs. She understood. So that's what he was getting at. And Siwoo said that he was bad at covert work, but she had always been good at that sort of thing. Rina replied that he talked too much. She would have done it at his request. She turned sharply, but he grabbed her hand and asked her to wait. He didn't tell her that they needed to act blindly, but they would steal them when the winner was announced. It was the safest option. Meanwhile, Tail announced that it was a relic of the Blue Eyes member, Talaria. The Blue Zone had made it the main prize of this tournament. Was he interested? Subaru replied, "Yes, very much." Tail was delighted. That was excellent, and he didn't think he would fall for this trick so easily. Actually, the entire project depended on whether he agreed or not. Subaru asked again, "The project?" Tail responded that since Subaru's name was used in their stream, They thought the relic hunting and singles plot would be great bait for viewers. Subaru didn't get it. How dare they use religion as a damn circus prop? When he got angry, Tail asked again, what's wrong? If something was bothering him, they could change everything. But Subaru abruptly stated that he was in, and Tail asked again, is this true? This was simply brilliant. Subaru stood up and said that in that case, he'd probably decline. Tail said, of course, they were looking forward to collaborating. They were always rooting for him on the other side of the screen. Subaru got angry that he would never give that up, not over his dead body. After a while, Subaru lay down on his bed and thought, I wondered what disciplines would be at the tournament? He couldn't fall asleep and tossed and turned, thinking that he hoped there would be individual competitions. Although perhaps now was not the time to be picky. At that moment, he heard a knock on the door, and Wika announced it was her. He was surprised and jumped up abruptly, then stared at the mask and put it on. He opened the door for her, and she looked at him, stunned. Confusion appeared on her face, and she realized he even wore a mask in his room. He allowed her to go in. She exclaimed, what? She could come inside? He looked at her questioningly and said that if she was more comfortable talking in the hallway, that was fine with him. She said no, and she apologized for the intrusion and went inside. When they sat down in the room opposite each other, she looked around and realized the room was quite plain. The protagonist thought her mana was bottomless. It couldn't be that such a person was an ordinary manager. She asked again, maybe there was something on her face? He replied, no, nothing like that. So what about the information about the tournament she promised him? She answered, yes, please forgive me. She pulled out some documents from her bag and said the tournament would be a battle royale. A simple format where everyone competes for a single prize. Subaru understood that it was an individual competition, and she replied, yes, since there was only one prize. The arena featured a challenge field. You had to be a third-floor player to participate. The entry fee was 3,000 credits, and there was no limit on the number of participants. She would send him data from past battle royales, let him provide it, and everything would be clear. He looked at the comments and realized it was all about him. This was very useful information, and thankful for her effort. Wika said she was just doing her job, and had his boss told him yet? Subaru asked what she meant. She said they'd actually received a message from the Blue Zone, and he was dumbfounded. It was Kazuki, and he asked again, from the Blue Zone? Wika replied that they'd said they wanted to meet him in person, since they had no way to contact him directly, so they'd written to their office. Subaru realized he was already trying to make a move. Wika assumed they probably wanted to meet and start negotiations, offering higher pay, better conditions, and all sorts of bonuses. Subaru said to just ignore them, and Wika was surprised. Ignore? He replied, yes, he has no intention of joining the Blue Zone or any other guild. Wika exclaimed with joy and shouted, what a relief. She'd been hesitant to tell him for so long, but she was glad she finally did. But then, let him rest first before the collaboration begins. After these words, she closed the doors behind her, and Subaru was surprised that she was so happy, as if she had won. For an ordinary employee, she was far too involved in her work, and she was definitely not that simple. After some time, Tail and Hawkeye found themselves in the middle of the arena. Tail said, so this is today's project? These are comparative tests of the original and new Subaru. Hawkeye asked again, so what? That's a cool idea, right? He replied that he liked his bold ideas, but he understands that if he loses, he'll take a hit too, right? Hawkeye replied, so be it. Results are results, and no matter what happens, they'll accept them, and that's how they earn the audience's trust. But has he ever lost? Tail told them not to get cocky, because in the end, everything depends on Subaru. Hawkeye scratched his head and replied that the truth is on his side, when suddenly Wika approached them and said that it was a great job. She dragged Subaru along, and Tail was surprised they were already back. Hawkeye realized his chance to become a shining star had finally arrived. Subaru looked around, wondering how incredibly spacious it was. Had they really rented the place out for them? Hawkeye greeted him and said he was his friendly streamer. Subaru told him his name and said it was nice to meet him. Hawkeye was surprised, as he felt like he'd met the real Subaru, and couldn't believe he was seeing the most hyped guy, a fan of his. He replied that he was still a rookie streamer, a far cry from him. Tail suggested they save it for the stream. Streamers usually bond over the broadcast. Hawkeye suggested continuing on air, and the system announced he'd started streaming. He greeted the guys and thanked them for being with him today. Viewers began to grow, reaching 12,000. He realized he'd heard that he'd blown up the community with the collaboration. With 12,000 views from the very beginning, that's a lot. He smiled and said that today was the moment everyone had been waiting for. He brought that guy. Subaru took a step toward him, and Hawkeye showed him on the screen. It was that same Subaru, and he said hello. Hawkeye replied that he hadn't seen his face. Even his manager hadn't seen his face. Is he hiding something, Subaru? Subaru replied, no, nothing of the sort, and he was actually quite handsome. At that moment, the system reported that they'd started receiving credits from views. Hawkeye mused that his stream had never been as lively as expected. He was a walking bomb. Subaru apologized, but he wasn't going to lose. Not in battle, not in appearance. And he even knows how to communicate with the audience, as Hawkeye realized. Subaru asked again, girls? No, he doesn't have a girlfriend, and he doesn't have any friends, at least not right now. At that moment, Wika sighed happily, and Tail noticed her reaction. Hawkeye said, stop teasing his important guest. They want to get to the main event. At that moment, the announcement that the trial was beginning was made, and the lights in the arena lit up. He didn't understand why such a trial was needed. Hawkeye said he'd explain everything now, for 2 reasons. First, it was perfect for testing his control, and second, because right here and now, he would prove his case. The system announced he'd received 100 credits, and the subscriber asked if he really thought he could beat the record. Subaru scratched his head and replied that if things were different, he wouldn't have agreed in the first place. At that moment, the iron monsters turned on him with terrifying looks and began to fight. They all pounced on him from above. Subaru looked up, expecting an attack. The system reported the participants' standings and points. The monsters were approaching their target, and Subaru looked confidently ahead. He said, "No, he's not ready to risk taking off his mask just yet." He thanked his subscribers for their donations and promised to show his face if he lost. And when one of the commentators wrote that only a newbie risks punishment and they still split the reward, Hawkeye noted that this was a fair remark. All credits for this task will go to Subaru. Okay, now they begin. Let the show begin. He pressed the start button, and at that moment, the timer began. Subaru began fighting the attacking monsters and activated his lightning. A moment later, he ran up to one of the monsters with incredible speed and slammed it straight into the ground. It was his first kill. Hawkeye was surprised and couldn't believe he was seeing lightning in real life. Subaru drew his sword and began fighting the approaching monsters, destroying several in 20 seconds. A moment later, many of them were destroyed, and they continued to attack him. A full minute passed, and he continued his fight, jumping from place to place. He rose high, ready for every attack. Then he struck the ground with lightning bolts, destroying approaching monsters with the resulting shockwave. In a minute and a half, he reached 26 kills. While he dealt with the monsters with incredible agility and speed, the surrounding guys looked at him in bewilderment. They were amazed, and Hawkeye noticed that he had destroyed 41 monsters in almost 3 minutes. Subaru didn't give up and kept going, and with 3 seconds remaining, he accelerated and destroyed the last creature. In 3 minutes, he killed 43 monsters, and the challenge was over. The record was broken, and now Subaru holds first place. All the subscribers were amazed, and Hawkeye exclaimed, 43, he tied with Subaru. In the end, they were tied. It was so close, but how could they handle this, guys? He continued to receive credits, and they thanked them for their generosity. Hawkeye asked again, "Are they asking if this is Subaru's stream?" "No, it's not his." At that moment, he received 10,000 credits from Reinhardt and was surprised. Was it really him? He said, "Thanks Reinhardt for the 10,000. He can't believe a high-ranking player is watching this stream." Subaru realized it was a one-hit swordsman, and they received a few more credits. Hawkeye was flattered, and Subaru didn't understand why he was watching this stream. Did he find out what he did to Isaac? At that moment, he paused and looked at the system, then scratched his head, while Tail and Wika rejoiced for him. He said he needed to focus on the trials right now, so he had to decline. Hawkeye exclaimed in surprise, as did Tail and Wika, and Subaru apologized for wasting too much energy and offered Hawkeye to finish the stream for him. He asked again, "What? Stop," but Subaru didn't listen and walked in the other direction. Tail was surprised. Why did he refuse? He had such a fantastic chance to boost his streaming career. Wika was also amazed, and Subaru asked again, "Was it that important?" Tail replied that the opportunity to collaborate with high-ranked players was extremely rare. Subaru confirmed that if being ranked was so important, he would simply become one. At that moment, the room fell silent, and Hawkeye said that, as expected, it had been an amazing performance. He would transfer his share of the profits when it came. By the way, since this is already over, can I ask him something? Did he fight differently today? Like he wasn't in top shape? Was he injured or something? Subaru realized that this meant Hawkeye had noticed too. He thought he hit it well, but apparently they didn't call him Hawkeye for nothing. He replied that whether he won or lost, everything would be to his detriment. Hawkeye asked again, what did that mean? He replied that the entire climax of the stream was the question of whether he could surpass Subaru. He was growing by focusing on that. If he won today, he'd temporarily attract attention, but interest in this rivalry would quickly fade. And if he lost, people would simply say he was no match for the real Subaru, so he needed a result where both characters were on equal terms, a draw, the only optimal outcome. Hawkeye asked, so he could beat him if he wanted to. Subaru replied, who knows, the result can't be changed now. The guys were surprised by his suggestion, and Subaru replied that it all depends on how people interpret it. After these words, he left the arena and went about his business. At that moment, Reinhardt slammed his fist on the ground and called him an insolent brat. A notification appeared on his tablet, and a servant ran up to him and asked, what's wrong? Reinhardt got really angry and said, damn Subaru, he said. The guy asked again, does he mean that streamer? He replied, yes, that's Subaru. That brat rejected his offer. The subordinate asked, did he dare to reject his offer? That's pretty insolent. Reinhardt replied that he was going to crush him in front of everyone and swat away those annoying flies. But everything went to hell. He didn't care about the credits he'd spent. He was infuriated that some unknown newbie dared to hurt his pride. He picked up the tablet and handed it to Reinhardt, who intercepted it and asked, what about his assignment? The guy asked again, does he mean Isaac? They're still searching for him with all their might. But how can I put it? Disappearing for a couple of days at his age isn't all that uncommon. At that moment, he lifted him by the neck with his magical hand and asked if he really dared to mock him. The boy began to wait and shouted words of forgiveness, but Reincarnated slammed him against the wall and smashed it with his body. And then he asked since when had he begun to disobey his orders. The boy bowed at his feet and begged him to forgive him, as he would immediately go looking for him. Sometime later, Wika saw a call from her annoying boss on her tablet. She was upset, but when she picked up, she pretended to be very happy to hear from him and wished him a good evening. He asked if she found it so unbearable to talk to him. Where had her enthusiasm gone? What was that lifeless voice? Let her at least speak to him the same way she spoke to Subaru. She was angry that he was bringing it up again, and Tails said that they had built a trusting relationship over many years. Even if it's just business now, back then they... But before he could finish the sentence, Wika suddenly scratched her head and asked, "Is he calling about a collaboration with Reinhardt?" He replied, "Yes, they can't pass up such a chance." She asked again, "But what can they do?" She replied that, after all, he was still a streamer. He understood that this was a great opportunity, and since she's his manager, let her try to convince him again. Wika thought about Subaru and said that he cared more about conquering the tower than about collaborations, and frankly, that was the right approach for a player. Tail, who was cooking dinner, replied that she really got worked up when arguing with him. Wika said she was hanging up, and he asked her to wait, but she hung up and thought about how much she'd said, and yet, for him, it really would be a great opportunity. Maybe she should give it a try. She knocked on the door and called Subaru, who opened it, and she gaped at him in surprise. He was wearing his mask again and said he felt more comfortable with it for now. Was she also curious about what he looked like? She stepped back and replied, "Yes, or rather, no, the mask does make viewers associate him with Subaru. I mean, Subaru is still Subaru, but maybe when he shows his face, then." He suddenly asked, "Why is everyone so fixated on Subaru?" She wondered if there were many reasons, like because he was originally from Earth and had poor stats, or because he was cool in his own right, but most importantly, Subaru was their hope. Subaru asked again, "What do you mean?" Wika replied that he probably didn't know, but when she first got to the tower, there was literally nothing here. Monsters everywhere, nothing to eat, no way to make money, and stability was a distant dream. Another way to survive was to keep climbing. If a person rises, they receive credits, and with credits, they could establish themselves. And little by little, people began to believe that this world could truly be theirs. Then the greatest players left them with hope that this tower could be conquered, that this world could be conquered, and Subaru stood above them all. And his achievements weren't limited to simply clearing floors. He was the first to prove that it was even possible. Subaru asked, "So she thought so too?" Wika replied that it was a secret, just like what was hidden under his mask. Maybe she'd tell him someday. Subaru asked, "By the way, she came to discuss something, didn't she?" He apologized for bombarding her with questions and invited her inside. Wika was stunned and exclaimed with embarrassment, "No, nothing special. She has to go. Good night." With that, she ran out of the hallway, thinking that after everything she'd said here, she didn't even want to persuade him anymore. He's still trying to invite her inside, and her heart skips a beat. Subaru watched her go, thinking, so there's hope for them. Subaru's back. Thanks for the 1,000 credits. He received this notification, hoping they'd win today. The system kept showing him new notifications. Is he really not collaborating with Reinhardt? He was asked a lot of questions, and as he read them, he thought about how everyone was going crazy over this collaboration, with viewers and donations steadily growing. He gives people what they want, and they pay him with credits. His third floor challenge began. The system offered him a choice of faction, the Ottoman Empire or the Conrad Kingdom. Choosing a faction almost completely changes the course of the floor challenge. They mutually hate each other, so his quests will change depending on which one he joins. In the end, he chose the Conrad Kingdom. Only about 3% of players choose this kingdom, and there's a reason for that. When he found himself on the third floor of the kingdom, in the mercenary lounge, he found a crowd of people chatting and sitting at a table, looking relaxed. He walked inside, and one of the guys saw him and introduced him as a newcomer. He thought that was great, because he was bored to death. The guy immediately followed Subaru and hit him with his shoulder. But at that moment, Subaru hit him back, and the guy started falling to the ground. He was very surprised by such force and realized that he was quite strong. He started screaming in anger at him to watch where he was going. Subaru turned to him and looked him in the eye without saying a word. The guy asked, is he asking for trouble? Subaru replied that he was probably asking for trouble since he had just bumped into him on purpose. The guy pounced on him with his fists and started shouting that he was a freak. How dare he snap at a B rank? The people around him noticed the altercation and asked what was going on. This fight? Who's this newbie? The vulture is picking on the rank again. Subaru replied that rank is great and it's time for him to check something. The guy asked again in surprise, checking what? The system reported that lightning engulfed Subaru's leg. Bright rays of light appeared around him, and he hit the guy, causing blood to spill from his mouth and all his teeth to fly out. He cried out in pain, and the guy flew off far away and fell to the ground. The people around watched in bewilderment, not understanding what had just happened. Had he really been thrown back? Was it a flash? Or were they imagining it? Is everything okay? Maybe someone can be okay after something like that? One of the guys said he kicked the vulture and he saw it. Why the hell did the rank start showing off? Many of the guys got angry and thought it was a bad thing. One of them was going to rip off his mask, skin and all. This place will become a grave, freak. All the guys pounced on him and Subaru was ready to attack. Moments later, all those guys were lying on the ground, bleeding and crying. They didn't understand what was happening. It was as if he wasn't human. One of the men approached him and said, "Young man, he's talented. His name is Raymond. He's an examiner." Raymond extended his hand in greeting. He hadn't seen him before. What missions had he already completed? Subaru replied that he knew that only a limited number of missions were available to E-rank mercenaries, which is why he hadn't completed many. Completing various mercenary missions and earning 10,000 points. Those were the requirements for clearing the third floor. However, E-rank mercenaries only receive a maximum of 50 points for completing missions, which is why, on average, players are stuck here for over a year. He had to take a shortcut, and he knew he couldn't waste a second. So now was not the time for leisurely rank-ups. Raymond thought, a shortcut? Does that mean he's from another world? You rarely see people like that on the street these days. But he can't cut him any slack. Everything has to go as planned. Subaru said there was a way to speed it up, and Raymond asked if he really thought it was worth giving the aliens any advantages if they were going to leave the tower like that. There was only one way to pass the third floor trials on the first try. Subaru said he was granting his wish. He'd never tried that. Not even in his past life. Raymond asked what he was talking about. He meant the lightning cave. He'd make it so only the kingdom could control it. Ramont exclaimed in surprise. Wait, he means he'll conquer it? Only A-rank mercenaries can handle this task. And more importantly, the problem is... But before he could finish his sentence, Subaru interrupted him and replied that he knew everything. A battle sparked by pride between Osman and Conrad had unfolded in an impenetrable dungeon, the Lightning Cave, a special dungeon on the third floor that no player, whether mercenary or knight, had ever frequented. Between the kingdoms stretches an impassable mountain range, behind which both nations have fought for decades. To prevent enemy invasion and gain military advantages, conquering the Lightning Cave, which provides unimpeded passage through the mountains, had become their cherished dream. If he were to grant him proof of his A-rank status, he would seize it and swear he would not abuse it. He lowered his gaze and thought, after which Subaru said that if he refused, problems would arise, and in that case, he would have to neutralize him too. The enemy replied that he would then write a letter of recommendation for him to join the raid. The squad was leaving in 5 days, and he would bring the letter of recommendation now, so let him wait here for a bit. At that moment, many people credited him with several thousand credits, and he was surprised by the comment. Subaru thought that the tournament on the third floor would end in exactly 5 days. The Blue Zone was counting on this when planning the schedule, so he needed to protect the Lightning Cave, right? Honestly, he still had doubts. He thought he tried to do this himself when he was younger. That day, he lost half the squad. He handed him a folded paper, and Subaru said that such a thing would not happen again, and Raymond asked again, then why did he ask for a letter of recommendation? Subaru replied that it was because he was going alone. At that moment, Raymond started screaming in terror. Had he lost his mind? Lightning Cave was counting on a 20-man squad, and he was convinced he could handle it alone? Subaru replied that he'd heard the Conrad Kingdom had fewer men than the Ottomans, and could they even muster 20 to start? Raymond replied that it would actually be difficult, and he was confident he already had allies. Subaru confidently replied, no, not yet, which was quite impressive. After a while, the girl taking the trials looked at her tablet and wondered if he was really going to clear this alone. He was just like Subaru. It's just a shame it was a live stream. He wasn't interested in other trials, and as already mentioned, he was taking a break from streaming. It was Rena, who was startled when he said he was taking a break. He thanked them for watching him today and then ended the stream. She said she just thought she'd pass the time while she climbed up to the third floor. He really does resemble him and is going his own way, no matter what anyone says. He streams like a true Subaru. By the way, he's also going to participate in the tournament, right? Maybe she'll stick around to chat with him and hope he doesn't win. After a while, Wika approached Subaru and said it was just as she thought, exactly how Subaru would act. He caught the right mood. He replied that the viewers were booing him like crazy. Wika said that if he had just done regular tasks, his stream wouldn't have been so special, right? He asked again, does she think so? That it was thanks to her advice. After that, Wika asked what he planned to do next. He said he was going to hunt until the tournament and didn't know what kind of opponents he'd have, so he wanted to level up a little. He also wanted to test how much lightning he could use with his current stats, and he also wanted to test the functionality of the lightning heart. He would never give Toshiya's relic to anyone. Meanwhile, Naoto was furious and told no one to contact him. Usually, if the Blue Zone called, you had to run, but he dared to arrange a meeting himself. He didn't care if he was lightning or not. Why the hell should he adjust to some unknown guy from the third floor? He answered the phone and said he was there, when suddenly Tail raised his hand and told him to come here. Naoto got angry and smirking sat down at the table. Tail asked, so he was Mr. Naoto from the Blue Zone? He heard that he wanted to discuss something with one of those streamers. Naoto angrily replied, yes, but where is their Subaru? Tail said he wasn't here. He was busy with other things. Naoto replied that this was terribly arrogant for a newbie, and what other important things did he have? He replied that it was personal, so he couldn't answer that, and more importantly, they had already conveyed his wishes, right? That's why he wasn't here. They plan to discuss this matter with him personally, and unfortunately it might be difficult to meet him. Naoto asked if it was obvious he didn't want them to meet him. He knew that if he left without meeting Subaru, he would definitely be punished. This caused him to start yelling that he was simply trying to get his hands on the golden goose, right? He should think carefully. Wouldn't it be better for Subaru to join an influential guild than to stream? He doesn't think so. He approached his face, and Tail replied with a smile. Who knows? A famous streamer earns no less than top-ranked players. From time to time, you encounter players who treat streaming as a profession, and he met such a person. Naoto responded that it seemed he was trying to make the Blue Zone his enemy, and Tail asked him to please let him finish. They prioritized the wishes of their streamers, since Subaru's decision had already been announced, and their company will fully support him. Naoto chuckled and replied that he was too out of touch for a man their age. Did he really think the Blue Zone would remain silent? Tail replied that he didn't understand anything. There were people in this world who couldn't be swayed by force or threats. At that moment, Naoto froze, his mouth hanging open in surprise, and Tail said that he should leave if he was finished. Naoto hadn't expected such a reaction at all, and gritted his teeth in anger. He didn't understand what just happened. What was that oppressive mana? He exclaimed and asked, is he really leaving? Did he even know who he was talking to? Tail waved his hand away and wondered if he'd imagined it. Naoto exclaimed that he swore he'd regret what happened today. Tail chuckled at the fact that he'd supposedly frightened him and didn't react to the situation any further. 3 days later, the third-floor dungeons, the Heavenly Serpent's Nest. The protagonist found himself in the middle of a battle with a huge monster and used his lightning. He smashed the monster so hard that its blood spilled, causing it to scream in pain and begin to fall to the ground. Subaru, confident in his abilities, grinned, looked ahead, and then declared, okay, the test is over. Perhaps it was time for him to wrap things up. He kicked off and dove into the monster's mouth, after which a bright flash of light spread everywhere, and the system announced that he had defeated the boss, the Sky Serpent, and leveled up. His strength had increased by 1, and his stamina and focus had also increased by 1. He sat on the slain monster and looked at the Sky Serpent's fang. It could sell for about 10,000 credits, which was at least what it had cost 20 years ago. When he looked at his stats, he wondered if he was already level 35. He had risen 9 levels in 3 days, so he shouldn't be greedy. He could slow down for now. At that moment, he realized that Toshiya was walking toward him. Wika met him at the cafe sometime later and said hello. He asked if something good had happened. Wika asked if he had seen it. He didn't understand what she meant, so she asked again. What hadn't he seen yet? He asked again. What exactly? A joint video? He was apologizing because he was too busy. Wika said again, Subaru, this is absolutely fine. Even if he doesn't want it, he acts like a real Subaru, but there is something that distinguishes him from the original. Let him open it. It is an income report from his recent joint stream with Hawkeye. He picked it up and was surprised. 49,789 credits? He expected less. Wika replied that she could transfer it to him anytime, but she wanted to meet him for another reason. She has a friend, Kiyoharu, and he is addicted to gambling. Or rather, he just likes excitement. In short, thanks to him, she learned something. There's a type of gambling where a person bets on someone else to win and wins. The higher the chance of winning, the lower the payout. In other words, the profit is smaller, but the outcome is more reliable. His odds are currently 6.1. But there's a player whose odds are only 1.2. In short, he's the absolute favorite to win the tournament. Subaru asked again, who is he? It's Omar Schneider, a Blue Zone player who has remained on the 3rd floor for 10 years, determined to clear the Lightning Cave. This insane obsession has made him famous, even though he's neither a streamer nor a ranked match participant. And Schneider is probably plotting something right now, trying to meet him any way he can, because for him, his announcements of solo cave clearings on stream are like a mockery of his decades-long work. While she was telling him the story in all its glory, she got too close, and he noticed. She blushed with embarrassment, having climbed onto the table to get right next to him. Turning away, she explained that during the Lightning Cave challenge of this tournament, the next challenge, there was a high probability he would encounter him, so she just wanted to warn him to please be careful. Sometime later on the 3rd floor, the orchestra. The carriage pulled up to a special house, and inside, people were discussing how it would happen tomorrow. Finally, they would meet this insolent jerk who bragged about clearing the Lightning Cave alone. Who the hell did he think he was? He's just running his mouth because he has no idea what a Lightning Cave is. And please don't be upset, Captain Schneider. Schneider actually looked sad and stared out the window silently. She told him not to be upset. He has a reputation for bragging. His career is short, but he's the new owner of the Lightning, what they've wanted for so long. His subordinates said that might be true, but wasn't he being too arrogant? Another guy confirmed that it was true. Just because he became the owner of the Lightning, he thinks he's a real Subaru or something. That's the only explanation. Schneider told him to stop, because now is not the time to be jealous. And looking down on him or belittling his achievements is completely unacceptable. They asked again, so they should respect him? He replied that if necessary, he could do that too. The guys were dumbfounded with bewilderment and understood that even though he said so, in reality, the captain's pride was definitely hurt. Things were bad, And how did that streamer intend to pay for his carelessness in front of this monster? After a while, Subaru arrived home and removed his mask. He thought about how amazing this monster was. It only started standing out 5 years ago. Around the same time it entered the blue zone. He started reading an article about a late-breaking player breaking ahead in the Lightning Cave development. Omar Schneider, from the zone, had reached the depths of the Lightning Cave and was still one step away. He thought they seemed overconfident to him, holding such a tournament. But if there was an internal favorite to win, that explained a lot. He apologized to Kejo with a grin, but was back in business. They'd see if everything went his way. After a while, colorful flags appeared in the city's central market in anticipation of the holiday. One of the stallholders said that no matter how good the material, this one was in terrible condition. He'd hunted it carelessly and the skin was all scratched. He could give 1,500 credits for it. The boy exclaimed in surprise, "What, that's all?" The shopkeeper replied that if he didn't like something, he should get lost and wouldn't haggle. The boy replied, "No, he'll sell everything." He thought he was in luck today. The red troll can regenerate, so it's prized, but few people know about it yet. At that moment, Subaru approached the shopkeeper and handed him a red fang. He asked if it really was a fang from a heavenly serpent. Subaru asked how much he'd pay for it. He thought there was nothing to complain about. It was a C-rank item and there was no damage. But he wasn't just any old man, so he picked the wrong guy. He thought the condition was amazing, and he'd say it was even an A-rank item. A very experienced hunter must have been involved. If it was a small scratch, he would have shamelessly given it a C-rank. But his timing was unfortunate. The supply of sky serpent fangs has skyrocketed lately, so demand is steadily declining. However, he's in a good mood today, so he'll be generous with his offer. He offers him 8,000, and Subaru wonders if, considering 20 years have passed, that's not so bad. At that moment, someone behind him said that the item in this condition was worth at least 15,000 credits. Sky serpents are very difficult to obtain, so their price is essentially determined on a case-by-case basis. Subaru turned around in surprise, and the shop owner was surprised. What was he saying? It was Schneider himself who approached and defended Subaru. He looked him in the eye and asked, "He's Subaru, right?" Subaru said his name, Schneider, and they exchanged glances. After a while, they found themselves in a beautiful restaurant. Subaru asked to get to the point. After all, they hadn't just come here for nothing. Besides, he really did order a parfait. It was a very nice ice cream dessert. Schneider asked if he declared he was going to clear the Lightning Cave, and Subaru replied, "Yeah, so what?" He replied that he was a cocky vagabond. That's what he thought at first. Some kid just climbed up to the 3rd floor and got all cocky, so he figured he could handle the Lightning Cave. Subaru asked, "So, has he changed his mind?" He replied, "It's 50-50, giving him half the respect he deserves. He has talent, incredible talent, but he still can't believe he's being compared to Subaru." Subaru thought he was just a weirdo, but his gaze was serious, and he asked, "He didn't drag him out to label him and pat him on the head, right?" Schneider replied that he had a proposition. Let him take it back. He blurted out that day that he would clear the Lightning Cave single-handedly, and those words were simple arrogance born of ignorance. Let him start streaming and apologize from the bottom of his heart. Subaru replied that it didn't really sound like an offer, and told him not to tell him to do it right now. If he wins at a real tournament, he'll definitely admit his immaturity and bow his head. Subaru confidently replied, "Okay, but if he wins, he'll reveal everything he knows about the cave. Since he understood the question first, he'll have to accept his terms." He replied, "No problem. He can't lose anyway." He rose from his seat and said that at least he definitely wouldn't lose to him. After these words, he left the restaurant and Subaru silently looked at the floor, thinking that it seemed like he hadn't wasted those 10 years. After a while, the office worker looked at his tablet and was surprised. Over 10,000 people. As it turned out, there were simply a lot of participants with such a prize. If they had been holding them when he was on the 3rd floor, he would have joined at least once. Subaru is unpredictable, but the risk is high. On the other hand, Schneider is a proven, high-yield investment. Even with many participants, the answer is obvious. Even with odds as low as 1.2, professional gamblers bet on it out of trust, not probability. So, he'll bet everything on Schneider. At that moment, Wika called him, and he answered. She scared him so much that he threw his tablet aside. Was she really spying on him? She asked what he was doing. He answered, and she asked if he was betting again. He asked how she knew that. Had she bugged his office or his ear? Wika asked again. What was he even talking about? Let him better say, what is he doing now? Kiyoharu asked again. So what? Was she also into gambling? She replied that she just thought, why not bet on Subaru? He exclaimed, what a fool. She has so many credits. Wika asked if he really thought Subaru would lose. Kiyoharu replied no, he wasn't underestimating him, but first they needed to analyze their fighting styles, strength, and odds before making bets. He'd start by saying that Schneider had been on the 3rd floor for a very long time, and they said he'd completed more missions on that floor than Subaru ever had. And she was claiming that a streamer who came out of nowhere was going to beat Schneider, who'd been working there for 10 years. That was enough to bring her down to earth. This really angered Wika, and she thought she'd like him to shut up. Then she asked, how about a bet? They'd bet all their winnings for the next month, and he said, okay, he's in. At that moment, a girl passed by, and she turned around in surprise. She'd been so close and sensed something was wrong. Kyoharu was angry that she disconnected without warning and didn't understand. But why had she suddenly wanted to bet? Did something happen? Meanwhile, Schneider and his subordinate were walking among the ordinary people, proclaiming that he was no amateur. The subordinate asked again if it was possible he could lose. Schneider turned around angrily and said that after the meeting, he was convinced he wouldn't lose. He would never do that. At that moment, Rina, who was sitting on the roof and watching everything, asked, "So it was him, right?" Schneider, the main contender, was no one to mess around with. It seemed there was no need to worry about anything going wrong. Sometime later, on the day of the tournament, everyone gathered around the Colosseum. The atmosphere was extremely festive, and there were many people there. After some time, the protagonist walked to the gate, and when he opened it, he saw everyone in the arena screaming in surprise, and they realized it was Subaru's mask. Is this the streamer everyone's talking about? Is he participating too? Has the voting already closed? His odds were second, I think. But then who's first? The protagonist looked to the side and saw Schneider confidently walking toward him. He turned around abruptly, and everyone shouted that they were rooting for him. The entire arena rejoiced at his entrance, and fireworks appeared in the sky. The host of this event announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank them for their patience. She will be their host for today's tournament. She is Mizuka from the Blue Zone, and she is very happy to meet them." This tournament was divided into a qualifying round and the main event. And now, please let them admire the prize. The award is given to the champion of the main competition, boots once worn by Hermes himself. A symbol of the Blue Zone's pride and a legendary relic, Toshiya's item from the Blue Eyes Guild. She exclaimed that these were the very same boots and rejoiced. Let Toshiya wait a little, and he swears he'll take his boots. Subaru was confident in his abilities, and Wika thought he should start streaming soon. At that moment, she heard someone cursing and turned around, realizing it was the girl she'd seen earlier. It was Reina, wearing a mask and watching the battle. The system announced that Subaru had started streaming. He already had 3,000 views and apologized for disappearing. He understood they were absolutely delighted and he couldn't keep up with the chat. He thanked them for the 30,000 credits and drew his sword. Mizuka exclaimed, "Now she's proposing to start the tournament." At that moment, more fireworks erupted, and she created a magic ball in her hand that rose into the air. A moment later, there was a loud bang and explosion. A strange green liquid spread throughout the entire area, surprising everyone, and everything went dark. They were stunned by this energy, as the scale was truly astounding. As expected from the Blue Zone, everything around glowed green and sparkled with bright lights. Subaru realized that such a scale couldn't be prepared overnight. The system reported that preparations for the preliminary round were complete. He recalled his past. When the preliminary round began, the system announced that he was eliminated. If he died, everyone around him would be his enemy. The round would end when there were 1,000 survivors. He must fight and survive. There were 10,259 survivors. He realized that this was a solo round. No one would attack him in the preliminary round, so he could conserve his strength. The system informed him that a subscriber had given him a mission. It was a deathmatch, so he couldn't help but send money. 100 credits for the kill. Some other subscribers also sent him credits, and he turned around abruptly to see an unknown guy yelling that targeting Subaru from the start was simply insane. He realized he had 200 credits in his pocket, and there were 8,544 survivors. Snyder was also walking through the forest, thinking that he wasn't interested in small fry. He had only one target, and that was Subaru. At that moment, an arrow flew past him, and he turned to see the shooter. The shooter said it was close, but those who bet on a hit would give 100 credits to the others. It turned out that a lot of people had gathered behind the trees who were against Schneider and were saying he was a lucky bastard. One of them asked, "Aren't they at a dead end? If they don't finish him off now, they won't win. Let him relax, they have the numbers advantage." Another guy confirmed that yes, he was just a man stuck on the 3rd floor for 10 years. Schneider said that the plan was actually not bad, but they just picked the wrong opponent. One of them asked, "Really? These are big statements for someone who was about to die." A moment later, his head was torn from his shoulders and blood spilled. The guy died and fell into a pool of his own blood because Schneider had destroyed him. One of the guys exclaimed in fear, "What happened?" The spear was out of reach. Schneider replied that he had seen many scum like him. He swung his spear and struck one of those guys with a bright beam to the side. He told everyone to listen carefully, because shortcuts don't work in this tower. The only thing that can protect them is strength. At that moment, they were frightened by the approach of Schneider, who was shown on all the arena screens. He began to destroy the guys who were running and afraid of him, one after another. One of them shouted at the others not to run, because this was just a test. Right? They shouldn't be afraid. This wasn't even a battle. Rina sat idly by and silently watched what was happening. She thought that he was on a superior level to all the other players. If he climbed higher, he would definitely break into the top ranks. At that moment, she heard someone's voice and turned to look at Wika, who was really irritating her. Wika was shouting at them to fight more seriously, otherwise they would run away with their tails between their legs. She was looking at Subaru, and Rina noticed him. Wika turned around and asked, "Does she know him? Wait, if she has that mask on her face, does that mean she's his fan?" Rina answered something like that, and Wika said that she's been his fan for 20 years and her name is Wika. She blushed and asked, "What's her name?" Meanwhile, the system window reported that there were 1,342 survivors. The protagonist asked, "What's the result yet?" He looked at the sky and realized it was time to finish. 200 credits per head wasn't bad at all. An idea suddenly occurred to him, and he wondered why he didn't just announce his presence and attract players. He swung his sword and began chopping down trees one by one, and they began to fall with a loud crash, breaking everything around them. This caused a loud sound throughout the forest, and Subaru remained waiting. At that moment, Schneider heard the sound of him eliminating many of his rivals. He realized he had found him, and Subaru approached him and said that he had found him. Schneider said, "Great, there's no need to drag this out, let them finish it here and now." It looked like he'd get those 10,000 faster than expected. With 202 men remaining in the preliminary round, Subaru was aiming for victory, but Schneider suddenly struck him with his sword. Subaru managed to dodge it, but numerous trees were destroyed by Schneider's incredible strength, who said that since they needed 202 more men, they could take their time. Subaru realized this wasn't just a technical skill. If he lost sight of the tip of his spear, he would be a corpse. His spear effortlessly covered distances that normally shouldn't be that far. He continued to fight, deftly dodging attacks. The system reported that the unnamed demonic sword absorbed the user's stamina, increasing all stats proportionally to the stamina consumed. Level 4 resists the increased effect of the unnamed demonic sword. They were still engaged in a serious skirmish, and Subaru defended himself with his sword, before suddenly dashing forward and swinging at Schneider, who had closed in on him. He looked down on him, then moved back, and Schneider flew further. But Subaru didn't give up and continued to fight him. They moved from place to place, but they were still too close to each other. A moment later, Schneider flew to the side, and they found themselves at a distance. Schneider asked why he didn't use lightning. Subaru replied that he didn't need to do that, since it would all be over soon anyway. Schneider tensed up and asked if he really thought there was no need to use it on him. Let him not tell him that he was just stalling for time. At that moment, he ran from his place and rushed at Subaru, and Subaru asked, "What's wrong?" He's not gonna say that he gave it his all this time, is he? There were 1,003 survivors left. He got angry and called him a freak. And at that moment, the preliminary stage was over. Schneider said that the next time they met, he would be ready. Subaru replied that he thought this meant he wouldn't receive 10,000 credits. The system notified him of being transferred to the waiting room, and when he did, it gave him a 30-minute break. He looked at his shaking hands and realized he'd almost hit him at the very end. If it had lasted even a little longer, everything would have been different. 10,000 viewers? Wika asked, as the director said he could now call it a streamer's wall. When a streamer achieves that kind of number, he can survive in the industry. Subaru remembered Wika's Slavic background and reflected that he'd managed to attract attention as a streamer. Even the broadcast with Schneider had gone well. Still, even someone with that level can't clear the lightning cave. Sometime later, Suwu was in his house, looking at the sky. He remarked that they weren't playing hide and seek, and what did he do every single day? At this point, Schneider still had the advantage. Why was he even staying on the third floor? He should know that the lower the floor, the harder it is to close the level gap. If Subaru had any advantage, it was lightning. Of course, if he were significantly more talented than this guy, it would be a surprise. But judging by what he saw, this was a completely different case. The system reported that the task was completed, and Double Hole gave 9,800 credits. Subaru realized that if he was given something, he had to take it. The system reported that he had used 80,000 credits, and his personality skill level had increased. The remaining credits were 16,000 and 29,000. When he looked at his stats, he realized he was now a B rank, which meant it might be entirely feasible. After some time, people continued to wait in the arena dome. Mizuka silently looked at the magical boots and wondered if this was true. Had a thief really appeared who was targeting them? And what was his true identity? But before she could finish her question, she suddenly heard someone call her by name. A subordinate came in and told her that backup from headquarters had arrived. She asked again, "What again? Who had they sent this time?" The man replied that they had sent him, and Mizuka asked why he had gone down to the third floor, Kurokawa. He replied that the guild leader was in a bad mood, and Mizuka asked if it was because of Subaru. He confirmed, yes, Subaru and Schneider. But there was another problem. He looked towards Wika and Rina wondered why someone with that kind of mana was in a place like this. She clutched her head, and when she removed her mask, she didn't say her name. She felt a little awkward being addressed so formally. Wika replied that it was because she had a somewhat unusual aura. She might note that she probably trains a lot, and her face, she uses a camouflage technique, right? She really did use a skill that allows her to change her face, and she wondered what was wrong with her. She tried to see how much she could understand. Was she really an assassin hired by Kejo? But she was being too open. Wika said she was sure she had her reasons. The stronger a person is, the more they have to hide, and she just wanted to clarify. She wasn't here to interfere with the tournament? Rina asked with a smirk. What's wrong? What would happen if that were true? Wika replied that she would stop her at all costs and unleashed her terrifying aura. Meanwhile, Subaru noticed that the break was over, He tensed up at this, and the system announced the finals were starting. He realized they'd been nearby the whole time when the borders opened, but they hadn't heard anything at all, which was surprising. The system announced the finals would be a territory capture format, and they would have to capture territory against the opponent. The guys were surprised by this, and Mizuka asked, "What is a territory capture?" Once the match begins, each participant will be assigned a territory. Only 2 players can occupy a single plot. They must defend their territory and capture other players' plots. Defeating another player's territory is theirs. Only 2 people can occupy a single plot. If he defeats an opponent, their plot becomes his. The player with the most territory when time runs out wins. So who will become the owner of the Talaria? They will find out in 2 hours. At that moment, the fight began, and Mizuka exclaimed that they were starting the finals. Subaru watched and thought as expected that no one was moving. If he entered the fight now, he could only get 1 plot. But later, he could gain much more territory by defeating 1 person. He needed to wait a bit before acting. It was a classic move. At that moment, heads started flying off the guys standing nearby, and Subaru said that he wanted to say that, but he was paid 300 credits per head. So he started fighting. While he destroyed one opponent after another, Schneider continued to do the same. One of the guys yelled at him to wait, as he hadn't done anything yet, and asked where Subaru was. A moment later, he too was destroyed. Turning around, Schneider glanced at the protagonist. He saw heads flying off the surrounding people, but Subaru and Schneider looked only at each other in silence. Suddenly, Subaru turned around and Schneider shouted, "Where is he going? Was he running away from him?" Subaru replied, "Not now. He needs to get some credits." Subaru looked around, thinking that the 3rd floor was much lower than he expected. He hadn't realized the chasm with Schneider would be so vast. The system reported that Donchao had entered his territory. There were currently 2 players in the territory, and he was forbidden from moving between territories. Subaru saw Donchao in front of him, who asked, "He's Subaru, right?" They were probably scolding him for catching up with him here, and Subaru realized it was a blue zone. At that moment, Donchao suddenly jumped out and shouted at him to forgive him in advance, "Captain," and attacked Subaru with his spear. He kicked off the ground and moved closer, but his sudden spear attack was prearranged and he asked, "What?" Subaru broke his weapon in half and he fell to the ground, writhing in pain. Subaru approached him and pointed the tip of his sword at him. Donchao said he took it back, Captain. At that moment, his blood ran cold, and Subaru asked, "What's wrong with this guy?" The system reported that Schneider had entered his territory, and at that moment, he turned sharply and realized that he was already there. Schneider screamed that he had finally gotten him. He pounced on Subaru, who managed to get his bearings and defend himself with his sword. After a skirmish, they clashed, and Schneider ordered him to use lightning, otherwise he would die from the next attack. Subaru backed away, creating space between them, and he began to draw his sword. Schneider asked, "Does he want to run away again?" He was going to grant his wish and summoned lightning. The system reported, "Lightning Heart resists, increases the effects of lightning skills by 20%, provides resistance to status effects, and electric shock. Level 5 Wedge of Greed resists lightning side effects." Subaru said only the weak escape, and Schneider was stunned, realizing he was materializing the weapon's elemental properties. "Was that even possible?" he asked. "Does he still think he wants to run away?" He replied, "No." And Subaru asked him then to let him ask him, "Does he want to run away?" Schneider realized that if he went through with it now, he could surpass him later, and answered with a smile, "No." He recalled Donchao's words, asking if he could ask him something rude. He replied that this was a rude question, and Donchao said he simply wanted to know why he was so obsessed with the lightning cave. He could easily reach the 6th floor. He replied, "Who knows?" And Donchao asked, "What?" He replied that people focused on one goal usually forget the reason, and Donchao replied that this wasn't even close to an answer. Schneider smiled and said that at best it was called conviction, at worst obsession, but there was one thing he could say for sure. Whether he succeeded or not, this would completely change his life. That's why he couldn't give up, and he had a feeling it would become his second obsession. At that moment, he swung his sword at Subaru, deciding to attack him. As a sign of gratitude for 10 years of hard work, he would not back down. He abruptly ran from his place and decided to attack Subaru, who was already prepared. Their swords clashed, and both of them were determined to win, and everything around them began to collapse. Their power was so overwhelming that the arena began to shatter into tiny pieces, creating a cloud of dust. A moment later, a terrifying, huge, bright, fiery explosion occurred. Meanwhile, Wika and Reina fell silent. They suddenly exchanged glances, and Wika said, "Because she's Subaru's manager." She meant that if things went wrong at the tournament, it would ruin the stream, and she couldn't let it go. Rina asked again, "Is she really his manager?" It simply couldn't be. She didn't believe it. Wika exclaimed that it was true. She'd worked hard to get this position. Those ignorant fools had thrown spokes in her wheels, but she'd managed. Rina replied, tears in her eyes, that it was amazing. She'd always watched their streams obsessively ever since the battle with the warrior wolf. Wika was surprised. A longtime fan? Wait, so she'd always been a Subaru fan from the blue-eyed ones, just like them. At that moment, they both saw a bright flash of light and turned to see the explosion that erupted in the arena. Everyone froze, and Wika immediately looked at her tablet and realized it was simply impossible. The opponents were still facing each other after the explosion, and Schneider coughed up blood. As it turned out, half his body no longer existed. He fell to his knees and died. Subaru looked at him with arrogance and realized they would see each other again. The system announced that he had captured all 283 sections, and that Subaru was the winner. At that moment, a multitude of fireworks erupted, and people began to rejoice and loudly shout at this success. Wika burst into tears and looked at Rina's displeased reaction. She simply couldn't believe that Subaru would ultimately take the award. Mizuka exclaimed, "Let the people let her announce it again. Subaru is the brilliant winner of this tournament." She too rejoiced and shouted that the long-awaited prize would be awarded to the winner. At that moment, Rina stood up, and Wika looked after her in bewilderment. She hadn't expected such a reaction from a fan. When Subaru received the shoes, she realized that 20 years had passed. At that moment, he had a flashback to someone shouting that he had asked them not to touch his shoes. Who had put them on? Should they confess? Toshiya's friend approached him and asked, "Did he lose them again? He's so irritable." At that moment, the guy took off his shoes, and Toshiya screamed, "Those are his shoes." He'd asked him a million times not to touch them, because otherwise they'd lose their shape. They had a fight, and Subaru remembered it all and was happy about it. At that moment, he announced that he wouldn't sell them, and Mizuka asked, "What?" He replied that viewers were writing that he'd sell them for a high price, and Mizuka replied that they would cost hundreds, even millions of credits. He replied that no matter what they cost, he had no intention of selling them. Many people begged him to sell them to them, because they were willing to pay anything. If he wanted something in return, they had better things in stock. Maybe he needed 2 million credits? Someone offered even more, and people started haggling among themselves. Subaru exhaled and told him to calm down, because he remembered what happened on the battlefield, and decided to make it clear that he would never sell them, even for 10 million credits. Mizuka replied, "That's how it happened, ladies and gentlemen." He said everything was fine and he was leaving. When he walked toward the exit, he found himself outside, where a lot of flags were hanging. Kurokawa was there, looking at his tablet and saying that he really came and won, that he exceeded his expectations. A girl named Hiri said, "Is that amazing?" So he beat Schneider alone. But what does he think? Doesn't he think he'll eventually become like the real Subaru? Kurokawa asked, "Who knows?" She replied that lately people have been saying that if the real Subaru could do this, then the new one should too. He asked again, "Real new? What was she even talking about?" She replied that that's what people call them. The Subaru from the blue eyes is the real one, and the streamer is the new one. He doesn't follow trends at all. Kurokawa asked, "That's so stupid. Haven't they got the order mixed up? Then it should be that if the new Subaru could do this, then the real one should too." She asked again, "What? Aren't they the same thing?" Kurokawa replied, "Not at all," and Hiri whispered, "What a headache this is. That's why the blue-eyed fan is the worst." He saw her muttering under her breath, and she exclaimed, "What do you think happens next? Doesn't it interest him?" He replied that he didn't care what happened next. They still had work to do. He suggested catching the shoe thief. She asked if he was offended. "Have him wait for her." At that moment, many people followed them. The protagonist held the shoes in his hands, and he thought about Toshiya. Even so, he was glad he was able to meet him again. Thanks to the guys for the mission, his heart didn't ache so much. The system reported that he had a unique rank. Movement speed increased by 25%, jumping power increased by 15%, and the Hermes boots of the free thief guarantee a normal step twice a day. The remaining 2 uses, refreshed daily. He decided to check it out, and many commentators posted their thoughts. Wika messaged him privately and asked if he was still broadcasting. She'd seen someone suspicious and had a bad feeling about this. He didn't understand what was going on. She tried to explain the situation and ask him to be careful, as this girl could steal the prize. Rina was actually walking alone around the square and wondering what she was even doing. Watches the boots? In any case, she had no choice. Before anyone noticed, she'd have to chop off his ankles. She followed the crowd, determined to win. After a while, the protagonist entered the room where Wika was waiting, and she waved to him from a table with a drink and told him to come here. She sheepishly congratulated him on his victory and said she'd already ordered the same for him. She thought he'd be tired, so she'd ordered a soft drink. He asked her what the messages were about. She replied that she'd actually met someone strange in the stands. It was a girl in a hoodie, and Subaru asked, "Strange?" She replied that the girl was a player and was wearing the same mask as him. At first, she thought she was suspicious, but they started talking and seemed to hit it off. And then she realized she was also a Subaru fan, and they couldn't stop talking. But when he won, her expression suddenly changed. She looked like she'd just been dumped or something, and if she really were his fan, she wouldn't have made that face when she saw his victory. And then she disappeared. She tried to track her down just in case, but this girl is good at hiding. There's no doubt that she wasn't there by accident. She definitely says so. Subaru realized she was so good at hiding even from Wika, and was his fan. And Wika continued saying that when she asked if she really was a Subaru fan, Subaru said she'd already said so. Wika replied that she wasn't talking about him, but about Subaru's hands and his blue eyes. When she asked, she reacted strangely. Not exactly a no, but definitely not a yes. but if she had to describe her, she'd look nostalgic, as if remembering something. At that moment, Subaru froze and realized who she was talking about. He abruptly jumped up from his chair and fled the room. Wika didn't expect such a reaction, looking after him and shouting his name, but he didn't stop. Reina was sitting on one of the rooftops, looking down silently. She was alone, and muttering that everything was as she thought. He's too soft, Kejo. It would be fine if he came to her himself, but did he really think these newcomers could resist her? And now he'd come and won everything. Meanwhile, the protagonist ran among ordinary people who turned to look at him, wondering where he was going in such a hurry. Was this what they call a dopamine surge? Rina said. 10 seconds? No. 5 seconds is enough to steal them from him. She recalled her conversation with Siwoo, telling him to calm down because Toshia valued his name more than anything, and she would never give it up to anyone. She grabbed her head and screamed already, and this after such loud words. But for some reason, she didn't have the strength to do that. Everything he did reminded her of him, of the dead Subaru. She grabbed her head and started crying, when suddenly she jumped up and screamed that she didn't care if he joined the blue zone. She wouldn't let it go. Next time, she won't restrain Subaru. She'll chop off his head. At that moment, the cut-up woman jumped up and said she still hoped to talk to him at least once. If she met him in person, perhaps she'd feel like she'd met the real Subaru again. At that moment, she disappeared from the rooftop and ran away. Subaru couldn't understand why that hadn't even occurred to him. He stopped to catch his breath because he was so tired and decided he must have used the Talaria as bait for the blue eyes. If Rina, who specializes in infiltration, had come to take Toshia's boots, that would explain why she'd deliberately hidden her presence. He sensed Manu Siu from the ice flowers, and no one who could be Reina had been present at today's tournament. Maybe, just maybe, all 4 of them were still alive. He looked up at the sky and decided he needed to calm down, and that now was not the time to make hasty decisions. Given Reina's personality, it would have been difficult for her to sit idly by, and if Toshushia's things had been right under her nose, everything would have been different. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him. It was Wika, who caught up with him and asked if he was okay. He had run out of the bar so suddenly. He replied that he thought he might know her. Wika asked again, what? Was he talking about that suspicious girl? He answered, yes, but he was probably mistaken. Wika said it was hard to say, but after a long silence, she asked, he doesn't have any friends, does he? He silently looked into her eyes, and Wika finished speaking even more embarrassedly, especially girlfriends. He told her to go home and turned around abruptly. Wika didn't understand. Had she really upset him? That was the end of their business. And after a while, Hiri stretched and said that her legs really hurt and she was hungry. And she was very bored. Let Kurokawa say something. Were they really letting them go? Kurokawa looked at his tablet and answered, no. And Hiri asked again, why was he saying that so confidently? He showed her the tablet and said that he just received a message from Kazuki that he should call him back. She screamed, what? That's all? He must be kidding me. They've waited forever. Kurokawa replied that he was asking if they were really coming here. There was no way they would let someone else take the prize. She asked him to wait and asked if he was serious. He replied that it seemed like he was just overthinking it. Besides, he said that even if they knew it was a trap, they would still show up. She asked, then who were they really trying to catch? They were silent for a long time, and he said that didn't they say it was just a baseless rumor? Kurokawa looked at the sky and said that he hoped that was true too. But Kazuki was going that far. It could be true. The rumor that Subaru died due to the betrayal of the blue eyes may not be so simple. When the protagonist climbed to the roof and looked into the distance, he realized that this was why everyone had suddenly hidden. The system reported that the blue eyes had disintegrated and Subaru had died for his comrades. The guildmaster couldn't comment, and the reason for his departure was internal problems. 20 years had passed, he would never reach the level of Kujo again. And for someone like him to do so, a miracle would have to happen. It was something similar to what he used in the tournament. He managed to obtain a single-use legendary item, the one he used on the second floor. It was a thunder spear. He thought he knew everything about thunder techniques, but he realized he still had a long way to go. This is the incredible power of gods and giants. Only by uniting can people resist it. And perhaps he'd been using thunder techniques incorrectly all this time. If he manages to clear this dungeon, he might learn something new. The secret of thunder. With this, he can become stronger. Sometime later, Wika found herself at home, drinking tea with various delicacies from the table. She called someone and said they couldn't hear him. It was her friend, who apologized for screwing up. She said he was apologizing, but she couldn't hear anything. He asked again, was she even listening? She told him that she doesn't associate with losers who lose all their money. Kyoharu replied that he had already repaid her. Today, he spent everything he had. He doesn't even need to pay the electricity bill. Please, he begs her. Wika asked again, did he think his actions would move her? He shouted that he would do whatever she wanted, and if she wanted, he would be her dog. She told him to stop, because this was disgusting, then looked down and asked if he could do her a favor. At that moment, the doorbell rang and someone entered the room. It was Subaru who approached the bar and told him to pour the same as his neighbor. He asked if he was seriously drinking cheap beer, so even members of a major guild had to economize. Schneider replied that it had always been like that, They used to have so many members that after he paid for everyone, his wallet was completely empty. He had become so accustomed to the taste that he simply couldn't stand any other drink. Subaru asked again, does he always pay for everyone? He replied, of course he would. He simply couldn't look them in the eye. They all went with him to the Thunder Cave. At that moment, Subaru picked up a glass of beer, and Schneider said that he was poor like everyone else, and they couldn't even dream of support from the guild. And with their level of skill, hunting was quite difficult. They clinked glasses, and he explained that even passing the exam required credits, and if he died during the exam, he lost everything. For people like them, hunting was the only option. That day, they went hunting as usual to save up at least a little money and improve their skills. Subaru asked again that day. Schneider confirmed yes that day. They encountered the Sky Serpent. 7 experienced players didn't even stand a chance. What did he think happened in the end? 4 of them died, his comrade, no, even his best friends. At that moment, he began to sob, but Subaru said, don't they hate him for this? He asked again, do they hate him? That's putting it mildly. He heard so much from them, it was simply impossible to describe. What was so special about that cave? It was all because of him. If he hadn't been such an idiot, and his best friends had died, how dare he return alive? Subaru told him to shut up. That was enough. Schneider asked again, did he feel sorry for him? He replied that anyone else would have given up after something like that. Schneider asked again, gave up? They died because he was the one who invited them. And if he had given up, what happened without the dead? Their sacrifice would have been in vain. That's why he'd been obsessed with the Thunder Cave all this time and didn't think he could understand it. But now he saw a ray of hope. Subaru asked him again, surprised. What? He replied that he would tell him about it, what kind of place it was. Sometime later, Siwoo discussed it in the house. Had he really figured everything out? Perhaps he'd been too naive. If Kujo had really taken precautions and even revealed Rina's secret technique, he clutched his head and realized that Kujo shouldn't think he was robbing him of an easy death. At that moment, he grabbed his tablet and saw Rina write him words of apology. She couldn't return the boots and hoped nothing bad had happened. Siwoo got really angry and yelled, is she kidding? At that moment, the system reported that Subaru had started a stream. They donated 10 credits to him and asked if he was going to clear out the Thunder Cave. He replied, yes, that's why he started the stream. At that moment, someone apologized and asked if he was the streamer Subaru. Subaru confirmed, yes, and the guy replied, that's lucky for him because they were also trying to clear the Thunder Cave. A crowd of people gathered around him who wanted the same thing and decided that maybe they could team up. At that moment, Wika messaged him that these guys could help them. Subaru asked again, what did he mean? The guys said they were ready to help. You shouldn't think they weren't just trying to get closer to him. An awkward silence passed between them, and Subaru, breathing a sigh of relief, said that everything was clear and hoped they would do everything in their power. The guys confirmed that they would, and Subaru said that if they had also accepted the quest to clear this dungeon, he couldn't refuse them. The guys asked again, right? That's how the system really works. And at that moment, Subaru abruptly turned around and said that he couldn't kill everyone just because he was in a bad mood. One of the guys asked what he said. He told them to remember one thing. He didn't take any pleasure in having them around him. After a while, the red flag was raised. The rally point is on the outskirts of the Conrad Kingdom. Why are there so many people here? It can't be that so many mercenaries decided to clear the Thunder Cave at the same time. People were discussing whether there are E-rankers here. Raymond, he thought he didn't have very good skills, but they thought he had talent. Damon turned to Subaru and asked, they're foreigners too, right? It's not surprising. They risk their lives as if they were invulnerable. Subaru asked, do you think he should let them become food for the vultures? At that moment, the smell of blood grew stronger, and Damon shouted, why are they frozen? They should move forward. Subaru understood that it was the smell of human blood, not monsters. Meanwhile, a gathering was taking place on the outskirts of the Osman Kingdom. Many people were ready for battle, and Schneider was among them. He asked, what did he just say? His acquaintance, Pullman, said, are you deaf? Let him take half his people from here. They'll also participate in this raid. Schneider asked, is this Kujo's order? He replied that for him, it was Guildmaster Kujo. It's because he screwed up, right? He lost the value of the guild's property, so now he will be closely watched. Schneider replied, as if he would definitely allow such a thing. Pullman put a hand on his shoulder and said there was no need to state the obvious. He'd spent 10 years on the 3rd floor and lost to some newbie. He simply wouldn't have wasted 10 years here. At that moment, Donchao started defending him and shouted, what is he talking about? Does he think he'll get away with such words? Pullman replied that he should be grateful he came here. Now they have a chance to successfully clear the Thunder Cave. Donchao asked if maybe he should stop him. Schneider replied that there was no need to do that. The squad was mostly made up of newbies. Replacing them wouldn't be a problem. However, he had a point, and Donchao asked, how can this nonsense be true? Schneider said they could clear the Thunder Cave this time and looked confidently into the distance. Meanwhile, the guys, along with Subaru, were heading off. Damon said it was a strange place, and the fact that the doors opened after a certain amount of time suggested it was done on purpose. Let him see this Thunder Cave. They came right up to the gates, and instead of an entrance, lightning struck very frequently. Perhaps this was done to prevent anyone from getting inside. It could only be done for very short periods of time. One of the guys asked how many times he'd been in this cave. Damon replied that this was his third time. Only 10 people had managed to return from there alive, and he was one of them. The guy asked again, was he still trying to clear this dungeon? Damon replied that he wasn't an idiot risking his life in vain, and the guy asked, then why was he going with them? He replied that he had one unfinished business there. He wanted to find a trace of lightning. If he did that, he could say goodbye to this job. He was already fed up with the constant risk. The guy asked again, did he really want to go all the way to the end? Damon wondered who would even dare go there. He seemed to know nothing about this place. He couldn't do anything, especially if he was an E rank. He should just die faster. At that moment, lightning struck the gate, and Damon said the passage would open in about an hour. One of the rats began squeaking, and Damon tossed it aside and slammed it against the gate, which glowed brightly. He asked, did everyone see? If he didn't want to end up like that rat, then he shouldn't push forward. Subaru took a step toward the gate, and Damon asked again, was he even listening? The protagonist realized this was very similar to the trials of the Millennium Mountain on the second floor. No one understood what he was doing. Was he really tired of living? Subaru extended his magical hand, and the system reported that the Heart of Thunder provided resistance to the Gate of Thunder's effects, resistance to the negative effects of the electric chair, and the Gate of Thunder assessed his level. At that moment, all the boys exclaimed in surprise, not understanding how he was still alive. Lightning interacted with the Gate of Thunder. The Heart of Thunder interacted with the Gate of Thunder. The Gate of Thunder opened, revealing a path to the lightning trail. When he managed to open the gate, a special object, glowing with a stone, fell to the ground. Damon exclaimed, could that really be the lightning trail? He pulled out his sword, and Subaru asked, were they waiting for someone with the appropriate level? He took it in his hands and was suddenly attacked by a member of his squad. He wouldn't get punished for attacking him back. It was Damon who attacked him in the shoulder, drawing blood. Damon threateningly said that he was just lucky, and now he should just give it to him. MC asked, why should he listen to him? Damon replied, they're otherworlders. It's customary for local items to go to the locals. Even if he's from another world, he's still afraid of death, right? MC thought, right. Even if you can't really die during a raid, the pain still feels real. And this can lead to insane terror, mental breakdown, and PTSD. Sometimes the nightmare you've experienced carries over into reality. Damon frowned and said, when death looms before your eyes, anyone would feel pathetic. They're used to killing otherworlders. Does he know? The guys asked fearfully. Was he kidding or something? A nightmare. So the rumors that Damon's mercenaries are killing players turned out to be true. You shouldn't have come here. Grim screamed. Narukami. He suggested being rational and negotiating. Drops of blood fell on his face when MC killed the opponent and said, well, now he has an excuse. He turned around and plunged the sword into the guy's body. Subaru suggested turning these guys into vultures too. Damon screamed. No way. He thought, he's an E rank. What the hell is going on? MC got up to him and swung his sword. He asked, is he so proud of his S rank that he doesn't let himself be finished off in one blow? Damon screamed. He tricked him. Idiot. Who is he anyway? Subaru quickly attacked him, cutting off the hand he was holding the weapon in. Damon screamed loudly and fell to his knees. He asked, the owner of the demon blade? Coward. He became stronger by relying on the weapon. Subaru told him not to compare him to himself. Idiot. If it pisses him off, he should save up money and buy himself the same one. But he doesn't think he'll need it anymore. Damon screamed, little one. MC quickly killed him, after which the system window reported that he defeated the demon. Grim saw this and screamed loudly, and MC looked at him and asked, do they want it too? Grim screamed, no, this belongs to him, Lord Narukami. The viewers laughed at him for already calling him Lord. Subaru looked around and said, okay, they're going. After a while, a group of people were walking through the dungeon. The girl asked, do they really need to follow him? Grim asked, what is she talking about? The girl replied, he's just definitely crazy. Grim smiled and replied, everything will be fine as long as you don't do anything stupid like those guys. And as long as they don't attack him first, Narukami Subaru won't do anything reckless. Streaming is essentially a popularity business, so they have to suck up to regular users like them. He remembered the chat messages and continued talking until they popped up. Suddenly, there was a scream. The road ahead is blocked too. But when they entered, there was nothing here. MC remembered Schneider's words that the first he would meet in the lightning cave would be the lightning wolves. There are a lot of them there. If he fought them one by one, he would quickly become exhausted. MC gripped the hilt of his sword and rushed into battle with the wolves. The guy shouted, Narukami, is he leaving them? Schneider said, but there is one way to deal with them quickly. Usually, the leader is meant to be the largest creature, but with wolves, it is different. The leader is the smallest, the system window reported. The leader of the lightning wolves. MC quickly attacked him, and the system window reported the activation of Cloud Step. He can walk on air for 3 seconds. Subaru ran through the air and thought, Toshiya, this is what he felt all the time, huh? MC landed when suddenly the wolves struck there. The system window reported an onslaught of lightning. This is falling on the demonic blade. Subaru thought, an eye for an eye, lightning for lightning. He directed a stream of mana towards the monsters and thought, his lightning is faster than theirs. The system window reported, he defeated the leader of the lightning wolves. The ardor waned. He leveled up. His strength, agility, and endurance increased by 1 point. Grim cried out in displeasure, a nightmare. There is no end to them. MC recalled Schneider's words that when the leader is gone, victory is guaranteed. MC ordered the wolves to sit. From this moment on, he becomes their boss. The wolves listened to him, and the system window reported, he pacified the lightning wolves. Now he can command the lightning wolves in the cave of lightning. Grimm turned around and asked, what happened? MC put away his sword and ordered them to move on. Come on, people were asking, what's going on? Why are the wolves obeying him? After a while, MC looked around and said, he thinks this is a good place. Now let them howl. The wolves began to howl loudly, and the people looked around puzzled. Grimm shouted, Narukami, what is he doing? Huge insects appeared in the cave, and the guys screamed, please, stop. He'll attract all the monsters in the area. Grimm cried out, what is he doing? Subaru replied, this is the last hunt. He prefers to work this way. There's no need to worry about him. He has thunder wolves. Grimm asked them to stop. What should they do? Subaru said it. He said it himself. He's just accompanying them. His survival is his problem. He started attacking the monsters. At that moment, everyone in the office was watching his broadcast. The girl asked fearfully, can they really let him do this? Tail replied, that's his business. The girl said, but she looked at the screen where it showed the monsters attacking people. Tail said, yes, in any other situation he would have been dragged through the mud, but now is not the case. He showed her the screen, where there was a post about recruiting Narukami Subaru for an escort group for a raid on the Thunder Cave. Many people wrote that he was in. Tail said it was like hitchhiking, where he was responsible for himself, and he immediately stated the raid format. Besides, there was no way they could clear the Thunder Cave alone. It's like a free ride. Who would refuse something like that? The girl asked. Does he think the viewers will understand this too? The fact that he abandoned them to their fate seems very strange. Tail replied, perhaps if it only happened once. The girl said, really? Tail replied, if everything was that easy, there would be no end to those who wanted it. People love freebies. Narukami Subaru taught them a lesson. There's no such thing as a free lunch. The system window reported that his level had increased. Strength, life energy, and focus had increased by 1. MC looked around and asked, so now no one minds if he continues on his way alone? The viewers asked, did he really get rid of them? They were just useless. It's still too cruel. The MC said that if anyone else tries to tail him, they should be prepared for it. Tail grabbed his head and laughed out loud. He wiped away a tear and thought, he does care what his audience thinks of him. Everything he says and does is just perfectly calculated. Tail smiled and said, he has to admit, he's a great player and streamer. After a while, Wika was walking down the street when she suddenly saw a call from the boss. She answered and asked to be excused. She was busy. Tail shouted, it's about Narukami Subaru. She asked again, Narukami? Warukami? What happened? Tail replied, he only wants to know one thing. Did she tell Narukami about the team recruitment post? Wika replied, yes, she told him. Tail replied, I see. So they planned everything in advance? Wika asked again, what? They planned? If he decided to talk to her about such nonsense, she would probably refuse. She hung up, and Tail looked at the gadget, puzzled. He put it on the table and asked if she had saved a copy of that post from the forum. The girl answered, of course. Tail said, now they will make them all understand that very influential people are behind Narukami Subaru. At that moment, the players were fighting the wolves, and Poleman shouted, Schneider! He attacked the wolf and screamed. He did that on purpose, right? He didn't like that he joined the squad? Schneider grabbed his sword and screamed, there it is. He threw the sword forward and Poleman said, idiot, he's kidding me. The sword stuck in the wolf's head, and Poleman said, he thought he had decided to make his own decision, but it turned out they were all in cahoots. Schneider ordered them to sit. Poleman asked, what? He meant him? He frowned and said, he was always looking for a fight. Well, he suggested finding out who was stronger. Someone said, wolves. The players clutched their weapons and asked, what's going on? Poleman screamed, what did he do? Schneider replied, I don't think he understood the main secret of the Thunder Cave. And he's not the only one. Even the Blue Zone commanders don't know about it. He walked forward and said, he must leave. Otherwise, he will lose all credibility with his comrades. Poleman said, idiot. At that moment, MC met a boss called Thunder Maw. A huge creature with a toothy mouth stood before him, when suddenly he quickly rushed into battle. Subaru quickly attacked the creature and remembered Schneider's words. He finally succeeded. It took him 3 years to clear the cave, and this is what he realized. This is only the beginning of the real Thunder Cave. MC looked at the huge doors and said, so that's what Schneider meant by the real Thunder Cave. The system window reported he passed the first gate of thunder. The doors opened, and Subaru thought until the last moment the Thunder Cave was no different from other dungeons. Judging by what Schneider said, everything is starting to go differently. The system window reported he passed the first gate of thunder. The thunder test begins. Subaru thought, only now. MC ran his hand over a large drawing, and the audience asked, what kind of drawing is this? For some, it's just a random set of lines. Some time ago, Schneider said, the first gate of thunder. It took him 5 years to complete this. The audience asked, is that a dragon? He was the only one who thought he saw it move. The drawing started moving. How long does he think it will take him? The system window said that the evaluation of the power of his thunderclaps would now begin. Thunderclaps are the roar that occurs after a lightning strike, but he already has this skill. That's why he doesn't know what reward he can get for clearing the Thunder Cave. Even if it's the same element, it doesn't mean this skill will work the same. Judge Rangel appeared in front of MC. Schneider asked a while ago, so it was he who defeated the Thunder Wolf leader Greg, right? He might not even try to fight him. MC thought. Schneider, in his opinion, is he completely stupid? He certainly doesn't seem like someone you should mess with. He only fought Greg because that's how the mission was programmed. Rangel's trials are never repeated. For example, he would have to endure 10 million lightning strikes, or he could turn off all his senses and lock him in complete darkness, or force him to fight a giant monster. Rangel asked, does he want to pass the trial of thunder? MC replied, yes. The viewers wrote, he really said it. He really has a character of steel. Rangel said he was curious. He had already proven the high level of his skills. Let him show what he has there. Subaru looked at his hand and thought, a trace of lightning? Schneider hadn't told him anything about this. Rangel asked thoughtfully, so he was able to open the gate of thunder and enter inside? MC extended his hand with the artifact forward and asked, hasn't anyone else managed to get hold of this artifact? For example, that bearded man with the spear. Rangel replied, he couldn't open the gate. He managed to get it from the concentrated energy of the dungeons. Subaru thought, well, now everything is clear to him. Rangel said, now he will announce the essence of the trial. Let him swallow it. This will be his test. The system window reported that it is a lightning trace of unknown rank and unknown category. It is a crystal formed after a clap of thunder tore through the sky. MC asked, is this thing incredibly valuable? A viewer wrote, he could sell this thing and live in luxury for the rest of his life, but he is willing to do anything just to keep going through the dungeon. Subaru asked, is it really worth it? Viewers wrote, naturally, it looks delicious. MC thought that if he passes the test, it doesn't mean the reward will be more valuable. It feels like a scam, but most of all, he wants to keep going. If he turns back, he will never forgive himself, just like Blue Eyes won't forgive him either. He threw the artifact into his mouth, and the system window reported that he swallowed a lightning trace. The test will continue inside his body. Strong lightning discharges began to spread throughout MC's body. At that moment, Wika was sitting at the table and watching the stream. She cried out in displeasure, pathetic worm. Does he even know how much this stone is worth? Doesn't he need the money? She hopes he'll be okay. At that moment, she received a call from Kiyoharu. He said he was almost there. Kiyoharu asked, already? Apparently, it wasn't far. Wika remained silent and then asked to listen. Kiyoharu asked, what was wrong? Wika asked him to forgive her, and Kiyoharu told her to forget. Let him just keep his promise, okay? If she asks him about it again, she won't get anything anyway. No means no. He only called to say there was no turning back. Okay, good luck to her. Wika hung up and looked at it carefully. Kiyoharu said, impossible. He was standing on the 5th floor of the tower, near the Heavenly Forge. Kiyoharu said he never thought he'd return here. At that moment, MC closed his eyes as a powerful stream of energy erupted from his body. The system window reported, the thunder trail was inside his body. His mana level increased by 1 point. Fatigue reached 67 units. His mana level increased by 1 point. Fatigue reached 73 units. MC wondered if his pulse had increased that much? No, it was something else. He felt like something was blocking the flow of mana. The system window reported, the lightning trail was spreading throughout his entire body. Subaru thought he couldn't move. The system window reported, the lightning trail had taken control of his body. MC thought he was literally tied up. The system window reported, the thunder heart was resisting the lightning trail's effect. Subaru thought, the thunder heart and the lightning trail were opposing each other? Wasn't the thunder heart the optimal item? He stepped on the floor, and the system window reported, his mana level increased by 1 point. Fatigue reached 81 units. Subaru thought, this doesn't look like the effect of a lightning trail at all. Maybe he means the Heart of Thunder? Subaru took it in his hand, and the system window reported that the Heart of Thunder has a unique rank. He put it in his mouth, and the system window reported that the Heart of Thunder resists the effect of a lightning trail. 2 types of mana mixed on MC's body, and he stopped. Rangel said, well, he finally got it. MC clutched his chest and thought, so this is the Heart of Thunder. Rangel asked, he didn't even know how to use it, but he was glad that he was able to figure it out himself. Subaru said discontentedly, yeah, he's joking. He almost died. Rangel said, last time the one who wielded the power of thunder couldn't do it, but he was able to reassure him. The system window reported, the Thunder skill level has been increased to level 4. The Thunder skill has been acquired. Level 5. The Thunder skill rank was raised to S. After a while, Schneider's eyes widened in surprise and said, it's not here. The drawing disappeared. The guy asked, Captain, is it just him or does this place look deserted? Schneider said, the dragon is gone. Dong Yao happily said, yes, that's right. Did he erase it? Schneider replied, he didn't even touch it. Apparently, someone else did it. Dong Yao asked, what? There's someone else here besides them? Could it really be Narukami Subaru? And how did he even manage to make the dragon disappear? Poleman said, it doesn't matter what it was. If Narukami Subaru is already here, they need to hurry. They can't let him take all the loot. Schneider asked, does he think he's here just for that? Poleman replied, well, that's what he wanted to say. Schneider smirked and said, he feels something has changed. Someone else managed to get through the Thunder Cave to the end. And he knows, he's very happy about it, so he shouldn't ruin his mood. Poleman said okay. Donchao put a hand on his shoulder and said, they don't need to rush. He'd already fought this guy once in the tournament. He destroyed him with 1 blow. Poleman asked, so what? Donchao smirked and said, even Narukami wouldn't be able to get through the entire cave. Poleman looked at him with displeasure, and Schneider said if they wanted to witness a perfect passage through the Thunder Cave, they should pay attention. First, they just needed to survive. Paulman frowned and thought, so he wasn't even going to defend the cave himself. Then what awaited them next? Schneider walked up to the doors and said, "The thunder ends behind this door. And right now, Narukami Subaru might already be behind this door." They opened the doors, and the system window reported that they had passed through the second thunder gate. "Please let him take his place on the throne." Schneider looked around and said, "He is not here." Paulman asked discontentedly, "What happened again?" Schneider replied, "He's not here." Paulman shouted, "Stop talking about him all the time. Perhaps he'd already sat on that throne and moved on." Schneider replied, "No, that's impossible." Donchao asked, "Why?" The system window reported that he had passed through the throne's portal. A bright flash appeared in front of them, causing the players to cry out in surprise. The system window reported the appearance of the Thunder Knight. The knight appeared in front of them, and the boy cried out, "The Thunder Knight? Is this the boss?" The player asked why the monster looked like a man. Schneider said they couldn't proceed unless they defeated him. He was the obstacle no one could overcome. Peleus, the Thunder Knight. Schneider said that some time ago, that's what he calls himself. And this is the first time he's told the player his name. They're not just two people with the same name, right? Both of their trials are related to the Thunder skill, so it's highly unlikely that this is the case. MC asked why this information hadn't surfaced anywhere yet. After all, there were already people who knew about Peleus. Schneider answered, but he was the only one who had heard his name, and even he didn't know who he was. He guesses his Thunder skill and the Thunder Knight are somehow connected. That's why. Currently, Schneider thought he was hoping that he would appear before he got to this place. But Peleus said, "He's here again." Schneider asked, "Was he expecting someone else?" Peleus replied, "Well, he's very clever." Schneider smirked and said, "Did he finally manage to meet the one he was expecting?" Peleus replied, "Not yet." Schneider grabbed the hilt of his sword and said, "I see. Someone ordered to surround him." Paulman ordered not to let him escape. The guys rushed to attack, and Schneider ordered to stop. "If you just mindlessly attack him." At that moment, Peleus attacked the players, and Schneider said, "Such cheap tricks." He froze in surprise at what he saw and said, "It's ineffective against the Thunder Knight." Paulman grabbed his sword and screamed, "What the hell? If he doesn't do it, then he will." He tried to attack Peleus, but his sword cracked. Peleus put the sword to his neck, causing Paulman to scream, "Oh my god." At that moment, MC's eyes widened and he grabbed his head. He was sitting near the rocks and asking how much time had passed. The viewers asked, "About half an hour?" A viewer donated him 100 credits and left a message. It was painful to look at. Next time, he should try doing a joint stream with Narukami Shibaru. The viewers wrote, "Narukami Shibaru? Really, he's a killer." MC thought, "What? Indeed." The Hawkeye collaboration was a success, and a joint stream with Shibaru will be an incredible success. MC replied that he needed to try. The viewers were rejoicing when suddenly a system window appeared in front of MC, informing him that all his stats were around 40 points. Fatigue was 71 points. Subaru thought this was alarming. He said, "Okay, they're moving on." At that moment, Paulman was near his neck, but Schneider quickly dismissed it. He began to attack Peleus, and Paulman said, "The 10-year difference is taking its toll." Donchao asked if he really believed the guild had such a lack of faith in their captain that they would send him in his place. He was just a tool to awaken the captain's pride. Paulman looked at MC, who rushed into battle and said, "Did Narukami Subaru kill Schneider?" Schneider held back the blow and said, "Nasty. He can't resist him. How long can he last? 2 minutes at most." "No, most likely just 1. Peleus attacked the players, quickly moving forward. Schneider thought, well, he'll have to put all his strength into one powerful blow. He got close to Peleus and tried to hit him in the head, but at that moment Peleus turned around, which scared Schneider. Peleus said that he could only get a little stronger. His eyes flashed when suddenly lightning struck his body. MC attacked him, and he turned around and said, "It's Narukami Subaru." MC walked forward and ordered Schneider to back off. He released mana and drew his sword, and then said, "He'll only get in the way." Peleus and Subaru rushed into battle, releasing their bright mana. Peleus said, "It's been a while, his friend." MC pushed him away and said, "He heard everything." The guys looked at him confused and asked, "What's going on?" Peleus grabbed his helmet and said he wasn't sure he remembered his face, so let him greet him. It was him, Peleus. The spectators asked in fear, "Peleus? What happened to his face? What happened to him?" Peleus said he didn't know where he'd been all this time, but he didn't expect to meet again. MC asked how much time had passed. Peleus replied that he really did come from another world. He'd lost count, but it seemed like several hundred years had passed. Subaru thought, the Thunder test is a virtual test that can be taken as many times as you like. Why does he still remember it? Peleus said that after he learned that aliens from other worlds exist, he began to wonder if he too was not from this world. Subaru asked what happened to the villagers and why he looked so strange. Peleus replied, after he left, the giant invasion continued, and the village was destroyed. He was the only survivor, and all this time he was trying to achieve the same power as him. All this time he was searching for the source of it, and finally, in this cave, he found it. But the price was much higher than he could have imagined. He lost both eyes and could no longer see. In addition, a curse was placed on him, preventing him from leaving the cave. All he could do was wait for the moment when he returned. This would be his last request. Please let him grant him peace. Subaru thought, fatigue almost reaching its maximum. If he does not want to perish, he must do this. The system window reported, the Heart of Thunder is charging. Fatigue has reached 78%, recharging. The 5th level of the Wedge of Greed grants resistance to the secondary effects of thunder. MC replied, all right, he will fulfill his last wish. At this time, Rina was walking through the forest and thinking, she thinks he has gone crazy, and she can't even fix it. Simple. She stopped and looked at the frozen hut in surprise. Rina said, he really has gone crazy. She opened the door slightly and looked around in confusion, and then jumped in fear when chunks of ice flew at her. She screamed, this is too much. Did he decide to kill her? Shigure came up to her above and said, Rina. She folded her arms in fear and said, he's right. She must pay for this with her life. She's really sorry. Shigure asked, she did it on purpose, right? She answered, no, she did. Shigure ordered her to tell it like it is. Rina grabbed her head and said, yes. Shigure asked, why did she do it? Rina answered, she didn't see his face, but it looked very much like it was Subaru, so she just let him go. She doesn't think he will do anything bad. Shigure said, it's all clear. Yes, he really had tormented her enough. He suggested she pretend nothing had happened. Rina asked in surprise, did he forgive her? Shigure replied, in any case, she had to clean up here. Rina screamed in irritation, what? So he did all this himself. At that moment, strong streams of mana spread throughout the dungeon. Palamen screamed, is this really the third floor? Donchao screamed, where's the exit? MC swung his sword, and Schneider said, Pelias's main weakness is that he's blind. MC struck Pelias and threw him aside. He thought, if he could conceal his presence, he could create an exit. The system window reported that his fatigue had reached 81%. Pelias said, nothing. At that moment, a sword was thrown into his hand, to which Pelias looked questioningly. Subaru turned and asked, Schneider? Just in time. Pelias said, he still has one arm. He released his mana and looked around questioningly. MC took off and said, now. The system window reported, cloud running activated. He can stay in the air for 3 seconds. He released his mana and quickly attacked Pelias. Pelias apologized for the inconvenience, dear friend. Thank him. He disappeared. After which there was an explosion. His mana dispersed throughout the room, and MC looked at the throne as a sword flew past him. Palamen asked, oh my god, is he really that much stronger than Schneider? Donchao replied, he's just a cheater, that's all. Palamen turned around and shouted, this is their only chance to defeat Narukami Subaru. They need to attack him together. MC walked towards them, causing everyone to tense up. Palamen shouted, are they even listening to him? This is the same guy their beloved captain has been chasing this whole time. They just need to kill him and take all the loot. He turned around and screamed loudly. He thought, why isn't he using the power of thunder? He seems to have completely depleted his energy. They have to seize the moment. Palamen screamed, Schneider? What is he waiting for? This is his chance for revenge. It's right in front of him. Schneider replied, he already lost an arm. There's no need to drag him into this. Palamen screamed, what? And the reward? He understands that the guild won't let this go. Schneider asked, what is he talking about? He earned this loot, and he joined the blue zone only for a chance to clear the Thunder Cave. He doesn't care about their internal games. Palamen looked at him, puzzled, and then said, Narukami, he has an amazing offer. He needs to join the blue zone, and all the loot from the Thunder Cave will be his. Moreover, they are ready to provide him with the best treatment. And these are not just words, but an official statement of the guild. Palamen thought, initially he planned to obtain the power of thunder and keep his previous position, but now he will just have to minimize losses. He approached MC and said he believes they have no reason to fight each other anymore. MC asked, what made him think that? He is not interested in his offer. He attacked him and turned to Schneider. He asked Schneider, is he here too? Schneider replied, he wants to know what's going on. Subaru asked, does he want to come with him? Schneider asked again, is he against it? They should leave. Dongyao asked why. Schneider replied, this is his last order as his captain, and his last request as their comrade. Dongyao said, Captain? With tears in his eyes. Schneider grabbed the sword and pierced his leg. He asked, and what will he say to that? So he can become stronger, right? Subaru asked, what will they do? The viewers wrote that it was impossible to refuse after that. The man is really powerful. MC replied, it's decided. He walked up to the throne, and Schneider's eyes widened in surprise. MC sat down when suddenly everything before his eyes began to shake. The system window reported that he sat on the throne of thunder. A guy in armor entered the hall and walked towards MC. He said that right now he can't withstand such a strong force of thunder. Therefore, he cannot take this place, but he will definitely become stronger and return here. Today he came just to tell him this, father. He turned around and left the hall, after which everything under the throne began to crack. The audience asked, did the throne start to collapse after he sat on it? What's wrong with that? They didn't think it was that thick. MC thought, wait, didn't the audience see the cutscene? A glowing ball appeared above Subaru, and the audience wrote that they wanted to see it too. The system window reported that they cleared the Thunder Cave. The Sacred Heart of Thunder was obtained. The level has been tripled. Strength and agility have increased by 2 points, and vitality and concentration have increased by 3 points. Now he can get membership in the Central Guild. The Sacred Heart of Thunder is not for sale and has an unknown rank. Subaru showed a small sphere, and the audience asked, what is this? Is this a normal thing or not? And what will he do with it? MC thought, after everything he'd been through, this reward was just trash. Wait, is this the same type as the Thunder Heart? Schneider asked, what was that? What happened? MC said, this thing appeared out of nowhere. Schneider asked, so what is it anyway? Subaru replied, well, Schneider looked at him puzzled, then smirked and said, even if he doesn't know, I see. If he wants to see the result of his 10 years of work, he'll have to watch his stream? MC asked again. The result? They've just started. Does he think he's going to leave this floor too? If he wants to watch the recording, he'll have to donate. Well, he suggested he take up missions. The viewers were writing, yeah, it's about time. I wonder what's next. Schneider asked, is this the first thing he wants to do after clearing the Thunder Cave? He really is weird. The system window reported the mission is completed. They donated 30,000 credits to him. Subaru said, thank you for staying with them until the end. And now. Viewers wrote, really, this can't be. Yeah, a nightmare. Subaru said, see you later. He ended the broadcast. Shigure and Reina saw the sign that Narukami Subaru's broadcast had ended. Shigure asked, does he always do this? Rina answered, yes, it's a little annoying, but it's his unique style. Shigure asked, well, and what does she think? Rina asked again about what? Shigure answered, this was the first time she saw Narukami Subaru in person. Rina stood up and asked, maybe he's just an impersonator? Where is the proof that it's him? Is this what he wants to hear? He always appears in a mask, so they can't even see his face. At first, she really thought it was Subaru. Shigure said, yes, but... Rina turned around and said, and then she thought again. First of all, Subaru hates being the center of attention. He would never host streams where he sells himself and wear his signature mask. Secondly, the tower system doesn't work like that. It's not like he reincarnated inside the manga to start over from the first floor. Rina frowned and said, judging by those two conditions, it simply can't be Narukami Subaru. Shigure folded his arms and said, impossible. Rina asked, is he sure? Fifth floor. Heavenly Forge. In their world, it is the second most powerful organization, second only to the Martial Arts Alliance. This place is a symbol of the Alliance's strength. This is where he grew up. Kiyoharu walked down the corridor, accompanied by guards. He frowned and said, it feels like they consider him a criminal. The guard asked, what do you mean? Kiyoharu frowned and replied, nothing. Let him forget it. The guard asked him to refrain from making such remarks. If he had anything to say, he could convey it to the master. Kiyoharu replied, he never thought that was possible. He thought, judging by the fact that she had decided to ask him for help, something truly serious had happened. He stopped in front of the large doors and thought, but would he be able to maintain his composure in the presence of this man? He stepped inside and thought, the head of the Divine Forge, one of the most famous heroes of a tower and the second most powerful warrior. Unten Kyoku. Kiyoharu bowed and said, he greets him, master. Is everything all right? Unten turned and said, they will omit the formalities. Let him call him uncle, like in the old days. Unten Kyoku, lord of the 6th rank Divine Forge. Kiyoharu replied, very well, uncle. Unten asked, is he well? Kiyoharu replied, yes. Unten said, Azure Heavens, they're interesting guys. Recently, the young warrior Narukami Subaru has become popular. Kiyoharu looked up and asked how he knew he worked for Azure Heaven. Unten replied, it doesn't matter. Kiyoharu cried out, it doesn't matter to him, but... Unten suggested changing the subject. He thinks he had his reasons for returning. Did he come to deliver Wick's answer? Kiyoharu replied, yes, he went here right after meeting her. She refused. Unten frowned and asked, what? Did she really refuse? He's interested, doesn't he? What did she refuse? Kiyoharu frowned and replied, no. Unten asked, so he doesn't even know? Kiyoharu said she only said one thing. She refuses. She's his best friend. Unten said, so she made him her messenger. Kiyoharu replied, no, he just lost a bet to her, and he had to convey this. He coughed loudly as his uncle's mana fell upon him. Unten said, well, then let him convey his answer to her too. If she continues to behave like this, she will have to answer for everything. And this also applies to anyone who is somehow connected to her. At this time, it was raining outside in the city. Wika looked at the screen of her gadget and read the posts. Someone wrote, those guys who latched on to Narukami Subaru turned out to be absolute trash. He was in the same squad as Val, one of the guys who tried to complete the raid with Narukami Subaru. He was complete trash, using his comrades as a shield and constantly running away with the loot. He didn't expect to see him here. Wika sighed and asked, it was his doing, right? How did he figure everything out? Tail replied, he decided to go through all the available information step by step. Initially, the public wasn't thrilled about it all. People thought the players who joined Subaru were really trying their best. So he spread the word that they were just ordinary noobs, and that's exactly what they were. So Narukami can't be blamed. He did the right thing. Wika replied that she hadn't said anything against it. Besides, she was his manager, so she should be on his side anyway. Tail smirked and said, well, let her keep it up. A manager should be their protege's biggest fan. He thought Wika had become much more cheerful lately. When they first met, she looked very gloomy, but now she's become more active and positive. He patted her on the head and said, of course, streamers are very important, but the well-being of his other colleagues is also important to him. He hoped that their collaboration would be just productive in the future. Wika pushed his hand away, and he asked what was wrong. She said, nothing. She had to go. He didn't need to make the situation so awkward. Tail picked up the umbrella and asked her to wait. Let her at least take the umbrella. Wika said, no need. And anyway, why did he only take one umbrella? At that moment, MC was sitting in the room and looking at the artifact he received. He thought, he still doesn't understand how to use this thing. He doesn't think he should just swallow it. It's too valuable. But this cutscene that only he saw, like on the second floor, when he met the giant and got the answers to his questions. If he meets this guy, then maybe he can learn something interesting too. There was a knock on the door and a voice rang out. It was her, Wika. Subaru told her to come in. She entered the room and sat down next to MC on the bed. She said sheepishly, they don't need to do this here. Subaru asked, did she really decide to go outside in this rain? Wika considered staying alone with him in his secret hideout. She imagined a romantic image of MC and blushed with embarrassment. She shouted loudly, "If he can get past the 4th floor, he can increase his rank." Subaru looked at her questioningly, and Wika said that if he wanted, she would tell him how the ranking system works. MC thought he knew more about it than anyone else. He had been studying the mechanics of it since he was in the guild. Upon reaching the 5th floor, the system evaluates the player's ranking. Of course, the most important factors are how they performed during the trials, the impact they had on their world, their reputation, and the results of battles with other players. In any case, the ranking is determined after evaluating a large number of factors. Wika closed her laptop and said she was curious about what place he would take in the ranking. His reputation is currently at a high level, and viewer reaction is also an important factor in determining ratings. When it comes to streamers who have managed to grow so quickly, only Narukami Subaru comes to mind. By the way, about him, what does he think about this collab he promised the viewers? Subaru asked, "What do you mean?" Wika, slightly frightened, said, "His nickname, the Destroyer King." MC said he didn't think he would choose such a pretentious nickname. Wika replied, "Yes, this guy really is very unusual. He has already co-streamed with 20 streamers and all of them disappeared. The streams were successful, so there was no reason for them to end their careers." MC asked, "So what's the problem?" Wika frowned and said she thought it was some kind of curse. Everyone who co-streams with Subaru ends up very badly. Subaru asked if she was sure the problem was him. Wika replied that she believed so. He had been working with their company for a long time. Subaru suggested doing it back then. They will host this stream. On the 3rd floor of the Central Guild, MC started the stream and greeted everyone. Now he needs to sort out some things. He approached the librarian, who ordered him to show his mercenary license and proof of completing the quest. MC handed him the paper, and the man looked at it in surprise. He said, "It's impossible. An E-rank alien? Thunder Cave? That can't be." The librarian said, "Confirmed, but no one has yet managed to clear Thunder Cave." The system window reported that he had completed the quest, Conquering Thunder Cave. 300,000 experience points have been received. He passed the Conrad Kingdom trial. The audience asked in surprise, 300,000? That's 30 times more than the reward for a regular trial. The system window reported, "The conditions have been met. Complete the trial?" Subaru said, "Great, let's go." The system window reported, "Proceed to the 4th floor, a world where dreams disappear. Most players get stuck here for a long time. 4th floor, Elysium. This world is like a fairy tale. That's why players forget about their goals and dreams and stay here for a long time." Subaru walked down the street with his hands in his pockets. He said, "Great. They'll hold today's stream here." Viewers wrote that it would be enough for them to just see the city center. Subaru approached the palace and said, "It looks expensive." Wika approached him and asked why he doesn't come in. MC replied, "He thinks it's too much for him." Wika replied, "Come on, he's already a respected streamer." They went inside, and she said he can rest for a while. Subaru asked, "Maybe they should make a stream schedule. When will they start taking new challenges?" Wika said she needs some time to structure everything. She just has some things to do. After a while, she peeked around the corner and heard words. "She's late." She asked to be forgiven for making him wait. Kiyoharu sat by the river and said, "Enough, this doesn't suit her." Such apologies are not his style. She remembers that stream in the forest near the Heavenly Forge. It reminded him of his childhood. They could play until dusk, and then her guards would come and drive them home. Wika looked at him thoughtfully, and Kiyoharu said, he thought they were already grown up, but it seems to him nothing has changed. Wika said, "Uncle." Kiyoharu said, "Yes, her father knew everything. Where she was and what she was doing." Wika, he thinks it's time for them to end this. On the 8th floor, in the headquarters of the Blue Zone Guild, a man sat. He looked at the screen of his gadget and said, "This is starting to get on his nerves." On the screen, tabs were open with headlines that Narukami Subaru rejected the offer of the Blue Zone Guild. He put the glass on the table and said, again, a refusal. He received a call from Guildmaster Kujo. Assistant Guildmaster Ikari Genji answered the call and said, "Yes, Mr. Guildmaster. It's about Narukami Subaru. They're moving on to the next stage." The system window reported that he had been donated 100 credits and asked, "Well, what are your plans for today?" Viewers wrote that they thought he wanted to do something crazy again. "Most likely, that's what will happen." MC replied, "Of course, the leveling speed depends on your physical stats. Therefore, he plans to level up as quickly as possible." The system window reported that 3,000 credits had been spent. He began the 4th floor trial. Welcome to the Forest of War. There are 8 players in the forest, divided into 2 teams of 4. The map consists of 3 levels, separated by jungle. Each player must defend their level from enemy attacks. Players can increase their stats by hunting minions or monsters. The team that destroys the enemy base wins. The 4th floor challenge will be completed if he achieves the rank of Conqueror through several consecutive victories. The system window reported that he has achieved the rank of Bronze 3rd. All his stats have been improved according to his rank. Narukami Subaru is Bronze 3rd. He receives points for winning matches against opponents. MC thought that completing the floor would take at least 6 months. The system window reported that ranks increased from bronze, silver, platinum, diamond, and finally conqueror. Subaru thought that for some players, this stage had become an obstacle they were never able to overcome. The system window reported that the challenge ends when he earns enough points to achieve the rank of patron. He needs to defeat enemies and increase his rank. To win, he needs to destroy the enemy base. Players appeared next to MC: Victor Roman, Platinum 2nd, Niall Toole, Platinum 3rd, and Rowan, Platinum 4. Victor asked, "Bronze?" Niall asked, "Seriously? Is this some kind of bug?" Rowan asked them to stop. She turned around and asked if this was really Narukami Subaru. Niall replied that Narukami Subaru had died long ago. Rowan said no, she meant the streamer with the same nickname. Niall yelled, "A streamer? And that gives him the right to ruin everyone else's game? Having a bronze player on the team practically dooms them to failure." MC approached them and asked if he was so sure of defeat. "Why didn't he just quit the game?" Niall yelled, "Does he even know who he's talking to?" Rowan asked them not to fight. After all, they were on the same team. Of course, they were at a disadvantage, but they had to at least try. Each of them would take their own level, and Narukami would handle the jungle. Does he understand what I mean? One player should be in the jungle and serve as a link between levels. Subaru replied, "Yes. This position is strategically important, but it seems to him they are simply too afraid to trust him with one of the levels." Neil turned around and asked, "Does he even understand what he is supposed to do?" The viewers were writing that this is complete nonsense. If a bronze player ended up on a team with platinum players, then it is almost guaranteed failure. The system window reported that minions will spawn in 30 seconds. Someone wished everyone good luck. Neil walked forward through the forest and said, "Bronze, of course, is a real idiot. He thinks that because he is a streamer in a cool mask, he is allowed to do everything." He looked ahead in surprise and asked, "What?" He saw Rod, Platinum 3rd, in front of him. Neil thought, "An archer. He thinks he has the advantage now. He can deal with him himself." Rod drew an arrow and smirked, and Leandri, Platinum 2nd, had already snuck up on Neil from behind. Neil screamed, "Nightmare! It's a trap!" Leandri rushed to attack when suddenly lightning struck his body. He screamed, and Rod asked in displeasure, "What? Where are they?" Lightning also struck his body, and he screamed loudly. Neil smirked and thought, "Fortunately, there is at least one player on this team who knows what to do." He saw MC in front of him and asked, "Bronze?" Rod grabbed his hand and ordered a retreat to the turret. He looked around and asked, "Is this a trap?" They were attacked by lightning again, and the system window reported that Narukami Subaru defeated Rod and Leandri. The viewers wrote that it was amazing. MC turned around and asked, "What is he doing?" Neil asked, "What was that?" The viewers wrote, "They are shaking." Of course, they would be speechless too. Subaru asked, "Why did he stand here?" "They need to quickly destroy all the minions so they can capture the turret. He is even slower than bronze-ranked players." Neil replied, "Yes, fine." The system window said a viewer was offering him a quest. "How about 20,000 credits if he can clear the floor in a month?" The viewers asked, "What, in just 1 month? What's the fastest record for clearing it?" 3 months. Clearing the floor in a month is simply impossible. They believe in Narukami Subaru. The system window said a viewer was offering him a quest. 20,000 credits for the same quest. Viewers wrote that everything he does attracts attention. They say the blue zone was interested in him. He's already turned them down. A viewer offered him a quest, an extra 10,000 credits if he manages to clear the floor in a month. Several more viewers offered him an extra 10,000 credits. Safe Asset offered him a task, 50,000 credits for completing a floor in half a month. The viewers were asking, "What? Is it him?" The system window reported, "The enemy base has been destroyed. The match is over. 147 points have been earned. His rank has been raised from bronze 3rd to bronze 2nd. Safe Asset donated 10 credits and asked him not to let him down. He donated 100 credits and asked, "How about a side mission?" He offered him a task, 50,000 credits for completing a floor without dying. Otherwise, he will return all the money he donated. The viewers wrote that this was too much. They thought he just wanted all his money back. Subaru agreed to the task. Safe Asset donated him 100 credits and said he was expecting an interesting spectacle. Her name is Didal. Her streamer nickname is Mizumega. She can't cry and laugh. She screamed with tears in her eyes. What? After all, her channel is dead. Didal said she's sure she can win this time. Why don't they support her? Okay, she'll stream until she reaches diamond rank. Viewers wrote, "She's hopeless." Didal thought, what? If she didn't waste time streaming, she would have passed the 4th floor long ago. But she has to stream because she needs money. She smiled and said, "What nonsense are they talking about?" Okay. She has to get back in the game. At that moment, players appeared in front of her. Torvik Platinum, Donkey Platinum, Narukashi Subaru Silver. She asked in surprise, "What? This mask? So he's the new Subaru?" Didal thought, she needs to think. She's never met anyone like him before. The system window reported, Safe Asset is offering her a task, 30,000 credits if she loses. She asked what? Viewers wrote, he wants her to sabotage Subaru. It's obvious. Didal thanked him for the mission. She asked him not to worry about her. Everything will be fine. The system window reported that Gormak defeated Didal. MC looked at this, and the viewers wrote, this is her fourth death. Subaru thought he hasn't encountered them in a long time. Deadall returned to the game and screamed loudly. MC thought it was just a drain. At that moment, Goromak killed her again and she smiled. The viewers asked to look at her smile. Is she doing this on purpose? Subaru said, this is some kind of stupid trolling. He didn't think it was possible to drain so stupidly. The viewers wrote, safe asset donated to her so that she would fail the mission. That's really true. Subaru said that's how it is. Sari asset, he shouldn't worry. He will make sure that the credits he wants to pay him reach him. Goromak said thoughtfully, this mask. So he's that streamer Narukami Subaru, right? Apparently, one of the viewers offered to fight him one-on-one. Subaru replied, unfortunately no, he wouldn't refuse. Goromak frowned and said he would have lost anyway. In the Forest of War, a diamond-ranked player would never lose to a silver-ranked player. Silver-ranked players have 75% lower stats. MC replied that if statistics were the only deciding factor, there would be no point in the challenge. Goromak frowned in irritation and said his viewers adore him, so he stopped judging his own strength. Well, welcome to the 4th floor. He summoned a golem arm, and Subaru thought body transformation. You don't see that often on the 4th floor, he said, but he also has a skill he'd like to test. Subaru thinks that with this new heart, he won't be a problem for him. He's been waiting a long time for them to meet. He released mana, and the Thunderlord inhabited his body. Goromak clutched his face and asked, what's wrong? The system window reported, the Thunderlord's trial has begun. The viewers wrote, wow, is this the effect, Thunderlord? Isn't this effect too weak? Goromak cried out, anyway, it doesn't work in the Forest of War. The system window reported, Heart of Thunder counters the Thunderlord's negative effects. The 6th level Wedge of Greed counters the Thunderlord's negative effects. Subaru thought those two skills really can work together. The system window reported, the Thunderlord's negative effect has been reduced by 30%. He quickly rushed to attack and thought, this is more than enough for now. He swung his sword, and Goromak looked at him in surprise. He cried out, no way! MC struck him and sent him flying backwards. Goromak stopped with his huge hands and said, that wasn't so impressive. He ran forward, and the system window reported, Goromak accuracy adjustment 200%. He screamed, the golem's arm has been strengthened by the Forest of War. Now this one's rank is even higher than Diamond. The system window reported, the Thunderlord answered his call. The Thunderlord recognized him. Subaru thought, great, everything is ready. He released the Thunderlord and a lightning bolt. Goromak asked, how? Why? Could a silver-ranked player's attacks really be that powerful? Subaru replied, he told you so. Not everything depends on stats. He quickly attacked Goromak, and the viewers wrote, it's amazing. He surprises them every day. Narukami showed that stats really don't mean anything. The system window reported, Narukami Subaru broke Goromak's killing spree. Deadall looked at this and wondered, what the hell is going on? She started shaking and thought, Goromak, you idiot, and she sacrificed herself to help him. The system windows reported that Narukami Subaru killed Liberi, Siniel, and Johan. Deadall said, this can't be true. The viewers wrote, Narukami is simply incredible. Mezumega, let her go, please. What a nightmare. They'll go back for Subaru's stream. Deadall screamed, stop it, so let them continue to suck up to him. And what would they do if 30,000 credits were at stake? The viewers wrote, well, now she's shown her true colors. They won't mind if she quits streaming altogether. Deadall said with displeasure, armchair critics, they always attacked her. Narukami Subaru wrote in private chat, if he wasted his time on trash like her, he wouldn't have completed the mission with the best result. The system window reported, the enemy surrendered. The match is over. Deadall said, that's the end. Subaru said, well, they're done. Thanks everyone for watching. The viewers wrote that he managed to reach the 3rd platinum rank in one go. Not a single defeat in 15 hours? At this rate, he can really complete the floor challenge in a month. MC said there will be a stream tomorrow too. For now, he will stream every day. The system window reported that Narukami Subaru ended the stream. After a while, he was walking down the street when he suddenly heard a voice from the side. Welcome. Subaru looked at Wick and said, it's late. Had she been waiting for him all this time? Wick replied, she promised to make him a schedule. MC replied, yes, but, Wick said, and she wants to give it to him today. She also wanted to talk about something. Subaru asked, what about? Wick replied, the streams are going great. The last one had 13,000 viewers. Everything is going great, but something is bothering her. Subaru asked, is she drunk? Wick replied, it doesn't matter. She thinks something is chasing him, or he is chasing something himself. She has been thinking about it for a long time. Maybe he has some problems? MC replied, it doesn't matter. He doesn't want to talk about it now. Wika said that's what she thought. She lowered her head, and then reached out to the mask and asked if maybe she would see that very face under this mask. She put her hand on his shoulder, then dropped the folder and widened her eyes in surprise. She fell to her knees and thought, did she really just see his face? Subaru approached her and asked if she was okay. Wika screamed, no need to come closer. Please let him go home. MC looked at her puzzled. After a while, a voice was heard outside. Yes, the vice foreman. If words don't work, we need to bring her back by force. Is that what he meant? Blue Zone. Shiro Uni said, he thinks it will be possible to consider that she just took a vacation. He almost reached the 8th floor. For her sake, he will have to go back to the 4th floor? Who does she think she is? He looked at the palace and entering said, this all is simply freezing him. He saw Wick, who was sitting at the table and said, he will take what he needs. Wick was holding her face and watching the MC stream. Shiro approached her and asked, girl, is she free? She looked at him displeasedly and asked, Have they met? He answered, not yet. By the way, what is her name? She looked at him carefully, stood up and asked, why does he need it? She apologizes, she is busy. She started to leave, when suddenly Shiro blocked her path. He said, well, don't do that. He just saw a beautiful flower and couldn't pass by. Does he look like a perverted idiot? He handed her a business card and Wika thought it was disgusting. She saw the inscription on the card, Blue Zone 7th floor Shiro Uni. She thought, Blue Zone? Shiro said he sees fire in her eyes. He is not surprised that he was able to evoke such a reaction. Wika asked, what is he doing in such a place? Shiro replied, come on, no need to ask such stupid questions. Doesn't she want them to become closer? Wika walked past him and asked, why? Shiro grabbed her arm and told her to stop. She said with displeasure, don't touch her. Shiro asked, what was she watching there? Is that the streamer? Wika looked at him in surprise and wondered if he was talking about Narukami. Shiro said he thought she looked worried. He's just a pathetic impersonator stuck on the 4th floor. He has nothing in common with the real Subaru, Wika asked. Can anyone in the Blue Zone really say that? Shiro asked. What's wrong? Does she think everyone in the Blue Zone worships him? Wika asked. She never said that. Why insult him? The entire Blue Zone is the heirs of Narukami Subaru's blue eyes. Shiro said. That was over 20 years ago. There are many players now who are much stronger than Narukami, and one of them is standing right in front of her. Wika told him to shut up already, just because all the Blue Eyes members disappeared. Shiro approached her and asked, does she really think so? Not many people know about this, but it will soon be on the news. They say that one of the Blue Eyes members is still alive, but has joined forces with demons. MC said, it's late. He thinks it's time to call it a day. He was walking along the 4th floor Elysium and watching his stream. Subaru thought 15,000 people come to each stream consistently. That's not bad. He passed by Shiro, who asked, do you have a minute, young man? MC turned around and saw him. He asked again, young man? Who the hell is he? Shiro replied, he's Shiro Uni from Blue Zone. Why doesn't he join them? They can give him opportunities he can't get anywhere else. Subaru asked, another offer, right? Shiro replied, he heard. He's already turned them down several times. Apparently he wants to drive up his price. But let him hear him out. He wants to advise him on something. There's no need to overdo it with this. He's not asking him to join their ranks right now, but let him at least show his face, and after that, their vice guild master will do the rest. Subaru asked, does he know him? Shiro answered, Ikari Genji. He's currently on the 9th floor. MC thought, Ikari Genji? Did this idiot really manage to reach the 9th floor and become vice guild master? Shiro extended his hand towards him and asked, does he think he realized how amazing this offer is? MC ordered him to back off. He doesn't have to waste time. Shiro froze, puzzled, and then pointed his sword at MC's neck. Subaru turned around and said, so this is how recruitment works in the Blue Zone. Shiro asked, did he think he had a choice? If he doesn't come with him, he's done for. MC quickly threw his sword aside and jumped back. He grabbed his sword and asked, doesn't the Blue Zone value a good image above all else? Does he really want to cause a massacre right in the middle of the city? Shiro said, that's a good question. He was wondering why he came here personally. He'll teach him a lesson. The system window reported. They had moved to the Cyrus space. Sensitivity to external stimuli is reduced by 70%. Sense of balance is reduced by 40%. Reaction speed is reduced by 30%. Subaru thought Cyrus is a space that completely blocks sound and light. Apparently there's not much streaming here. He managed to go 3 floors more than him. Besides, he was very tired. The system window reported, Thunder is on cooldown. Nameless demonic sword increases the owner's energy level. All displays increased proportionally to the level of vital energy. He needs to end this quickly. Shiro said, there was no need to come so close. After all, everything can be heard much better this way. The system window reported, the effect of the cursed hallucinations effect has been increased. The negative effect of fear has been received. The pain level has exceeded 100%. The level of all senses has been reduced by 50%. Shiro said that if he gets here, there will be no way out. MC thought that even if he concentrates all his power in one point, it still won't be enough. Shiro said, after all of them are him, and he, all of them. At that moment, Wika was sitting on the bench and thinking, the stream is over. He should have been back by now. She wanted to apologize for what happened, and she can't stop thinking about what that idiot said this morning. She didn't think the Blue Zone would act so aggressively. After all, Guildmaster Kujo fought alongside Subaru in his golden age, but she also thinks that if Narukami joined them, it would be good for him. However, he doesn't even know what will happen to him. She said that maybe she should let him go. She saw a huge lightning bolt to the side and asked, Narukami?